Vale, questo è un processo necessario. Vale.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to City Hall, welcome to Council Chambers, and welcome to a meeting of the Los Angeles City
Buenos días,
Council
bienvenidos al
for
Ayuntamiento,
today,
la sala
Wednesday, August
del Consejo
17th,
Municipal de Los Ángeles, hoy
2005.
el
City
17
Council meets every
de
Tuesday,
agosto
Wednesday, and
2005. Los
Friday.
espacios de todos los
Meetings are open to the
martes,
public, and
miércoles y
we do
viernes. El
invite you to
público
join us.
es
For
bienvenido,
members of the
acompañados en
public
persona.
unable
Por
to
los miembros del
attend
público que no
council
pueden
meetings,
venir
we
en
can be
persona,
live on
se
the
los
cable
municipal
station,
pueden
channel
vernos en vivo
35.
a través
We
del
can
canal
also be viewed live
35
via
de la
webcast
ciudad
from
o
the
vía
city's
telefónica de la
homepage
página
or heard
vía
via
telefónica
council
o a
phone.
través de la página internet de la
Call
ciudad
us
de Los
time is
Ángeles.
just past 10:30.
Es un poco
Took us
después
a
de las
while
10
to
y
get
media.
quorum today.
Tomó un
I know
poco
it's the
para
last week
completar
before the
un quórum. Sé
recess,
que es
but
el
your
último
attendance and
semana
punctuality is
antes
important.
del
Particularly
descanso
Friday,
y
the last
su
meeting
puntualidad es muy
before the
importante, en
break.
particular el viernes, la
We
última reunión
again
antes
have
del
only
descanso.
10
No
members
tenemos solamente
expected.
10 miembros
So appreciate your
que se esperan este
cooperation.
viernes. Espero
Madam
su
Clerk, first order of business, please.
y aprecio de anticipo
First
su
order of business is
cooperación.
calling the roll. Cardenas, Garcetti, Gruel, Han, Labange, Parks, Perry,
Padilla, Cargas,
Reyes,
Garcetti,
Rosendahl,
Gruel, Han,
Smith,
Labange,
Weiss,
Parks,
Stein,
Perry,
Padilla,
Rosendahl, Smith,
11
Stein,
members present,
Padilla,
and a quorum,
11
Mr.
miembros
President.
presentes,
Thank
un
you. The
quórum
council is
completo, señor
officially in
presidente. Bien,
session.
oficialmente cierra la sesión del
Next
Consejo
item.
Municipal. El
Approval
siguiente
of the
asunto,
minutes.
aprobación de
Mr.
las
Garcetti
actas
moves,
previas,
Mr. Smith seconds.
Commendatory
de las
resolutions
minutas,
for approval.
resoluciones y
Ms. Perry moves and
convocatorias
Mr. Labange
para
seconds.
aprobación.
Mr. President, on the regular
Presente en la
agenda,
agenda
items
regular,
noticed for
asuntos,
public
avisos
hearing,
para audiencias
items 1
públicas, en
through
asuntos
5
1
are
al
street
5
lighting,
son
public hearings, and the
audiencias públicas de
recommendation
alumbramiento
for
de las
council
calles y
action is to open
recomendación
the
de
hearings and
la
continue the
recomendación para la
hearings and
acción del
ordinances to
Consejo
September
Municipal es de
7th.
continuar sus
Members,
audiencias
items 1
al
through 5 now before
septiembre
us, and I
7.
do not
Asuntos
have
1 a
requests from
5
members
están
of the
pendientes de
public to address
obligación
the
del público
council
para
on
hablar
these
con el
items.
municipal sobre estos
Public
asuntos. Toda la
hearings are
sesión pública se
open,
abre y
and
se
without
cierra.
objection, continue
Y sin
to September
oposición
7th.
será aplazado hasta el 7 de
Next items, please.
septiembre.
Next items are also
Siguientes
public
asuntos
hearings
son
items, 6
asuntos de
through
audiencias
14,
públicas del
street
6 al
lighting
14, ordenanzas de alumbramientos de las
and they are either
calles y
amending or confirming.
And again, colleagues, I
se
do not have requests from
necesita.
members of the
No
public
tengo
to address
petición
the
de parte del
council
público
on
para hablar
items
con el
6
municipal
through
sobre asuntos
14.
6 al 14.
Public hearings
La
are
pública
open
se abre
and
y se
closed.
cierra.
Members wishing to call
Miembros,
any
¿desean
specials?
llamar unas especiales?
Seeing none,
No.
let's open the
Ábrase
roll,
voto,
close the
cierre ese
roll,
voto
and
y
tabulate the
tabúlese
vote.
con 11 sí.
Okay, these items are
Estos asuntos
ordinances
son
and carry over
ordenanzas,
for
serán
second
mantenidas
readings.
pendientes para una segunda
Next items,
lectura en el
please.
futuro.
Item number 15
Asunto
is
número
also
15
public hearing
también es
item, and the recommendation for
un asunto
council
de audiencia
action is to
pública,
open
la
the hearing and
recomendación
continue
para
the
la
hearing and
acción del
ordinances to
Consejo
September
Municipal es de
7th.
abrir la audiencia y
Members,
continuar la
item
audiencia el
15 now
7 de
before us.
septiembre. Asunto 15 ahora está pendiente.
There's no request from
No hay
members of the
petición de
public to
parte del
address the
público para el
council.
Consejo Municipal.
Public hearings
La
are
audiencia
open
pública se
and
abre y
without
se
objection,
cierra sin
continue to
oposición, será
September
aplazado
7th.
hasta el 7 de
Next
septiembre.
item.
Items 16
Asunto
16 through
16 al
19 are
19
street
son
vacations, and the recommendation for council action would be to instruct the city
De
engineer to
dirigir
proceed
al
if there
ingeniero
are
de la
no
ciudad
protests.
proceder si no hay
There's no speaker
manifestaciones.
cards on items 16 through 19. Public hearings are open and closed.
Pública se abre y se
Request for
cierra.
specials.
Petición para un especial.
Seeing none, let's open the
No,
roll,
ábrase voto,
close the
cierre ese
roll,
voto y tabúlese
tabulate the
conteo.
vote.
11 ayes.
11 sí.
Those are approved.
han sido
And
aprobados.
colleagues, just as with yesterday, all matters
Todos
approved
los
today
asuntos
are
que
going
sean aprobados hoy
forthwith.
serán enviados al
Can I
alcalde.
ask that number 16 goes super forthwith?
How about a semi-forthwith? Next item, please.
El siguiente
Item
asunto,
number
asunto
20,
número
the applicant
20, el
consents to
solicitante está de
continuance to
acuerdo a
September
aplazar
20th.
ese asunto al
Any
20 de
objection to
septiembre.
continuing item number
Oposición a
20?
aplazar asunto 20.
Seeing none, so
No.
ordered.
Se llevará a cabo.
Next item, please.
Item number 21 is
Asunto
finding a
21.
public convenience or necessity in Council District 5, and a motion is
Se trata
required to
sobre el
grant the
distrito
application.
5.
Okay,
Necesito
Ms.
una
Gruhl
moción para
moves,
otorgar esta
Mr. Garcetti
solicitud.
seconds. Any discussion on item
Aprobado.
21?
Diálogo en asunto 21.
Seeing none,
No.
and no request from members of
No
the
hay
public to
petición
address
tampoco
the
del público
council.
para hablar con el
Let's
Consejo
open the roll,
Municipal. Ábrase voto, cierre
close the
ese voto y
roll,
tabúlese
and tabulate the
conteo.
vote.
11
11
ayes.
sí.
That is granted.
Eso ha sido otorgado.
Next item, please.
Siguiente
Next
asunto,
items are
siguiente
items for
asuntos
which
son
public
asuntos
hearings
que
have been
han
held,
tenido
items
audiencias públicas,
22
asunto
through
22
54,
al
items
54,
22
asunto
through
22
25
al
are
25.
confirmations of
Son
commissioners. Do you wish to
confirmaciones de
hold those on the
comisionados
desk,
que
or do you wish
mantenerlos
to take
pendientes
those
o
up?
desean
Let's hold
votar
items
ahorita.
22
Asuntos
through
22 al
25
25
temporarily on the desk.
temporalmente se
When we
mantendrán
finish
pendientes
dispensing
cuando
with consent
terminemos
items,
con el
colleagues
resto de
will
los
consider
asuntos de
our
la
commission
agenda, que las
nominees
consideremos los
first.
nombramientos
So
como
on the balance
comisionados
of the
primero. En
items
el resto de los
26 through
asuntos 26 a
54, we have
54
had public
hemos
hearings
tenido
on these
audiencias
items. We
públicas
have
en estos
committee
asuntos,
reports
tenemos reportes del comité.
before us. A motion from
También
the floor
necesita
would be
una
required to
moción
reopen
del
the
piso
public
para
hearings.
reabrir
There's
la
no
audiencia
such
pública, no hay
motion.
tal moción.
Do we have requests for
Tenemos
specials?
peticiones para
Mr.
audiencias
Parks.
como especiales, 39
39,
hacer por
39,
el
call special
concejal
by Mr.
Parks.
Parks. Mr. Rosendahl.
Mr. President, I'd like to
Me gustaría
forthwith 17.
Okay,
que
all
se
items
sean
that are
enviados.
approved
Todos
today
los
going
asuntos que estén
forthwith.
aprobados hoy serán
Any
enviados
other
al alcalde.
specials,
¿Algún
Mr.
otro
Garcetti?
especial, señor Garcetti?
41,
41, 41.
Call,
Llamado especial.
Ms. Gruhl.
Señora Cruz. 53.
3, call special by Ms. Gruhl.
La señora Cruz,
Any other
53 especial.
specials?
¿Algún otro especial?
I have 39,
39,
41, and
41
53 call
y 53
special.
llamados
There's
especiales.
no further requests. Let's
Si no hay
open the roll on
peticiones
the balance
adicionales,
of the
háblase de
items,
voto en el resto de los asuntos,
close the
cierre ese
roll,
voto y tabule ese
and
conteo.
tabulate the vote.
11
11 sís.
Those are
Esos han sido
approved.
aprobados.
Items
Asuntos
26 through
26
29
al
are
29
ordinances
son
and carry over
ordenanzas
for
que se
second
mantendrán
readings.
pendientes para una segunda
Next
lectura en el
items, please.
futuro.
Next
Procedamos.
items are items
Siguientes
which
son
public hearings
asuntos
have
que
not been
no
held,
tienen
items
audiencias públicas,
55
asuntos
through
55 a
66. 10 votes are
56
required
dan
for
votos para que
consideration.
sean
We do have a
considerados.
card on item
Tenemos una tarjeta
58.
para
We'll
asunto
call that
58, será
special.
llamado especial.
Let's also
También
call 56 special.
56 será llamado especial.
And, any other
¿Algún otro
specials?
especial?
Public hearings
Las audiencias
have not been
públicas
held
no
in
se
these
han llevado a cabo en
items.
estos
We do not have
asuntos. No tenemos
requests from members
peticiones
of the public on
de
the
miembros del
balance
público
of
en el resto
items
de
55 to
asuntos
66.
55 a
Public hearings are
66. La
open
audiencia
and
pública se
closed.
abre y se cierra.
There's no further
Si no
requests
hay
for
petición
specials.
adicional
Let's
para
open the
especiales,
roll,
abráse voto,
close the
ciérrese
roll,
voto
and
y
tabulate
tabúlese
the vote.
conteo.
11 ayes.
11 sís.
Those are
Esos han
approved.
sido aprobados.
Next items,
El
please.
siguiente asunto, por favor.
Next items are
Siguiente
on the
asunto
continuation
es de
agenda,
la
items
agenda, la
66 and
66 y
68.
68.
Public hearings
Las
have been
audiencias
held.
públicas se han llevado a cabo.
Members 67 and
Miembros
68 now
67 y
before
68 ahora
us.
están pendientes.
Mr. Labange.
Señor Labange, 67 especial, por
Mr.
favor.
Cárdenas.
68 special.
68
super special.
especial.
All right. And is that the end of our
Es
regular
el
agenda?
fin de la agenda regular.
Yes, it is, Mr. President.
Okay, if that's the case,
Si
let's
es así, entonces
temporarily recess
temporalmente
the
tomaremos
regular
un
meeting.
receso
and
de
would
la
you please
reunión
call the roll on
regular.
the special
Tome
meeting?
lista en la reunión
Cardenas,
especial.
Garcetti,
Padilla, Cardenas,
Gruel,
Garcetti,
Han,
Gruel,
Labange,
Han, Labange, Parks, Perry, Rosendahl, Smith,
Weinstein,
signed.
Padilla, 11 members present,
11
and a
miembros
quorum, Mr.
presentes en quórum,
President.
señor
Thank you very
presidente.
much.
Muchas gracias.
Calling to special
Colegas,
meeting
la
is now
reunión
in
del
session. First
especial ahora se
item of
ha
business, please.
abierto. El
First
siguiente
item is
asunto,
an
el
item for
primer
which
asunto,
public hearing
asunto
has
que
been held. It's
ha
the
tenido
Public
audiencias
Safety Committee
públicas
report.
en reporte de
Okay,
seguridad
item 1,
del
colleagues.
público.
Public hearing has been
101,
held and
colegas, se ha llevado a
decided.
cabo
Any
la audiencia
desire
por
to
ese
call this
asunto.
item
¿Desea de
special?
llamar esto especial?
Seeing none, let's
No,
open the roll,
ábrase voto,
close the roll,
ciérrese
and
voto y
tabulate the
tabúlese
vote.
conteo.
11
11 sís.
That is approved.
Eso ha sido
Next
aprobado.
items.
Siguiente
Items
asunto,
2 and 3
asunto
are
2 y
items for
3
which
son
public
asuntos que
hearings have not been
no han
held.
tenido
10
audiencias
votes are
públicas y
required
dan
for
10 votos para
consideration.
Okay, we do have a
consideración.
card, item
Tenemos una
number
tarjeta
3
sobre
of the
asunto
special
número 3 de la
agenda. We'll
agenda
call that
especial y será
special.
llamado especial.
On item number
Sobre
2, we
asunto
do not
número
have
2 no
requests from
tenemos
members of the
petición de parte del
public.
público.
Public hearing is
Nuestra
open and
pública se abre y
closed.
se cierra.
Request to call this
Petición
item
para llamar este
special.
asunto especial.
Seeing none,
No.
let's open the roll on
Ábrase
item
voto
number
sobre
2.
asunto número 2.
Close the
Cierre ese
roll,
voto y tabúlese
tabulate the
conteo.
vote.
11
11
ayes.
sís.
Okay, that is an ordinance
Eso
and
es una
carries over for
ordenanza
a
y se
second
mantendrá
reading.
pendiente para una segunda
Next
lectura en
item,
el
please.
futuro.
Items 4 and 5 on
Asuntos
the
4 y
special
5 en la
agenda
agenda
are closed
especial
session
son
items.
asuntos que tienen que ver a cabo
You
con
should hold
puertas
those on
cerradas,
the
los
desk.
que
Let's
mantener
hold those on the
pendientes y
desk and
estos mantener
actually
pendientes
continue
y
items
aplazaremos
3, 4,
asuntos
and
3,
5 of
4
the
y
special
5 de
meeting
la
back to the
reunión
regular
especial de
meeting.
nuevo serán
And if that
demorados
concludes the special
para la
meeting
reunión regular. Esto
agenda,
termina la
let's
agenda
now
de la reunión
adjourn the
especial.
special
Ahora se
meeting,
levantará la
return
sesión.
to the regular
Regresaremos a la reunión
Take a
regular.
deep breath and invite up our Police Commission nominees to the center table, please.
Ahora invitaremos
Colleagues,
a los
this is items
comisionados
22,
de la
23, 24, and 25.
esos asuntos
Ms. Freeman, Mr. Mack, Mr. Pacheco, and
Freeman,
Ms. Orden.
Mac, Pacheco y Gordon.
These commission nominees were
Estos son
before the
nombramientos
Public
de la
Safety
Comisión
Committee.
de
and we
Policía y
have
se
committee
presentaban ante el
reports recommending
Comité
confirmation
de Seguridad. Tenemos reportes del
of the
comité
individuals before us.
recomendando
Do we have members of the council wishing to
aprobación.
speak
¿Hay algún miembro del Consejo
or to
Municipal que
ask
desea
questions of
hablar
our
o hacer
nominees?
preguntas
Let's
de
begin
estos
with Mr. Zine.
nombramientos? Primero, señor Sain.
Thank you, Mr. President,
Gracias,
and good morning to you.
Buenos
One
días a
more member, we
todos.
have the quorum, the presentation from the Police Commission. I have met all of you.
Yo ya
I
me he
know
reunido con
some of the
ustedes, los
backgrounds.
conozco, yo sé sus
John Mack, we
historiales.
go way, way
John
back.
Mack, desde mucho tiempo.
Wells Fargo,
Wells
I know the
Fargo,
wonderful work you
yo sé
do,
el trabajo
and our
muy
attorneys, the
importante
wonderful
que
work
hacen
you
los
do.
abogados.
I was very pleased to
Trabajo que
meet
ustedes hacen, me dio mucho
with all
gusto
of you and
reunirme
learn
con todos ustedes
from
y
you what you plan to do with the
saber de
Police Commission
ustedes lo que
for the
piensan
City of Los
hacer con la
Angeles.
Comisión de
Clearly,
Policía de la Ciudad de Los
the
Ángeles.
policy-making body
Claramente, el
of the
grupo
police
encargado de hacer decisiones del
department, the
departamento
ones
de
who
policía,
set the
los que
policy,
fijan
whatever it be, good,
decisiones,
bad, or
cual
indifferent,
que sea
for
bueno
the
o
men and
malo,
women who
indiferente
deliver
para
that
los hombres y
service to the
mujeres que
people of Los
entregan ese
Angeles. And we
servicio
all
al
want it to be a safe city,
pueblo de Los
want
Ángeles.
to be a
Queremos
city we
una
can be proud
seguridad,
of.
una ciudad segura
And
y
the
sentirnos
inclusion
orgullosa y
of
la
the four new
inclusión de los
commissioners
4
with
nuevos
the
comisionados
existing
con
Commissioner Alan Scobin, who's the only remaining
Alan
commissioner on the
Scobin,
Police
el
Commission, with
que
his
existe
background
ahora,
in law
junto con
enforcement
él,
and
con
your
el
backgrounds
historial de ellos,
in
el
serving the people of the city. I think it's going to be a wonderful commission.
Va a ser
We
una
know it's
muy,
not a
muy
rubber stamp commission.
importante
We know
comisión.
it's a
Y
commission
sabemos que
that
es una
looks at the
comisión que
issues
mira los
and makes sure those policies are
asuntos y se
reflective
asegura que esas
of what we wish for the
decisiones
people of the city of Los
reflejan lo que
Angeles.
queremos
Just
para
one
las
issue
personas de
that
Los
I
Ángeles.
want to
Solamente
illustrate
un punto que
is
quiero
under this
mencionar es que
consent
bajo
decree, we keep making
decreto
some
constitucional
modifications. And every
continuamos
time we we make a
modificación, que a veces
modification, we
hacemos
come
una
up with a special
modificación,
order.
presentamos una
And
orden
I've had
especial.
complaints from officers
Y
in
yo he
the field
recibido
that
quejas de
they
oficiales
keep modifying
en la
it.
comunidad que
We need to somehow
continúan
get some
cambiándolo.
consistency,
Debemos de recibir cierta
because when the
consistencia,
special order
porque
comes
cuando
down
la
to
orden
make a
especial
modification,
llega para hacer
by
una
the time they train
modificación, cuando
everyone,
entrenan
now
a
they're
todos,
modifying
ahora
it
ya están
again.
cambiándolo de
And
nuevo.
it creates some
Y
problems
esto
for the
causa
officers in the
problemas para los
field. So if you
oficiales
just be
en
sensitive to
la
that,
comunidad.
and
Sean
I would
sensibles a eso y
also
también
encourage
les
to
pido
visit those roll
que
calls,
visiten
because when they see
cuando
4 new
toman lista, porque
commissioners,
cuando ven
there's going to be
9 nuevos
this
comisionados va a haber una
anticipation of what's going
anticipación
to happen next.
de lo que va a ocurrir
And
después.
clearly,
Y
public safety is a
claramente,
major
seguridad del
issue for this
público es un
city.
asunto muy
And
principal
I
para esta ciudad y
congratulate all
los
of you. It's
felicito a
going to
todos
be
ustedes. Va a
a
ser
difficult task at times, a
trabajo
rewarding task at
difícil a
others.
veces,
And John Mack, it's good to see you come out of
muy
retirement once again
contento.
to help the
Otras
people of
veces,
Los Angeles.
John
Thank you all
Mack,
for being
gracias
here, and
por
thank you for volunteering to do this
da-
service for the people.
ser voluntario y gracias por estar dispuesto
Mr.
a
Garcetti.
dejar su tiempo de jubilación
Thank you very much,
para dar
Mr.
servicio a
Padilla,
la
and
ciudad.
congratulations to all of you.
Felicitaciones a
I
todos
know we have a
ustedes.
very
Yo sé
long
que
meeting,
tenemos
so
una
I
reunión
will
muy larga.
cut to the chase.
Entonces, llegaré al punto.
Those who I can wax poetic about already, I've done so recently in council and had the opportunity to work
Yo
with,
tuve la
and I look
oportunidad de
forward
trabajar con
to
muchos de ustedes.
having that opportunity with
Espero
others. But I
continuar
just want to ask a couple questions
y
for
empezar a
the
trabajar con el resto.
panel.
Unas cuantas preguntas
One,
para el
just a
panel.
general one.
Uno,
of
una
what you
pregunta
think the
general. ¿Qué es lo
biggest
que ustedes
shortcoming
piensan
right
que
now
es
in the
la
department
deficiencia
is,
más
and where you would like to
grande en el
focus on?
departamento y
Just
qué
the
les
first, and if you hold my time for a
gustaría
second question.
concentrarse?
I think in terms of
Creo que en cuanto
shortcoming and goals that
a deficiencias y metas que la Comisión puede lograr y considerar, en mi punto de vista, será vigilancia en la comunidad. Me gustaría ver a más oficiales, más un grupo más diverso de agentes policías, hombres y mujeres en las calles, en la comunidad, mezclándose con la comunidad y enviando el mensaje que queremos calles protegidas y seguras y que la policía tome parte de la comunidad y que no sea una organización distante que no está llevando a cabo las expectaciones y esperanzas de la comunidad. Ese es mi pensar al empezar esto.
And Councilman Garcetti, maybe instead of saying
Concejal Garcetti, en vez de decir
shortcomings,
fallas o
opportunities
deficiencias,
for
mejor
change. And I
oportunidades para
certainly share my
cambios. Y yo
colleagues'
comparto
concern
las
that we do
preocupaciones de mis
not have
colegas
enough
que no tenemos
officers,
suficientes
we do not have
oficiales, no
enough
tenemos
officers
suficientes
who are
oficiales
able to
que pueden
participate fully
participar
in
completamente
community policing,
en vigilancia de la
able to work
comunidad y
with
que
the
pueden
communities,
trabajar con las
where they are
comunidades
working.
donde
So
están
that is a
trabajando.
very,
Entonces,
very high
esto es
priority
una
in
prioridad
my mind.
bastante
Certainly,
principal
we've
en mi
already
mente.
heard
Claro,
from
ya hemos
Councilmember
escuchado del
Zine
concejal
of the
Zine
concerns about
de las
the
preocupaciones de
consent decree and how to work
la
with that.
cuestión
I think
del
better
decreto de
communication on both
consentimiento y
sides
necesitamos mejor
about the
comunicación
consent decree, what it
en
is
ambas
able to
partes, lo que
accomplish
puede
and
lograr
what it
y
isn't
lo que no va a
accomplishing,
poder
and how
lograr y
to
cómo
work to
trabajar
make it a
para que sea
document
un
that is
documento
not looked
que
at
no
as
sea
an
considerado
impediment,
como un
but rather
impedimento,
a
pero en
way
vez que
to
sea
continue
una
to
manera de
grow and
continuar
improve.
creciendo y mejorando. Gracias.
Councilman, I think that
Concejal, creo que
while progress has been made, a
mientras se ha
continuing
logrado progreso,
challenge,
hay
in
un
my
reto
opinion, is that
continuo
there's still,
en el hecho de que aún
a lack of
hay una
real
falta
mutual
de
respect and
respeto
mutual
real,
trust
mutuo
between,
y confianza
members of the
mutua entre
department
miembros del
and
Departamento de
communities of
Policía y
color.
las comunidades de color.
That is an issue.
Esto es un
While progress has been made, but I think we still have a ways to go
punto
to
muy
make sure
importante.
that
Claro, se ha logrado
people,
progreso, pero
without
aún nos
regard
falta
to
mucho
the color of their skin
en que
or where
hacer
they live,
con personas
are gonna feel
en
that they
cuanto al
are
color de su
being
piel
treated
o
with
donde
respect
viven.
and
Ellos
not,
quieren que sean tratados con
have-
respeto y no
not be abused and
ser
misused.
abusados y
And kind of on a
mal
related
usados.
matter, and I think
En un
this
punto
is where
relacionado, creo
community
que
policing
es
has some
donde
strong
vigilancia de la comunidad
implications
tiene
and
implicaciones muy
importance
fuertes e
implementation.
implementaciones
I think it's
importantes.
important
Creo que es
also
importante también
that the policies
que
at the
las
very top
decisiones, las reglas desde
really
arriba
get down to the
literalmente
street
lleguen
level,
a
so that
nivel
the
de la
officers out on
calle
the
para
street
que
where the
los
rubber meets the
oficiales que
road,
están en la calle, en la
gets that
comunidad,
message and,
donde la llanta
implements it.
se encuentra con el camino, es donde
Well,
sean
I won't
implementadas.
repeat what my
No voy a
colleagues have
repetir
said.
lo que mis
I
colegas ya
concur
han
with their
dicho,
view.
pero yo
I
estoy de
also
acuerdo con
think
su
that,
punto de vista y el
a
de
very
ellos.
high
También pienso que
priority is to
una alta
get
prioridad
teams
también es
to
de
completed,
que
in compliance with the consent
los
decree
equipos
monitor. I think that
cumplan con
I
el
have a background
monitor
in
de
technology development and
decreto.
operational
Tengo
efficiency, so hope to help
mi
with that.
historial
I
de
think that's a high
desarrollo
priority along
tecnológico
with putting more police
e
officers on the
información a la ley. Creo que es muy importante también.
Thank you. I think
Y
maybe I'll keep it
también
to one
incluir a
question,
más
knowing how long
oficiales
our
en
meeting
la
is today, but I know this is one of our most
calle.
important
Creo que
commissions.
eso es una de
I'll
las
just
comisiones más
say what
importantes. Quiero
the second
decir
question would have been,
lo que la segunda
and
pregunta
put
hubiera
it forward as
sido.
something I look forward to working
Y
with you
espero
on.
continuar trabajando con
Domestic
ustedes
violence,
en
the
violencia
Domestic Violence Task
doméstica.
Force has asked me to be the council
El
liaison in
operativo
terms
de
of
violencia
working
doméstica
on
me pidió
policy
que sea
issues
el
around
liaison
domestic
para
violence.
trabajar en reglas
Cindy Misikowski did
sobre
that previously.
violencia doméstica. La
Each
concejala
one of us around
Misikowski
this horseshoe
previamente con
have an
nosotros en este grupo
appointee to that
tenemos un
Domestic Violence Task
nombramiento
Force.
en este grupo
And especially
operativo y
looking at trying to
especialmente
standardize,
mirando
and I
a
know the
tratar
department
de
is looking at this right now,
normalizar,
the
tal como
DART
este
teams,
departamento
which
está
are
viendo
the community
esto,
teams,
los
domestic abuse
equipos de
response
DART
teams that roll out with police
que
officers
salen con
as you
los
look at the
agentes de
incidents
policía
of the
porque números
recurrent calls
incidentes
at
de las
domestic
llamadas que
violence
recurren en
households, and it
viviendas
still
de
is way too high.
violencia doméstica aún está
If you
muy,
can think
muy
about it, if you
alta.
want
Si uno
more
piensa eso, si uno
people
quiere
power in
más
the
poder para las
department, we could
personas
boost
en
by about
el
probably 1,000 officers if we
departamento,
could reduce those to
podríamos
one-time
perder
calls instead of 5, 6, 7,
1000
8 times
oficiales si
in the same
solamente recibimos
household. So I
llamada
really look forward to
una vez
working
en
with
vez de
you.
5 o
It's an
6
extraordinarily
veces.
strong team.
Pero continuar trabajando con ustedes es
And
un
I
equipo
asked you in the
bastante
negative,
fuerte
knowing
y
that our
les
strengths way outweigh our
pido lo
weaknesses,
negativo. Yo
but
sé
our
que
work
nuestros
is really
fuertes
to focus
son
on
mucho
those
más que
weaknesses
las
and to make
debilidades,
sure they're
pero
turned
estoy
around. So
dispuesto
look
a
forward to serving
hablar
you.
sobre las debilidades para poder
Ms.
mejorarlas.
Gruen.
Thank you very much,
Muchas
Mr.
gracias, señor
President.
presidente.
As I was sharing with the
Como
commissioners today,
compartí
this
con los
is
compañeros el
one
día
of
de hoy,
the
esto es
best
uno de los
commissions, I think, that
mejores
have ever been
comisiones
appointed
que
in
ha
my
sido
time
nombrado
in dealing with the
durante
city
el
and the
tiempo que yo he
experience that
tratado
each
con
of you
la
bring.
ciudad y la experiencia que
Many
cada
of
uno
you
tiene.
I have
Muchos de
known
ustedes yo he
for
conocido
a few years,
por
let's
unos
just
cuantos
say.
años, por decirlo así,
Your
y
knowledge
su
base, you come into
conocimiento,
this
ustedes
job because it is,
toman ese
it's
trabajo
almost a
porque
full-time
casi es un
job.
trabajo de
I
tiempo
hope all
completo, pero espero que
your employers
sus
or family
empleadores
members
o
know
miembros de
that,
su familia
but
lo
is
saben.
incredible because you're
Es
not starting
increíble
from
porque no van a
scratch,
empezar
and
desde el
your
inicio.
years of experience are going to
Sus
be
años de
really, I
experiencia
think,
van
helpful
a
to moving
ayudar
this
muchísimo
department
para que
forward.
este departamento siga en
And I
el
appreciated
futuro y
Mr.
aprecio
Garcetti's questions.
las
I know
preguntas
I
sobre
was out
Garcetti. Yo
Friday
sé
night
que yo el viernes
with
por la
the
noche
Valley
salí
traffic till
con
midnight on a sobriety
el
checkpoint.
tránsito
And
de
to see some of those
oficiales
people's
en el
faces who had
tránsito
never
y
in Studio
miré
City ever been stopped at a sobriety
las caras
checkpoint.
en un
It was
punto de sobriedad.
both a
Las
preventive
caras
measure,
era una medida
but it was
preventiva,
very
pero
well run by our
fue
Valley
muy,
traffic.
muy bien
And it was
administrado
a
por el
great experience.
tránsito
And I
del Valle. Fue una
found,
gran
as I
experiencia
know
y
you
me di
will,
cuenta, como ustedes se
going
darán
out and
cuenta,
actually
cuando salen y
participating with the
participan
officers.
con los
We did a drag
oficiales.
racing or street racing task force that I
También
went
un
out one
operativo
night,
de
and
carreras
as well as a
ilegales,
number of other
también
things. And I
participé en
think that's
eso
really critically
para
important
eso. Es
to be
sumamente
able to
importante
say
para
how
que
can we
ustedes
change
puedan
policy or how can we
cambiar las
provide more
reglas o
tools,
proveer más
to the police
reglas al
department.
departamento de policía.
Two issues that are coming
Dos
up just to
puntos que
give
se
you
presentan para darle
some items that I'm interested in. One
asuntos
which
que
was
me
reported in
interesa.
the
Uno
police
fue
commission
reportado en la
yesterday
Comisión de
was
Policía
the
ayer,
fact
fue
that
el hecho de que
DOT
el
has been
Departamento de
providing
Transporte
assistance in
ha
removing stolen
estado
vehicles
dando
in
ayuda para
neighborhoods.
remover los
Instead of having
vehículos
an
robados
LAPD
en las
officer
comunidades, en vez de
standing next
tener
to
un
a
agente de
stolen vehicle
policía
that
que
literally
está al
has
lado
not
de
been involved
un
in any other
carro
crime
robado que no está involucrado
and
en
has
ningún
become
otro
a blight in the neighborhood.
crimen y ha
Both
sido
quickly
una
DOT
negligencia en la
can be there
comunidad.
as well,
Rápidamente
whereas
el
that
Departamento de
officer is
Transporte
going
puede
to
estar
have
y
2
el
hours
oficial va a tener
patrolling
2 horas
versus 2 hours standing
patrullando en
next to a
vez de
stolen
2 horas
vehicle. And
de
we're
estar
looking at
parado en
going
un
citywide
carro
with that
fijo.
program,
Esperamos que ese
and I know
programa se
it'll come
utilice en
back to
todas las
your
ciudades y que
commission,
regresará
for
ante
final
su
approval. We'll be
comisión
working with
para
the city council.
aprobación final. Y continuamos
Secondly, is
trabajando
the
con los
Office of
municipales.
Public
Segundo,
Safety.
la
When we
Oficina
look
de
at
Protección
the
Ciudadana al
problems
Público,
of,
cuando miramos los
lack of
problemas de
coordination,
falta de
the importance
coordinación,
of
la
having our
importancia de
security officers
tener
in the
nuestros
city for various departments
agentes de guardia de
coordinating
diferentes
with
departamentos que
the Los
coordinen
Angeles Police
con el
Department.
departamento de los policías de Los
Surprisingly, there
Ángeles.
was only one
Sorprendentemente,
memorandum of
solamente
agreement
hubo un
between
memo de
Park Rangers
acuerdo entre
and
los
the Los Angeles
guardabosques
Police
y el
Department.
Departamento
Not
de
General
Policía
Services,
de Los
not
Ángeles,
our
no servicios
convention
generales,
center,
ni
not
centro de
cultural
convenciones,
affairs.
ni
No
asuntos
way in
culturales,
which,
en
we could
ninguna
have that
manera
kind of
donde
communication,
podemos
I
tener
think,
esta
is
clase de
really
comunicación,
critical.
que es
And
bastante
post-9/11,
crítico, y después
that's
del
essential.
septiembre 11 eso es
And so you'll
sumamente
be having
esencial.
before your
Entonces
commission
ustedes
in the
tendrán
next
ante
month
su
or so,
comisión
when we've
durante el
been
siguiente
working
mes, cuando
with your
empecemos a
commission
trabajar
staff
con su
over there
personal
very
de comisión
diligently, and
muy
your inspector general
diligentemente y
to
su
bring something
inspector
to you that is
general
going
traerles
to
algo y
I think,
prestárselo a
make
ustedes que
us a safer place
nos
and
va a
more
hacer que esta
coordinated.
ciudad
So I
sea
look
más
forward to
seguro
coming
y
to you and
más
talking to each of you
coordinado.
about that.
Espero que
But
hablando con
most
ustedes
of all, wanted to say
sobre
thank
esto,
you,
pero
and
más
that
que nada quiero dar las
the history and
gracias
experience you
y la
bring is going to be a
historia
great
y
asset to
experiencia
the
que trae va a
city,
ser
and
un
compliment our
gran
mayor for
valor
appointing you today.
a la ciudad y
Congratulations.
felicito al alcalde por nombrarlo a ustedes el día de hoy. Felicitaciones.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias.
I've had the opportunity
He tenido
to
la
review your
oportunidad de
resumes and to see the
revisar
qualifications that you
sus
bring. First, I want
currículum
to
y de
thank you
mirar las
for your
calificaciones que trae.
volunteerism, for
Muchas gracias
volunteering
por
your time. A
ser
lot of people
voluntarios,
don't
por
understand that
ser
this very
voluntarios con su
critical
tiempo. Muchas personas no entienden
commission
que esta
is a
comisión es
volunteer
bastante
commission, which
importante.
means
Es
that
una
you have other lives and other
comisión
responsibilities,
sumamente como
and you
voluntarios, tienen
don't
otra
get
vida,
paid to do
responsabilidades
this.
y
Your
no reciben
satisfaction
sueldo
comes
para
in
hacer
other
esto. Su
ways.
satisfacción llega de
But
otras maneras.
that being
Pero
the case,
habiendo dicho
there's a
esto,
very critical issue
hay
that
un
faces
punto
the
muy
city and that
importante que
we've been
enfrenta la
dealing
ciudad y
with
que, el
with
cual
our
hemos
police
estado
department for
tratando con
many
el
years,
Departamento de Policía por
and that is
muchos
the
años,
consent
y es
decree. Can you
el
give me some feedback or your
decreto
opinions on
de
how you feel
consentimiento,
about
puede
the
dar su
consent
opinión de lo que
decree?
usted
Should it
piensa
continue? Has it
sobre
been
este
here too long?
decreto.
Has it been
Debe
here
de
long
continuar
enough? Have
hasta
we
mucho
actually
tiempo, nos
made
ha dado lo
some
suficiente tiempo,
success and
hemos
progress in
logrado
the demands
progreso
that
y
have been
éxito en
placed
las
on us by the federal government?
exigencias que el gobierno federal
Well, since
ha
I
puesto a nosotros.
did speak to the
Ya
consent
que yo
decree
hablé
in my first
sobre el decreto
comments, I think
de
it's too
consentimiento,
soon for
creo
any
que
of
es muy
us to
pronto
know
para
that
algunos
the
de nosotros
answers to
saber
that.
las respuestas
We need to
a
see it
eso.
from the
Tenemos que
inside. What
verlo
we know is
de
from
la
the
parte
outside
interna, lo
and
que
from the
sabemos desde
newspapers.
afuera y de los
But
periódicos.
it is one of our
Pero es
highest
una de nuestras
priorities to
prioridades
look at where we
principales
are,
el
what
mirar
we've
dónde estamos, lo
accomplished
que
under
hemos
that
logrado bajo
consent
ese
decree.
decreto de consentimiento.
Most of us, I think,
Muchos
have
de
met
nosotros
with the monitor
nos hemos reunido
preparatory
con
to
el
this. Most of us have met
monitor
also
preparándose,
with
muchos nosotros hemos reunidos
Deputy
también
Chief
con
Jerry Chaliff.
con el
And so we
subjefe
are
Jerry Chaliff y
learning
estamos
about the
aprendiendo
consent
acerca
decree,
de este
about the
decreto de
progress,
consentimiento,
and
acerca
about
del
the
progreso y
complaints and
acerca de las
concerns.
quejas y
And I think we'll
preocupaciones.
be
Y
ready
creo que
very
estaremos
soon
listos muy
to be able
pronto
to
para
give answers
poder
to
dar
the council
respuestas al
about
Consejo
those
Municipal
questions.
sobre estas preguntas.
Yes, Mr. Mack.
Let me just
Señor Mack,
add,
me gustaría
while
agregar,
it may be
mientras
a bit premature,
es
but
un
at least
poco
in my
temprano, pero al
judgment,
menos en mi juicio,
from the outside,
mirando desde afuera
in answer to your question,
y al contestar su
I
pregunta,
clearly I think there's a
claramente
need
pienso
for
que hay
a
necesidad
continuation of
de que
consent
continúe
decree.
este decreto de
I think
consentimiento. Creo
we
que
will have an opportunity over
tendremos una
the course of
oportunidad a
the
través del
coming
transcurso
months to
de los siguientes
examine
meses, el
carefully
de examinar
what,
cuidadosamente
where the
qué y
areas
dónde
are that are
están las
still
áreas que
needing to be
aún
implemented.
necesitan ser
Generally
implementadas.
speaking,
Hablando en
it's my
general, es
outside impression
mi
that,
impresión de,
some
mirando desde
positive
afuera,
steps
que
have been
ciertos
taken,
pasos positivos
but,
se han logrado, pero
at this point in time,
en
I'm
este
not
punto, en
convinced
este
that
momento, no estoy
the work has been
convencido
completed.
que se ha completado el
Thank you.
trabajo.
Any more
Bien,
opinions on
gracias.
that?
¿Alguna otra opinión?
I mirror the same comments of my fellow
Yo
commissioners.
estoy de acuerdo
I
con los
would
mismos
add that,
con los comentarios
from
de
my
mis colegas.
perspective,
Quiero agregar que de mi
that it is
perspectiva,
of the highest order
que
that the
es
city
una
comply
prioridad
with the
principal
consent decree
que la ciudad
and,
cumpla
the
con el
city
decreto de
put it
consentimiento y que
behind
la
it,
ciudad lo
and move forward with
ponga
the
atrás
goals
y
and
proceda
policies
con
of
sus
the
metas
LAPD.
y
It may
reglas
have to be
del
continuing
LAPD.
that
Quizás
process, I
tendrá que
understand,
continuar
and
este
we'll look at
proceso,
that.
entiendo, y lo
But,
consideraremos, pero
it just can't continue.
no
I
puede
think at some
continuar. Creo
point,
que en cierto
with
momento,
all deliberate speed, we have to comply
con toda
with
velocidad,
that
tenemos que
consent
cumplir
decree
con el decreto
and
del
move
consentimiento
forward.
federal y debemos de
Okay.
proceder.
Thank
Y
you.
continuar el
My
futuro.
next
Gracias. Mi
question has
siguiente
to do
pregunta
with,
tiene que ver con
an issue that you brought up
punto, una cuestión
about
que
us
usted
needing
mencionó
more
acerca de
officers.
que nosotros
Around
debemos
this
estar más
horseshoe, we've
oficiales
all
en este
agreed that
grupo.
we
Todos
need
estamos
more
de acuerdo que
officers.
necesitamos más
Now, the
oficiales.
toughest question
Ahora,
of
la
all is
pregunta
how
más
we're going to
difícil es
fund
cómo
them.
vamos a
And
pagar
we
para
had
más
the
oficiales. Y
opportunity
hemos tenido
most
la oportunidad
recently
muy
in this horseshoe
recientemente en
to
este
debate
grupo
whether or not we were going
de
to
debatir y
have a
discutir si
half-cent
íbamos a
sales
tener
tax on the
un
city
incremento de
level
medio
or on the
centavo a
entire
nivel
countywide,
municipal o en todo el
and
condado. Y
we made an attempt.
tratamos
Do you feel that we
de
need to
hacerlo.
continue to
¿Piensa
make
usted
those
que
kinds
tenemos
of
que
attempts?
continuar
Because what you're going to
tratando
find
con
out once
ese
you're on the inside of the budgeting and seeing what's going on, for the
paso,
department to
ya que
get
están
an infusion
adentro,
of
y aquí
$3
miren
million or $11
el
million
presupuesto
is
para que el
good.
departamento reciba
But that's not going to get us
11
the
millones o
additional
3 millones
1,000
también,
plus
pero no
officers
nos va a
that we
conseguir
need.
los
So we are going to have to be looking at those kinds of venues. And if we
11
have to
mil
go to the
oficiales que
voters, do you think
necesitamos.
the board members
Si
should
piensa
be
que tenemos
involved
que
in
ir ante los votantes, creo
promoting,
usted que
if
los
you agree
directivos
that
tienen que
we need
estar
to
involucrados
take one of
para
those venues, do you think that you should be
apoyar esto?
involved
¿Piensa
in
usted que
promoting
tomamos
that
este curso?
kind
¿Usted debe
of
estar involucrados
responsibility?
para apoyar esta clase de responsabilidad? Creo que
There are opportunities
hay
to
oportunidades
find operational efficiencies in the department and
para
perhaps in
encontrar
other parts of the
eficiencias
city
operacionales en el departamento, que
that
es otra
might
parte de la
avail us
ciudad
some
que nos
additional
podría
dollars to put more
dar
police
más
officers on the
dinero para
street.
poder incluir a más
Today, a
oficiales en
lot
la
of
calle.
money
Hoy
spent
mucho
on
dinero se
overtime,
gasta en
and
overtime y
if we had to
si
increase staff,
tuviéramos
for
que
example,
aumentar el
that might
personal,
help
quizás
us
eso
to
podría ayudarnos
not have to pay
no tener que
overtime, have
pagar
more
overtime y
officers
tener
on the
más
street, more
oficiales en las
full-time
calles
officers on the
tiempo
street.
completo.
I do think that there are
Pienso
revenue
que hay
opportunities and that
oportunidades
they should be
de
explored. I think
ingreso y debemos de
care should be used
explorarlos, debemos de
in
tener
how
más
we approach
cuidado
that. I
cuando lo
personally think
consideremos.
that
Yo personalmente
creating
pienso que-
an incentive for people to shop
pienso que
outside of the
crear
city
un
of Los
incentivo
Angeles
para
instead
que
of
personas
inside
compren
the
afuera de la ciudad de Los
anywhere in the
Ángeles
county of
en
Los Angeles is
cualquier parte del condado de Los
something that we
Ángeles,
should
algo que
explore very,
debemos
very
explorar
carefully
cuidadosamente
before we
antes
make that
de
leap. But
tomar
I do
ese
think
paso,
that
pero creo
revenue,
que
there may be a need for
quizás
additional
sea
revenue
para
to fund
ingresos
those
adicionales
officers. But
para
I would first look
poder pagar
inside the
para
city of
esos
Los
oficiales. Primero,
Angeles to where
me
the money's
gustaría
already being
mirar
spent.
adentro de la ciudad de Los Ángeles donde se está gastando el dinero.
I would agree
Yo
with
estoy de acuerdo con
my colleague's
mis
point.
colegas y
and
el
add
punto de
further
ellos. Y
that,
quiero agregar, además, que
I think in the final
creo
analysis,
que en el análisis final
we have to demonstrate
tenemos que demostrar
to the public
al público
that the department
que el
is
departamento
indeed making the city safer
está
across the
haciendo que
board,
esta ciudad sea más segura.
increasing confidence
Estamos
in
aumentando
those
confianza en
communities
esas
that may not
comunidades que
have
quizás no
full
tengan
confidence at this point in
confianza
time
completa en este
that the department
punto
is
y
really
que el
there to
departamento
protect
está ahí
and
para
serve for
proteger
them
y
to the
servirles
extent that
al
we can
punto
make
de
sure
que
that
podemos
the
asegurarnos que
policies
las
that
reglas
we have are being
que
fully
tenemos
implemented.
están siendo implementadas
I think it's a matter of
completamente y
building
creo
public
que es
trust,
un punto de
public
construir
confidence, and
confianza
if that
y
happens,
fe de parte del
through a
público
combination
hacia el
of
departamento. Si
looking
ocurre
at,
con una combinación de
internally
mirar
at,
internamente
potential savings on the one hand,
la
but
posibilidad de ciertos
also
ahorros
demonstrate on a
y
daily
también
basis
demostrar
that
diariamente
we
que
have a department that
tenemos un
clearly
departamento que
is
claramente
serving the public
está
and making
sirviendo
the
al
city
público y
safer
haciendo que la
and
ciudad sea
respecting all
más
individuals. I think we
seguridad y
have a
respetar a
very
todos
good
los individuos.
opportunity
Tenemos una
at,
muy buena oportunidad
convincing the voters
para convencer a los
to
votantes
approve
que aprueben
some form of taxation.
una clase de autoimpuestos.
And I certainly
Y yo
agree.
estoy de
And
acuerdo,
the
claro.
news yesterday
Ayer en las
of the
noticias,
drop in crime rates from last
la
year is the
reducción de la
type of
tasa
news
de
that the
crímenes
public should
comparado al año pasado
become
es la
more and
clase
more aware.
de
Traditionally, I have
noticias que
not seen
debe de
the
saber
police
el
commissioners
público.
themselves
Yo
being
tradicionalmente no he
a
visto a los comisionados de la
focal
policía
point
siendo un
of
punto
presentations to the public and communications with the public. And I think this
principal
particular
en estar en
group,
comunicación
with
con
its
el público,
background,
pero
would be
creo que
more
esta clase de
interested and
grupo con
more
su historial estará más interesado
active
y
in
más
that
activo
type
en esta
of
clase
communication if
de
it
comunicación.
seems to be truly
Si es que
helpful.
parece que verdaderamente
Communication
ayudará.
among all the
Comunicación entre
communities
todas las
is
comunidades
what is absolutely
es
necessary.
absolutamente
And
necesario y
communication between the
comunicación
police
entre la
commission
comisión de la
and the
policía y
officers in the
los
field
oficiales
and
en
on the
el
streets
campo
is
y en las
also
calles
crucial.
también es
So I
sumamente
think I
importante.
know
Entonces
everyone on this
sé
commission
que todos en
is
esta
committed,
comisión está
in this
comprometido
part-time
en
volunteer
este
job,
trabajo
to
part-time
open
como
those lines
voluntarios
of
para abrir
communication
estas
and increase
líneas
them.
de comunicación y aumentarlas.
To address your
Para hablar
point
sobre su
about,
punto,
the Commission's willingness to assist
sobre
in
la
getting,
disponibilidad de
more
la
officers on the
combinación para
street.
ayudar a tener a más oficiales
I
en
get a
las
sense that
calles,
there's
tengo un
optimism
sentido que hay
here
optimismo
that
aquí,
the
que
city council
el Consejo
is on board with
Municipal
that, that the
está
mayor's office is on board
apoyando
with
esto y que
that,
la
that
oficina
the
del alcalde
police
está
chief
apoyando
is
esto y
on
que el
board with
jefe de
that,
policía también
that the
está
rank and
apoyando esto,
file
que
of the police
el
department, that
los
they're on
rangos
board and that the
y
community
el personal
wants it.
del
And I think,
departamento de policía
if we
también
all
está
stand
de
together
acuerdo
on
y la
that
comunidad lo
issue,
necesita y lo quiere. Si
then it
todos
will
nos
happen,
unimos en
and
este
we'll find
punto,
the money
ocurrirá y
in the right
encontraremos el
way,
dinero
and we can-
en la
we
manera
can look to-
correcta y
to
podemos
generate the revenues
mirar para
in any
generar
way-
los
in any way that's
ingresos de
appropriate
cualquier manera
to
que sea
become more
adecuada
efficient
para
in
ser más
policing our city.
eficientes en vigilar las
And
calles.
just one other point,
Un
and we've
punto más.
spoken
Ya hemos
with,
hablado con
various of the council members
diferentes
about it.
concejales
It is
sobre
not
esto.
just finding
No
the money
solamente
for
es
the
encontrar el
officers,
dinero para
it
los
is finding the
oficiales, es encontrar a los
officers. And that
oficiales
is part of
también.
the
Esto es parte de
communication
la
goals that we all
comunicación y las
have.
metas de comunicación que todos
For this
tenemos
council,
para
for
este
this
Consejo
mayor,
Municipal, para
for
este
this
alcalde,
commission,
para esta
to
comisión,
make sure
el de
that these are
asegurarnos que
jobs
estos
that are
son
sought
trabajos
after,
que
by the
son
most
buscados
diverse members
por
of
los
our
miembros más
community.
diversos de la
And I
comunidad
certainly
y
know that this
yo
commission
sé
is
que
committed to that
esta
as well.
comisión está comprometido a esto también.
Well, I appreciate the answers to the
Aprecio sus
questions. I'm
respuestas a estas
excited about
preguntas y estoy muy
you coming on the
emocionado
commission, and I wholly support every single
de que
one of you.
ustedes han
And I
aceptado
look forward to
este
working with you in the
nombramiento
future.
y los
And I think it's
apoyo
very
cada y a todos
important,
ustedes y espero
John,
continuar
that
trabajando
what
con
you
ustedes en el
pointed
futuro. Es
out
muy
that
importante, John,
not
lo que mencionaste es
everybody
que
in
no
this
todos
city
en esta
views the
ciudad
police
mira o
individuals and the
considera
police
a los
department in the
individuos en el
same way.
departamento de policía de la
And if we
misma
can
manera y
raise
si
that
podemos
level of
elevar ese
uniformity,
nivel
of
de
acceptance
unión,
and
de aceptancia y de
harmony within all
armonía
communities,
dentro de
I
todas
think
las
that's a
comunidades, creo
wonderful
que
thing,
esto es
and I like
algo
what I'm
muy,
hearing,
muy importante. Me
because
gusta lo que
this
estoy escuchando
panel
porque este
actually
panel
understands that not everybody
entiende
sees the
que no
police
todos
department in the
miran
same
o
way,
consideran el
and
departamento
there's
de
a
policía
lot
de
of
una manera. Hay
responsibility
muchas
on many
responsabilidades
sides in
en
order to
muchas
bring that
partes
together
para
so we
poder
can have
unir
a
todo
proper
uno, para
balance.
poder
So
tener
thank you
un
very much.
equilibrio adecuado. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Muchas
Our
gracias.
next speaker
El
is
siguiente
Councilmember
presentador es
Rosendahl.
concejal Rosendahl.
Thank you, Madam President.
Gracias, señora Presidente.
Good morning.
Buenos días.
In my opinion,
En mi
your
opinión,
commission is the most
Su comisión
important
es la
commission
comisión
in the
más
city.
importante en la ciudad.
The police responsibility
La
is to
responsabilidad de la
protect
policía es de
and to
proteger y
serve.
de servir.
The word protect and to
Las
serve.
palabras
All of
proteger y
us.
servir a todos
Few
nosotros.
questions I'd
Unas
like
cuantas
you to think
preguntas que me
about
gustaría que
over
ustedes
time.
piensen en el
I've been
futuro.
told by
A
some
mí
rank
se me
and
ha dicho
file
por ciertos
that
miembros de
there
la
are too many
policía que hay
officers
muchísimos
behind the
oficiales
desk and they should
atrás del
be out in the
escritorio y deben
field.
de estar afuera en la
I've heard
comunidad.
that
Yo he
complaint
escuchado
for
esa
years. I
queja
have
año
no
tras
idea
año.
if there's
No
any
tengo idea
validity
si
to that at
hay
all,
alguna
and that some of the
verdad a eso, ¿no?
officers
Que
could
ciertos
go out on the
oficiales
beat, could get
podrían
in the car, and civilians
salir en el carro a
could take
patrullar y los
over
civiles
some of the
podrían
responsibilities that
encargarse de
sworn
las
officers
responsabilidades
have.
que los
Please look
oficiales que
into
han tomado
behind the
juramento
desk
con
and putting them
uniforme
out in the field.
tienen. Por favor, consideren eso,
Inspector
de
General.
quitarlos del escritorio
The
y
Inspector General,
sacarlos
to
en el
me, is the most important
la comunidad.
watchdog for the people
El
other
inspector
than the
general, ese
commission.
es el
I want you
departamento
to
de
let us
vigilancia más
know
importante,
if
además
it
de la
has
comisión.
enough
Quiero que nos
teeth,
digan si tiene suficiente
enough
fuerza,
resources, and
suficientes
has the
recursos y si tiene
opportunity
la
to do
oportunidad
thorough,
de
independent
hacer
investigations.
investigaciones detalladas e
You can't
independientes.
have
Uno no
the
puede tener
department do
el
all of its
departamento
own
hacer todas sus propias
investigations, and the
investigaciones
Inspector General
y el
needs the
inspector general
support.
tiene
I'm
que
going to be interested
apoyar.
to see
Me
a year
interesa
from
saber
now
dentro de
how
un
you all
año cómo
feel
todos ustedes se
about the
sienten
Inspector
sobre
General's role.
la posición
And
del
if I
inspector
could
general y si
talk to Shelley
quiero
Friedman
hablar con la
directly.
señora Friedman
Shelley,
directly.
I'm
Shelley,
an openly gay guy.
yo
It's not
soy una
who
persona
my life
homosexual
is, but
abierta, no
it
es mi
goes with
vida
the
esa, pero
territory
va con el
now on
territorio
the
ahora
city council,
en
and
el
I'm
Consejo
compelled to
Municipal
deal with
y yo
basic
estoy
civil
listo
rights
a tratar
issues
con asuntos
for a
básicos de derechos
minority
civiles
that is
para
still
minoridades que
discriminated
aún
against. You're an open
están
lesbian?
sufriendo de discriminación. También es
And what do you
lesbiana,
see as your
abierta sí.
responsibilities
¿Y
for the
cuál
gay
de
and
ustedes sus
lesbian,
responsabilidades para
bisexual, transgender
Well,
community?
I
la
think there's a
comunidad
few things, and again,
homosexual y
I do need
bisexual
to get up
y
the learning
lesbiana?
curve,
Creo,
but overall, I think
en
that
general,
there are remaining tensions
hay
between the
tensiones
LAPD and the
aún
gay and
entre la
lesbian
PD y la
community,
comunidad
particularly
lesbiana
the
y
gay
homosexual, en
men.
particular los hombres
And I think that there's
homosexuales,
some
y pienso que
understanding that
hay
can be developed
entendimiento que
there
podría
that would
mejorar, desarrollarse ahí, que
get police officers
haría que los agentes de
spending their time doing
policía
other things,
que pasan tiempo haciendo otras
perhaps
cosas,
not
quizás
worried about what
no
gay men are
estén
doing.
preocupados de lo que están
I
haciendo
think
los
that
hombres
we need more gays and lesbians on the
homosexuales,
force,
estamos más
and we need
hombres
more
homosexuales y
understanding
lesbianas en
and
el
sensitivity
departamento
within the
policial.
force in terms
Necesito
of
más
discrimination within the force
entendimiento y
itself for the
sensibilidad
gay and
dentro
lesbian
del
community.
departamento, dentro de la
Thank you for
comunidad
that.
lesbiana. Gracias.
The overall issue of the
El
number
punto
of rank
general de
and
la
file, the
cantidad de
chief says we
oficiales,
need
el jefe dice que
12,000.
necesitamos 12,000.
I tend to agree
Yo
that
estoy de
we do
acuerdo
need
que
more, and I
necesitamos
look
más,
forward
y
to
espero
reporting back on the mechanisms we need to put in
un
place
reporte
to
más
get
acerca
more
de
police.
los puntos que
Congratulations to all
estamos
four
fijos
of you.
para
Look
recibir más
forward to
policía.
working with
Felicitaciones a
you.
todos ustedes. Espero continuar trabajando con
Thank you very
ustedes.
much, Ms.
Muchas gracias,
Rosendahl.
señor
Now, Council
Rosendahl.
President Padilla.
Concejal y
Thank
presidente
you.
municipal.
And
Padilla.
colleagues,
Muchas
I'm
gracias,
glad,
colegas. Me da mucho
it might
gusto
have taken a minute, but I'm glad everybody's
que
pushing their
todos
button
están
to
oprimiendo
speak
su
on this
botón para hablar
because
sobre esto,
just
porque
following in the spirit of what we had just
después del
last week
espíritu de lo que ocurrió la semana
with other
pasada, con otros
confirmations and
nombramientos
the
de
motion
comisión
that
y la
Mr.
moción
Parks
que el
brought
señor
in to make
Parks
sure that the
presentó
council
para asegurarse
confirmation
que
process
el
is
proceso de
more
nombramiento y
substantive than it has been
confirmación
historically. These
de
are important
comisión
questions to ask of our
sea
commissioners
sustancial. Es un
well,
punto
granted,
importante
there may be
hacerle a todos los
somewhat of a learning
comisionados.
curve
Claro,
for some
también
of
es
you.
cierto aprendizaje
At
para
least it
algunos de
gives
ustedes,
us a
al menos nos
sense
da
to begin
un
to
sentido de
understand your
empezar a
views
entender sus
in
puntos de
addition to the
vista,
expertise
además
that you bring
de
to the table,
la experiencia que
to serve in
traen
these
y sabiduría que
capacities.
trae
I have a series of questions
para
as well, and I guess
esta capacidad. Tengo varias
part A
preguntas
is
también.
yes or
Parte
no,
A,
have you
sí
been
o no,
briefed on
se les
fill in
ha
the blank?
informado en bla, bla,
And
bla. Y B,
what your views are in the
cuáles son sus
following
puntos de vista
categories.
en la
Some
siguiente
have been touched
categoría.
upon already.
Cierto, ya se ha
The
mencionado
consent decree.
el
We've
decreto de
heard from you on the
consentimiento.
consent decree.
Hemos escuchado de
The
ustedes
issue,
sobre eso,
ongoing
el
issue
punto
of the
continuo
expansion of the
de
police department, the number
ampliar
of
el parte de
officers,
policía, la cantidad de
and our funding for
oficiales
that.
y dinero para esto.
And then
Y
your views on the
su
role of
punto
the
de
Inspector
vista
General. So,
en la
I
posición
won't
de
ask you to
inspector
repeat
general. No
those
les voy a
again, but
pedir
I
que
am
repitan
interested
eso, no,
in,
pero sí me
your
interesa
experience, your views,
saber su
and if you've
experiencia,
been
su punto de
briefed
vista,
on
si ya
the policies when
tienen
it comes to officer-involved shootings.
más sobre en cuanto a las
And if
reglas
you'd hold my time, Madam Chair.
balaceras que involucren a
Officer-involved
policías.
shootings.
To me, there's no more
Para mí,
important
no hay nada
issue
más importante
that the department and this
que
commission
en
and
el
the
departamento y
city
esta comisión
has
y en
to
la ciudad
address than
tiene
officer-involved shootings, because this is a matter
tratar.
of life
Y esto
and
es
death.
balaceras que
And
involucran
we've
a oficiales de
had
esto,
too
tiene
many
que ver con vidas y muertes y hemos tenido muchas
tragedies
tragedias
in which
donde
lives of
las
citizens,
vidas de ciudadanos,
innocent citizens have been taken on
ciudadanos
the one hand,
inocentes
and
han
in other
sido
instances, officers
quitadas
have been
y
taken.
al
So
lo
to me,
contrario,
it's
oficiales también han
absolutely
fallecido. Y para mí
imperative
es
that we have
muy importante
policies that are
justamente
clear
tener reglas
and
bastante bastante claras.
Certainly, we're going to be looking
Y
at the
vamos a
existing
mirar
policies. I'm not
las
suggesting
reglas
they don't exist.
actuales. No estoy
But
sugiriendo
it's
que no
one thing to
existen,
have
pero
the
es algo
policy, but
tener
it's
la
another thing
regla,
to make sure the
reglas, pero es
policies
otra cosa
are
asegurarse
fully
que estas reglas
and
completamente
strenuously implemented. So I, for one, will be a
estrictamente se
very strong
implementadas. Yo
advocate
voy a ser una
because
activista
that has
bastante fuerte
been
porque esto
a
ha sido
real flashpoint,
un punto,
quite
un
frankly,
punto
historically, in the relationship between members of the
sumamente
department
delicado y
and
fuerte,
certainly
particularmente
communities
con
that
miembros del
I
Departamento de
have been
Policía y en las
very
comunidades
actively
donde
involved
he estado muy activamente involucrado.
And as some of you know, I
Como
sat on the
ustedes saben,
Christopher
yo
Commission in the wake of the
tomé
Rodney
parte
King
en
beating.
en la
And
comisión de
so
Christopher
was
Commission
familiar with
después de
the
Rodney King
extraordinary effect that officer-involved shootings have
el
on the
efecto extraordinario
communities
que
and the
las
ability to
balaceras
have the
que
kind of
involucran
relationship
policías
that
en las
we have been
comunidades y
talking
tener la
about.
clase de relación que hemos
We
estado
also
mencionando se afecta bastante. También reconocemos
recognized that
que
internally much more had to be
internamente
done
se
in the
tiene que hacer
department.
mucho más en
That
el
was quite a long
departamento.
time
Esto fue
ago,
hace
and we're
mucho
still
tiempo y aún
waiting 4
estamos
years later
esperando 4
for
años
Teams
después
2 to come
para
online.
que
So we have seen there are ways
el sindicato
to
se
manage
involucre. Hay
and
maneras
work
de
in
administrar y
this
trabajar
area,
en
in
esta
training,
área y
in
entrenamiento
determining
y decidiendo
how best to
cuál es la
manage
mejor manera
that,
para
the
administrar
policies, the officers, and the
esas reglas
procedures
a
in
los
that
oficiales
regard.
y
And for
los
various
procedimientos en
reasons,
cuanto a
we're
esto y
still
por
very
diferentes
far
razones
behind
estamos muy
on Teams 2,
atrasados en
and the hope is that
equipo
that
2
can
y
be put
esperamos que esto
into
pueda
effect in the
entrar en
near future.
efecto
If
dentro
I may
de
just,
poco.
excuse me, just another thought, and while we certainly want
Otro
to be
pensamiento,
sure that we
mientras
respect
queremos
the due
asegurar
process
que
rights
respetemos los
of
derechos de
individual
proceso
officers
legal adecuado de
involved in
oficiales
instances
individuales
of
que están involucrados en
involved shootings,
incidentes
but in my
de
opinion,
balaceras involucradas
yes,
en
training is
policías.
important.
En mi opinión,
It's
entrenamiento es muy
important to
importante, es
have policy in
importante
place,
tener
and upon
reglas
analysis,
fijas, pero en análisis
those
final,
officers
esos
who, after
oficiales
having
que
gone through the
después de
due
haber
process rights,
recibido
and it's
sus
been
derechos
determined
adecuados,
that,
derechos
if
legales,
it has
se ha
been
decidido que
determined that,
y si se decide
they
que
they're guilty
son
of,
culpables de
officer involved shootings of operating outside of policy
balaceras
or
involucradas con
tactical, what have
policía
you.
y
To me, it's very important that they be held accountable. And the final
se
analysis,
han comportado más
accountability
allá
is
de
the
lo que
bottom
están sus
line.
reglas, responsabilidad,
There
responsabilidad,
are
datos
many
responsabilidades son
dimensions
más
to this
importantes. Hay
issue,
muchas
and in
dimensiones a
addition to Teams
este
2 and
punto,
having
además
that
el
system
Teams
running as an
2,
early warning
este
system, sort
sistema
of a system
funcionando, el
that can
sistema de
provide
alerta
us
temprana,
red
el sistema
flags
que nos
and
puede
things that
dar
John has
banderas
discussed.
rojas y las
I think
cosas que ha hablado
the,
John.
one of the
Creo
areas
que
to
una de las
focus on
áreas
is
en las que
the
nos tenemos que
investigative
concentrar es el
process seems
proceso
to be very, very long.
es bastante
And it's
largo.
important to be
Es
thorough, but
importante
it
ser
seems like
detallado,
because
pero
these are
parece, ya que
flashpoints
estos
in the
son
community,
puntos de
that,
alerta en la comunidad,
looking at that
mirando
investigative
ese
process
proceso
and finding ways to expedite
investigativo y
that process
encontrar maneras de
is,
apresurar ese
is something
proceso
that
es
we ought to
algo
be
que
focused
debemos de
on,
concentrarnos
to get,
para
when we do have officer
y
involved
tenemos
shootings, to find out what happened,
si una
to
causa
be
clase
very
de
transparent to
incidentes
the
para ser
community
más
in terms of
transparentes,
what's
muy
happened,
transparentes a la comunidad en cuanto a lo
and
que
to then
ocurrió,
move forward
luego
and move forward
proceder y
with
proceder
teeth, as John has said, when
con
we do find
fuerza,
that
como dice
something
ya, cuando
has been done
encontramos que
wrong to
algo se ha
enforce that
hecho
policy.
incorrectamente
So,
para que se cumpla esa
Councilman
regla.
Padilla,
Concejal
I
Padilla,
served as counsel
yo
on the
serví
Rampart
como
Independent Review Panel,
abogado en
and
el
part of my
panel de
focus
revisión
was
de Rampart.
officer-involved
Parte de
shootings
mi
and
enfoque
excessive force
fue
incidents.
incidentes de fuerza
I'm keenly
excesiva
aware
y
of
de
the
balaceras
impact
involucrados
that those
con
events have on
oficiales
the
y estoy al tanto
community.
y
At
sé
the
los
same time, I'm keenly
impactos
aware
que tienen,
that
esos
we
eventos
need to
tienen
have
causa
policies
en la
that are
comunidad, pero al
clear,
mismo tiempo
that officers in the
estoy al
field
tanto
under
que tenemos
pressure
que
can
tener claras
understand,
reglas para que los oficiales
we
bajo
can't
presión en la
have
comunidad
enormous numbers of
entiendan,
special
no
orders
podemos
and
tener
inconsistent
diferentes
policies,
cantidades
that we've
de
got to
órdenes
give them
especiales
clarity
y
in the field. If we
órdenes
expect
no
clear
consistentes. Si
thinking of officers, of
esperamos
men and women in the field, then we have to provide them that guidance
decisiones
at this level,
claras de
and
los
it's got to
oficiales que
be
están
top
en la
down through the
comunidad,
rank and
debemos de
file.
darles guías
Also, I
claras,
think,
debe de ser desde arriba hacia
Mr.
los
Mack
oficiales que están en la
mentioned,
comunidad. También el señor Mack mencionó
discipline, and I think
disciplina
that's
y
going to
creo
be
que esto
very
va a ser
important
muy
that
importante que
tactically, professionally,
tácticamente y
procedurally, that our men and women in the
bajo proceso,
field
que hombres y
are
mujeres en el campo
disciplined, trained
sean
officers
oficiales
who
con disciplina y bien
follow the
entrenados,
rules.
que
And
siguen
when
las
they
reglas y
don't,
cuando no,
in those few
en
instances
esos
when they
pocos
do
instantes
not
cuando no
abide by
siguen
appropriate policies,
reglas,
then we need
reglas
to act.
adecuadas, entonces
And we
debemos de
need to
tomar
act,
acción, tenemos que
quickly.
tomar acción
And I think that's
rápidamente y
what
creo
you'll
que
find
eso es lo que
with members of this
se
commission.
darán cuenta con miembros de
My,
esta
my
comisión.
second question is,
Mi
have you
segunda
been briefed,
pregunta
have you
es,
not been briefed,
¿ya
and what are
se
your
le ha
thoughts
informado o
on
no se
the
les ha informado
flexible
con sus
work schedule
pensamientos en
that's
el horario
currently in place in the
flexible de trabajo que
department?
actualmente está fijo en el
No, I have not
departamento?
been briefed
No,
on flexible
no
work
me han
schedule.
dicho información sobre
Just what
ese
I read in the
tema.
paper, I
Solamente
think
lo que leí en el
that,
periódico. Creo que
a flexible work schedule
un
is
horario
important,
flexible de
I think, for
trabajo es
recruitment
importante para
purposes. It
propósitos
creates
de
some
reclutación,
complications in the
crea ciertas
actual running of the force in
complicaciones
terms of having
en
officers on the
administrar la
street.
fuerza y tener oficiales oficiales en las
days a week,
calles, 7 días
24
por
hours a
semana,
day,
24
but I
horas
think
al
that
día,
those
pero
are
creo que
issues that
esos
can be
son
worked
asuntos
with.
que
So I think the
podemos
real
trabajar
issue
con
is
ellos. Creo que
putting
el
more
punto
officers
real
out
es
there.
de tener más oficiales en las calles.
have not been officially briefed on it, but I'll read the
No me
papers as
han
well and talk to people
dado información
both
oficialmente,
inside
pero
the
leo los
force and
periódicos sobre
outside.
personas adentro y fuera
And
de
it
la fuerza de
obviously is
policía
going
y
to be a
obviamente
matter
va
on
a ser
our
un
agenda.
punto importante en nuestra agenda.
In my law firm,
En
we
mi
have flexible
despacho de abogados
hours,
tenemos horas
and
flexibles
many
y
other
muchos
businesses do
otros
very well with
negocios
it. And I know it is
funciona
a
muy
matter
bien
of
y yo
great
sé que
importance
es un
to
punto de
morale and
una
to the
importancia
police officers. So
muy alta
I think
importancia
it will be
para
on our
la
table,
moral.
I'm sure, to
Agentes de
look at.
policías, esto va
I
a ser algo que
think I have a
consideraremos.
personal feeling that
Tengo
flexible
sentimiento personal
hours
que horas
are
flexibles
desirable
son
and almost
deseables y
essential.
casi son
I guess some of the
esenciales.
question will be how
Creo que la
flexible
pregunta
and what are
será
those
qué tan
numbers, and I
flexibles
think
y
we will
cuántas
be
personas están
looking at
interesadas
that.
en eso y eso es lo que consideraremos.
It will be important for
Va a
us
ser importante para
to talk to the rank
nosotros
and
poder
file
hablar
officers
con
to
los
see what
oficiales
their wishes
para
are
ver
in
cuáles son
terms
deseos
of
de ellos en
morale
cuanto
development
al
and in
desarrollo
terms
del
of
moral,
their
su
work schedules.
moral,
We need to be able
de
to put
trabajo
them
y
in a
sus horarios de
position
trabajo.
to
Tenemos
enable
que
them to
ponerlos
best
en
do
una
their
posición
job.
para que
And in
puedan
terms
hacer
of
de mejor manera su
flexible
trabajo en
hours, if
cuanto a horas
that's what it
flexibles,
takes
y
and
eso es
if
lo
it's
que es
appropriate to
necesario, si
do
es
so,
adecuado
then I
hacerlo.
think
Entonces creo
those are the
que
types of
esas son
things
las
that we need to
clases
consider
de
from an
puntos que debemos de
employment
considerar de
perspective
una
to make
perspectiva de
our
empleo
forces
para que nuestras
a lot more
fuerzas
efficient
sean más
than they
eficientes
may be.
de lo que quizás ya son.
Third question.
Tercera pregunta.
Have you been briefed,
¿Se
not
les
been
ha
briefed, your
informado
views on the unique category of crime? Crime is
o
down
no se les ha informado
overall,
acerca
geographically
de sus
throughout the
puntos de
city,
vista?
in most
Geográficamente, la
categories,
tasa de
except
crimen ya ha
for crimes
disminuido,
being
excepto
committed
por
by
crímenes
young
que están
people, the
siendo
gang violence problem in the city
perpetrados
is
por los
certainly
jóvenes,
unique.
los problemas de
Your
pandillas
views?
en la ciudad.
haven't
Claro,
been,
no es
briefed
único,
on that
no nos
at
dan
all.
información sobre esto.
I haven't been briefed, but
Tampoco a
I've
mí,
lived
pero
with
yo he
it
vivido
in
con
my
esto
other life, and
en
I
mi
know
otra
that
vida. Yo sé que
gang violence is a
violencia
very, very
pandilleril
serious
es
problem,
un problema
and
muy, muy
it
serio
clearly
y
has to be
claramente
a
tiene que ser
priority
una
issue
prioridad
for this commission
para
and
esta
for the
comisión y para el
department, for the
departamento y
city.
para la ciudad.
I think it's very
Creo
important
que es muy
that
importante que
those individuals
esos
who are
individuos que
perpetrating
están
violence and
perpetuando
violent crimes
violencia
against other
y
people
delitos
are held
violentos en contra de otras
accountable.
personas que
By the
tienen
same token, I
que
think it's
tomar
important
responsabilidad
that
y
on a
creo al
broader
mismo tiempo es
basis,
importante que a
and this
nivel
goes
más
beyond
general,
the immediate
esto es más allá de las responsabilidades
responsibility of the police commission,
inmediatas de la
but I think
Comisión
that
de
it's
Policía, pero
important
creo que es
there
importante
be intervention and prevention
haya
programs
intervención y
made
programas de
available so
prevención
that
que sean
young
disponibles
people
para que los
in the
jóvenes
various
en
communities,
diferentes comunidades,
especially,
especialmente
communities that are
comunidades
underserved,
que
have viable options and
en áreas pobres
alternatives, have a
tengan
reason to
opciones
want
viables y
to do something
alternativas y
positive in their
tengan
lives
una
as
razón
opposed to
para hacer algo
becoming
positivo en sus vidas
member
en
of a
vez
gang.
de
But I
ingresar a
think
una
that
pandilla,
clearly
pero creo
we must,
claramente que
everybody must
todos
respect
debemos
human
de
life,
respetar la
and
vida de un ser
anyone who
humano,
takes the
cualquier
life of
persona
another
que
person
quita la vida de un ser
or
humano
seriously
o de otra
harms
persona
another person
o
needs to be
seriamente
held
daña a otra persona
accountable.
tiene que hacerse responsable.
I too have not
Yo
been officially
también no
briefed,
me
but
han dado información
beginning in
oficialmente, pero empezando en
1957, when I was still in
1957,
high
cuando aún
school,
estaba en la preparatoria,
there were gang violence in the east side of
había
some
violencia de
seriousness
pandillas
enough
en el
to make
este
the
muy
front pages of the
seriamente
Los
suficiente para
Angeles
estar
Times.
en
And
las
I have, in my
páginas
professional life, seen the
principales
cyclical
del
nature of
periódico de LA
and the
Times. En mi vida he
horrors
visto
of gang violence in
los
our
horrores de
community.
violencia
It
pandilleril en
seems
nuestra
to
comunidad.
me,
Me
again,
parece de
from
nuevo
the outside, not
desde
yet from
afuera,
the
no
inside,
aún desde
that it
adentro,
may
que
be as bad as it has ever been today.
está
And
igual
all of the
de
tools
mala
that
hora
we have
a
used
como
through
estamos.
these
Todas las
last
herramientas
30
que
and
hemos usado en
40
los últimos
years
30
should be
o
brought
40 años
together in one
deben de
place and try
unirse en
and
un lugar y
determine
tratar de
what we can
decidir qué es lo que
do. The
podemos
death of our
hacer.
children,
La muerte de nuestros
innocent
niños,
children,
niños
innocent
inocentes,
people,
personas
day in and
inocentes
day
día
out,
tras
because
día
of gang
por
violence,
violencia
cannot
pandilleril no
continue in our
puede continuar en
society.
nuestra sociedad.
And we do have the resources, that we
Y
can
tenemos
find
los
the
recursos
answers.
y podemos
It
encontrar
has
las
been cyclical. There
respuestas.
have been times when it
Ha
hasn't been
habido
anywhere near as
tiempos
bad
cuando
as
no
it
ha
is
sido
now,
tan malo
and we
como
have to find
ahorita
out why
y
that
tenemos
is
que
and
encontrar y
start
saber por
addressing
qué
it.
y empezar a
I've had the
mejorar.
opportunity to speak with Councilman Reyes on this issue, and he is very much a
He hablado con
promoter
el
of
concejal Reyes
early
y él ha sido
intervention with
un gran
kids
apoyador
to
de
try
intervención
to
temprana
deal
con
with
los
this
jóvenes
gang
para tratar de
problem
mejorar
and
ese problema
to address the
pandilleril y
needs early
de
on so
desde un
that police
principio
officers later don't have to arrest
mejorar
people
esas
and so that we don't
necesidades
have
para
to
que siempre
incarcerate
policía no
people.
arresten a esos
So I think
jóvenes
it's
y
very
así
important
encarcelarlos.
that
Y
the
por lo tanto creo que es muy
police
importante que el
department be
departamento
part
de
of the
policía
community and reach
sea
out
parte de la
to
comunidad
through
e
community
incluya a
policing,
través de vigilancia de la
through,
comunidad seguridad
kids in our schools.
para
And
niños
to
en
let
nuestras
them know there's
escuelas
a
y
different
decirles que
way,
hay un
that,
camino
it doesn't have to be
diferente, que no
the
tiene que
gang way,
ser
that there are
el camino de la
alternatives.
pandilla, que
And
hay
also to send
alternativas
a
y también
deterrent
para
message that that's not
enviar
something that
un
kids should
mensaje
fall into.
como
Like
alternativa y que no es algo que los niños
the city
tomen en
council recently
El Consejo Municipal
voted
recientemente
to create
votó
a new department.
para
As I
crear un nuevo
understand it,
departamento, es mi
to
entendimiento,
authored by former council member Martin Ludlow. And
el
it
cual
seemed to
fue
me
presentado
that
por el previo
that
concejal
has a lot
Ludlow,
of
y parece que
potential
eso tiene
there, and I would
mucha
certainly urge the
potencial, y les
council
pido a
to
los
make sure
concejales
that
que se aseguren
you
que
give, make this a
hagan
priority,
que eso sea
because I
una
think this
prioridad, porque
would
creo que
provide an
esto
opportunity for those
proveerá una
alternatives I talked
oportunidad
about.
And I
para esas
mentioned, gang
alternativas que
activity in
mencionamos.
particular
Mencionó
because
actividad
since 9/11,
panelil,
there's
en
been a
particular
lot of
porque desde
prioritization,
septiembre
a lot of
11 ha habido mucho
emphasis
otro
on broader homeland
priorización,
security
mucho énfasis en más
concerns.
seguridad
And not to diminish
nacional, y
those,
no quiero disminuir la
but
importancia de
on
eso,
equal
pero
footing, in my
al
opinion,
mismo
at
tiempo, en mi
least,
opinión,
is the
lo
crime being
mínimo
committed,
es el
by
crimen
gangs,
que está siendo
and the
perpetrado
impact on our
por
quality of life
las
in some
pandillas
of
y el
our
impacto en nuestra
local,
calidad de vida y
neighborhoods.
en ciertas
Just a
comunidades
couple more
locales. Unas
questions.
cuantas más preguntas.
The next one is
La siguiente
Special
es
Order 40.
Orden especial
Have you
40.
been briefed? Have you not been briefed? Your
¿Han
views?
recibido información, sus puntos de vista?
No.
No.
I haven't been briefed on it.
No,
I
no me han
know
dado
the issue. I
información
think
sobre
it's
eso.
something
Yo sé, es
that
un
we're going to have to
asunto,
take
es algo
a
que vamos a
close
tener
look
que
at.
mirar
That
muy
is when
cercanamente, y es cuando los
officers stop
oficiales
individuals on the
paran a
street, should they be
individuos en
asking
la calle,
about
tienen
their
que preguntar
status
acerca
in
de
the
su
country.
estatus
And I
legal en
think
el
it's
país, y
something
creo
that,
que es algo
it's a serious issue.
que es un
It's an
asunto
issue
muy
that
serio, es un
should
asunto
be
que
examined.
debe de
I
ser
think it's,
considerado.
premature
Creo
for
que
us
es
to
muy
weigh in
temprano
on that now
hablar
without
sobre
saying
esto
sort of
ahorita sin
where we
haber
are in
visto
connection
dónde
with the
estamos
implementation
en
of Special
conexión
Order 40.
con la
But I
implementación
do
de
think
Orden
it's
Especial
something
40,
that
pero
is
creo que
in
es
Los
algo
Angeles,
en
in
Los
such a
Ángeles,
diverse community,
de una comunidad tan diversa,
something that we
es algo
absolutely
que
will need to
absolutamente
address.
necesitaremos
And
incluir.
another issue
Bien,
that's
otro punto
timely, Special Order 40, with the chief and
que
the
tiene que ver
department
con la Orden
undergoing
Especial
what they
40 y el jefe de
call a
policía en el departamento,
clarification
lo que yo
of
llamo una
what that
aclaración
policy
de lo
is for
que
the
es esa
officers
regla para
to,
los oficiales,
better
para
understand
mejor
and be able
entender
to
y
implement in
poder
their policing
implementar en
duties.
su
And finally,
trabajo de
no
policía. Es muy
response
importante.
necessary on this,
Finalmente,
just know that this is
no
one
respuesta,
of my
solamente
personal pet
es
peeves.
mi
The percentage of LAPD officers living
algo
within the city.
personal.
We've been
La
told
cantidad
time
de
and time
agentes de
again that
policía
we
que viven
can't
en la ciudad
enforce
nos han dicho que no
requirements,
podemos
of police officers, or any
exigir
city staff for that matter, for residency. But I gotta believe there's
para a
incentives we
los
can
agentes de
provide so that
policía
we
que
can
viven
up the
dentro de la
number.
ciudad, pero creo que
It's
hay
in
diferentes
the
incentivos para poder
low
aumentar la cantidad. Ahorita
teens, the percentage
está
of
en los
LAPD officers who live within the city limits. So if we're talking about,
el porcentaje es muy
just
bajo,
community
el porcentaje de
relations
las
in general,
oficiales
and
que viven en la
ownership of the
comunidad.
job, care, genuine care for the city, there's got to be
Esto
something we can do
aumentará
to increase the number of officers and the percentage of
orgullo,
officers
los agentes de
living in the
policía,
city. What I've tried to outline in this series
y
of
más
questions for you
vigilancia y
is
más
not a requirement that
importancia
you
para
be
ellos que viven
experts or
en la
PhDs in any of these categories, but somewhat of
comunidad
a
de Los
blueprint
Ángeles, sino
for
fuera.
what's on
Y yo
your
sé que el
plate
porcentaje de ellos está muy
as you
bajo,
take this assignment,
que está
consent
en
decree
su
and its implementation,
agenda,
you know,
implementación del
beginning
decreto
with
de
Teams 2,
consentimiento,
but at a
empezando
very
por
critical
Teams
time as
2,
we hope
pero
to
en un
be
momento muy
in
importante.
full compliance
Esperamos que
and
estemos
free of the
en
consent decree in the
cumplimiento
next year.
completamente
The
y
funding of
libres de
police
ese
officers is going to continue to be on the plate
consentimiento,
until we
decreto de
hit
consentimiento
those
también.
12,500
El
marks.
contratando
And a
a
wave
oficiales
of
que lleguen a los
retirements
11,000,
anticipated in the next
12,000
couple of
y
years are only going to add to
jubilación
the
que se
problem.
anticipa en los
Officer-involved
agregará
shootings,
al
flexible
problema.
work schedule, and its
Horario flexible de
analysis,
trabajo,
has it worked,
balaceras
has it not
involucradas con el
worked? When we
oficial,
first
en su análisis
implemented
ha
the
funcionado,
flexible work
funcionado.
schedule,
Por
it was
primero
done with that, I
implementamos
believe,
el
from
trabajo
my point
inflexible,
of view,
pero yo creo
three
en punto de
priorities
vista
in
tres
mind.
prioridades en mente:
Improving the morale of the
mejorar
police
el moral
department,
del departamento de
improving
policía,
recruitment and
mejorar
retention of police officers, and
reclutamiento
reducing
y
crime.
retención y
So
reducción de
as we
crimen.
look
Entonces,
at
mientras ustedes miran
4 years later, 5
correr
years
después,
later,
5 años después,
reports, those are the indicators I'm
esos
going to
son
look
los
to
indicadores y factores
in
que yo
determining whether or
miraré
not to
para decir
extend
o no
the flexible work
ampliar
schedule.
el
Homeland
horario de
Security,
trabajo flexible,
gang
seguridad
violence,
nacional,
Special Order
violencia
40,
pandilleril, orden
the
especial
role and
40,
independence
la
of the
posición
Inspector
e
General and
independencia
how
del
that all
inspector
fits.
general y cómo
And I'll leave you with
qué punto
this.
toma. Y terminaré diciendo esto.
You're the police commissioner for the
Ustedes,
city of Los Angeles, the
ustedes
second
serán la
largest city in
comisión de
America,
policía en la
probably
ciudad
the
de Los
most
Ángeles, segunda
recognized
ciudad más
police
grande en
force
América.
around the
Quizás
world. We have
el grupo de
a
agentes de
tremendous
policía más reconocido en
chief
todo el mundo. Tenemos un
in Chief
gran
Bratton.
jefe, con el jefe Bratton.
You're his boss.
Ustedes
He
son
reports to you.
los patrones de él.
He
Él tiene que
reports
reportarse a ustedes.
to you.
Él se
That's a
reporta a
tremendous
ustedes. Eso es una
opportunity. It's a
oportunidad
tremendous
tremenda. Es una
responsibility.
responsabilidad tremenda.
But the entire police
Pero todo
department,
el
because of the
departamento de
organizational
policía
chart,
por lo-
also reports to you. So those of you who have already been proactive on reaching out to the rank and
también se
file,
reportan
I
ustedes.
commend you for that. And
Los
I
felicito
encourage
a
all
ustedes
of
y
you
les pido a
to
todos
make the rounds
ustedes
at
que
roll calls, make the rounds at all the
vayan cuando
divisions
se
of the city,
toman
because you're going to be briefed that
periodista
commission
vaya a
meetings
todas las
by
reuniones
the
porque
top brass on a
en
very
las
regular basis,
reuniones
the
de
perspective
la
and points
comunidad
of view
van a
and
recibir mucha
experiences of our police
información, el
officers
punto
in
de
the
vista, las
streets is
experiencias
just
de los
as
oficiales de
important.
policías también muy
Thank you and
importante y también de las
congratulations.
personas
Thank you, and
que trabajan en el
as
departamento. Muchísimas
you
gracias.
part, in terms of your last comment,
Terminando
again,
usted su último
as one
comentario,
individual,
como un
certainly
individuo,
have a high regard for the chief, but
tengo mucho
we will
respeto
not be
para
a
el
rubber
jefe,
stamp
pero
commission.
No vamos a hacer una comisión que
Thank
va
you
a
very much.
aprobar
Our
todo,
next
tampoco
speaker
que
is
hace
Councilmember
el
Labange, followed by
Concejal Labange
Councilmember
y
Hahn.
concejal.
Thank you very much. And as I begin my remarks, you could run the clock, so I won't take any more time. You don't have to stop any time here. But as we do, I want to introduce, because justice is so important, the great students of John Marshall High School, which are barristers named after the great Chief Justice of the United States. Welcome to their leadership class, and Robin Lee Ramirez. Remember what it was like in high school? And how maybe you had your first, experience with the police department? I did. Got kicked out of a dance in Hollywood, going to Hollywood High Dance. Commissioners, work very hard, balance your life with this, but go out and learn as much as you can about this great police department and the diversity of it and what role they have. All the men and women out of the police department are people that we went to high school with, who choose another profession instead of a lawyer, instead of a civil rights leader, instead of a coach. They became a police officer or a councilman or whatever the case may be. That's something real important for you to do. Go out and learn. Find time out of your busy schedules to take 2 hours and go learn something. And find that sergeant who's doing the job, not necessarily the commander or the chief who's doing the job. Find the person who's doing the job to give you that experience. I think it will help you. There's a great sense of knowledge that you got to learn. And there's so much pressure going to be put on you. Try to do the right thing all the time. And also, I mentioned, look at the issues of traffic and how it relates to the policing. I'd like to see more motor officers. I hate to see people run red lights. I know we had a tragedy, I know we spoke before, out in the west end of the west of the San Fernando Valley and Simi Valley at an intersection. Poor family of 7. That happens, not in that extent, but it happens to us. But think about that and think about how you could best empower those who serve us. Because when we're asleep at night, they're out patrolling the streets to make them do their job and do their job correctly. It's very difficult to be someone who has it all on the line right there. They have right then they're coming down and they're going down to an alley and they don't know what's down there. They got to respond, but they got to be trained and they got to be backed up by the city because we're not there. The city council's not there, the mayor's not there, the commission's not there, but the police officer's there. So I want to thank you for your service and let you know you could call on my office. I have 5 divisions in my area: Northeast, Rampart, Wilshire, Hollywood, and North Hollywood. And anything I can do to help you do your job better and the commission staff, please let me know. Thank you all for your service to Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Ms. Hahn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, congratulations, I think, to all of you. And I always like to thank citizens who have agreed to say yes, we will serve the city. I think your challenge is enormous, but I think the opportunity is great. And I think what's important about a citizens commission, particularly for the police department, is that you really do bring a citizen's perspective to this department. And I think many times our citizens' perspective sometimes clashes with the culture and the mentality of the police department. And I would like to hear your views. One of the perspectives for myself and my constituents that always clashes with the culture of the police department is the department's practice of transferring officers, particularly commanding officers. In my opinion, nothing flies in the face more of community-based policing than transferring commanding officers every other year. The community begins to know the commanding officer, the community has a relationship with the commanding officer understands the issues, and yet we know that they're transferred for promotion possibilities in their career ladder. We know they get promoted because the chief decides he needs someone at another division, but I think it hurts the community. And I think it hurts the relationship that the community tries to build with not only the rank and file officers and the senior lead officers, but with the commanding officer. So again, I know this flies in the face of years of protocol and tradition in the police department, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And if we might someday find a way to give officers promotions or help them in their career without necessarily hurting the essence of community-based policing.
But
I think in 4 years, I've gone through 6 or 7 or 8 commanding officers in just the 2 divisions that are in my district.
it's the paradox of good performance. When you have a commanding officer or a bank branch manager, for example, who's done a great job, there's a strong impetus to elevate that person to enhance their career development. It's very important for retention purposes, for morale purposes in the department, and that's the conflict you have with that high performance, is that you've got a community there that gets attached to that good performer, that builds a relationship. And it's a constant issue of conflict, I think, and what's the best thing. I think that it's an important issue to look at. I think we're going to have, with the DROP program, a lot of very senior members of the department are going to be leaving the department, and that's going to probably create an impetus for additional movement. So I think we want to use care, find ways to elevate and reward people's performance, but keep them in that community. It's also tough for the people who report up to that commanding officer to have a new commanding officer adapt to a new style. So there's a lot of dimensions to look at here, and I think that particularly with the DROP program coming to the fore over the next 12 months or so, that's going to be an even bigger issue that we're going to have to look at.
I would agree with Shelley's point. It is important that we look for ways to avoid a revolving door where people are just routinely shipped out, because your point is very well taken, Councilwoman Hahn. Officers do, if we expect officers to establish rapport and relationships in the various communities, and certainly communities that you represent, which certainly are similar to where I come from, we have to look for ways, I guess, to reward those officers who are doing a good job and hopefully not have all of them move out. But we don't want to penalize either people in terms of their careers as they try to move up, and as we try to make sure the department leadership at the other ranks are there. It's a tough one, but we have to try to balance the two.
And I think we are all agreed, and coming from different places, once in the district attorney's office, where some of those very same issues were raised in staffing the district attorney's office in a county of this size, and the movement. And I think the way to do it, as has already been noticed here, is that while we are looking at our commitment to community policing, our understanding of community policing, and what are the components, I think you have sensitized us to looking at that as a very important component. And perhaps if it is that important to community policing, and we believe in community policing, we can find a way to reward people who might stay longer in one place.
I think you've raised a complex issue. And I think it's complex because while on the one hand you don't want a revolving door, on the other hand, I think the message that we want to send from LAPD is safety and prevention and protection of the community. And it should be the message, not the messengers. I think that's key here. So while we should have a lot of officers all equally trained, all equally skilled at community policing, all able to deal with the community and respectfully. And if there have to be changes for promotion or otherwise, that should be able to occur, maybe not in the volume that you're suggesting and that's happening, because that does sound problematic, but some change may be good. It may be good to have a new officer in a new community station to give some new ideas and not to go along with the same old, same old. So it is complicated. I understand the issue. I think you don't want the revolving door, but there's important need to get fresh ideas as well.
Well, I appreciate your answers, and I hope that, as you said, I've raised an issue that this commission might take a comprehensive look at to see whether or not it has been productive or harmful, and how we might maybe tweak it. But you're right, certainly we don't want someone who's been there. I think that's part of the reason for transfers and promotions and moves, is to make sure that you get new ideas, but that's never been the problem in the two divisions that I've been in 4 years. It's never been a lack of fresh ideas. We've had a fresh idea like every other year. So, and again, I think that ultimately harms the community-based policing. So at least it sounds like I got your commitment to take a look at that issue and see if it might be time to revisit that policy. Thank you.
Mr. Zine.
For a second and final time, I was moved after hearing some of the debate taking place. Recent report shows that if a police officer wants to buy a house or anyone wants to buy a house in Los Angeles City, you got to make $125,000 a year. So I support that salary increase that hopefully you folks will generate from the police commission. I'm sure the officers will love it. Well, Bill Rosenthal doesn't love it. Okay. While we're sensitive on teams two and officers and their conduct and demeanor, et cetera, also recognize assaults on officers, shootings at officers in certain parts of the city, it's a daily occurrence. Not only the community is living in fear, but officers they go on patrol. And sometimes it reminds me of what's happened in Iraq, where our military soldiers are being attacked by the insurgents. We have that same situation happening here in the city of Los Angeles. We need to be sensitive for this delicate balance, where the officers have to confront the situation, handle it accordingly with the policy, but let's be sensitive to what they have to go through every day. And when you go on your ride-alongs, you'll have that exposure and see what I'm talking about. The terrorism, we know we're in a new arena with terrorism. Recent reports come out that Los Angeles is still a target. So we need to be sensitive to what John Miller needs in his operation with intelligence gathering, and we may need to modify that down the road. The DROP program, as you mentioned, the DROP program, it's set to expire in 2007. We're putting in a continuance. Currently, we're looking at a continuance for 2 years, so people can still sign up. We may want to extend that out. It's been a wonderful program. It's definitely served the benefit, but once you do your 5 years, you're out. We're going to lose a lot of that experience. We need to be sensitive to that. But my main point, my young son's a police officer with 4 years in the job. He's working South Bureau and on a motorcycle, and I fear for his safety. I worked there, Chief Parks worked there, Greg Smith, we've all had that time in law enforcement. And we know that officers get attacked, officers put up backup, officers put up help calls all the time. So there is that group of people in our society, all colors, all races, all religions, that for whatever reason want to attack police officers. Just be sensitive to that. When the officers have to respond with hopefully minimal force to control the situation. They're the ones who are in the uniform, in the marked cars,
tienen los carros marcados, traen los uniformes para tratar de establecer cierto sentimiento de orden en la comunidad. Esa sensibilidad trabaja en ambos lados. Gracias.
Mr. Parks.
Gracias, señor presidente. Quiero darle las gracias por servir y por servir. He tenido una oportunidad de mirar a todos ustedes en el Comité de Seguridad Pública. Quiero pedirles que al tomar esta responsabilidad tan importante, algo, habiendo pasado 8 años,
the thing that I found that was most difficult is that often the police department and the community speaks 2 different languages. And just as each one of you mentioned community-based policing today, and everybody nods in agreement, we've never sat down together to figure out whether community-based policing means the same thing to each one of you. And nor do we find out that it means the same thing to the community. And so it is important that we clarify those words and what its true intent is, and also that we not live in a world of words without definition. And a couple that I have found that we struggled with for years is that
año tras año, cuando el departamento de policía dice delito, generalmente hablan en cantidad, la comunidad habla en desorden, que eso no tiene nada que ver con el crimen que ha sido reportado, hablan acerca de su nivel de incomodidad. Cuando ustedes como administrador de policía dice
the police department generally will say that's your senior lead officer. Community wants a relationship with the person that shows up at their house at 3 in the morning, that answers their call. And so these are the kinds of things that are constantly
constantemente en una situación donde hablamos diferentes idiomas y si no tomamos el tiempo donde ustedes como grupo deciden sobre qué es vigilancia de la comunidad de la policía para que cuando lo digan, cuando mueven la cabeza todos estén diciendo lo mismo y no va a excluir el departamento e igual con una variedad de otras palabras del departamento en el sentido de que aún con comunidades esto quizás sea un punto importante y es en el departamento de policía se mira como un departamento de policía
this.
que no
We
apoya.
just
Y
want
la
to be
comunidad dice
treated
solamente
properly.
queremos ser
And
tratados
so
de
these
manera
kinds of
adecuada y con
issues
respeto. Esas son
you're
las
going to have
clases
to
de puntos que van a
resolve
tener que
on a daily
resolver
basis
diariamente
because
porque
it is so often within
muchas
police
veces
work
es dentro del
that
trabajo de la policía
nuances
que
and some of the issues are not well documented.
ignorancias y
It's
ciertos puntos no
folklore
están
and a
bien
lot of other things,
documentados.
but somebody's got
Muchas
to
cosas,
bring
pero alguien
sense
tiene
to
que
it and
traer
clarity,
sentido y
and we'd hope that the police
claridad.
commission
Espero que
is
la
in
Comisión de
that
Policía esté
position,
en esa
because if we
puesto,
all
porque
leave here
si
with a
todos nos
different
salimos de aquí
definition
con
of
una definición
community-based
diferente
policing,
de
I've
vigilancia
heard
policial en la
definitions,
comunidad, he
community-based
escuchado
policing means
definiciones
an
que
officer
significa
smiled at me
que un
today.
oficial me sonrió el
Not
día de hoy,
quite what we're
no
looking
tal
for in the
lo que
sense of
estamos
community-based
buscando
policing.
en el
The
punto de vista de
issue is
vigilancia basado en
it
la
is
comunidad. El
important for
punto
the
es que es
commission, having
importante
worked
para
for
la
several of them,
comisión
to create the clarity
de
for both the
crear la
community
claridad
and the
para la
department.
comunidad y para
So
el
these
departamento para
terms
que sí
mean
estas
something to all
palabras
of us. I just
significan
say
algo
best
para
of luck,
todos.
certainly
La
available
mejor
to
de
you as
suerte,
you
estoy
go on this
disponible
path. It is a
a
very serious
ustedes en el
task.
camino. Es un trabajo muy
a lot of-
serio,
it's time consuming, but it's
mucho
nothing more
tiempo, pero
important
no hay
in the
nada más
city than,
importante en esta
public
ciudad
service
que
in general, but
servicio al público en
specifically
general,
within
pero
the police
específicamente
department.
dentro del
So best of
departamento de
luck to all
policía.
of you.
Muchísima suerte a cada uno de ustedes.
Other members wishing to speak at this
¿Alguien
time?
más desea hacer presentación en este momento? No.
Any final comments?
¿Comentarios finales?
If not,
No.
then let's
Entonces,
open the
ábrase
roll
voto
on confirmation.
para confirmación
This is
y
on
nombra
items
esos
22,
puntos 22, 23, 24 y 25.
Please
Por
close the
favor, ábrase
roll
voto, cierrase
and
el voto y
tabulate the
tabúlese
vote.
el conteo.
11
11 sís.
Congratulations.
Felicitaciones. Han sido confirmados.
Thank you for your
Muchas
service to the
gracias por
city.
servir a la
and,
ciudad.
We're here to work with you
Estamos aquí
in
para
any
trabajar
way
con
that we can.
ustedes en cualquier
Colleagues,
manera que
let me
podamos,
let's all
colegas.
give Ms. Perry our undivided attention
Ahora
for
la
an
señora
important
Perry,
introduction.
una
Just a
presentación
very quick
importante, una
introduction. I
presentación
would
muy
like
rápida.
to
Me gustaría
recognize some
reconocer
visitors in our
a
council chamber
visitantes en
today.
nuestra sala aquí el día de hoy.
Mr. Michael
El
Johnson,
señor Michael
Vice
Johnson,
Mayor, District 8 from the
vicealcalde del
city
Distrito
of
8 de la
Phoenix,
ciudad
in
de
Phoenix,
Phoenix,
Arizona.
en Phoenix,
And I
Arizona.
believe
Y
Mario Diaz,
Mario
who
Díaz
is standing next to him. And
está
you are
para
council
ustedes,
person
la concejal
from District, well, 8?
del Distrito
Okay.
8.
Of Phoenix, Arizona
De
as well.
Phoenix,
And they're here
Arizona
visiting
también.
us
Están
today.
aquí
Would you
visitándonos el
wave
día de
that
hoy.
wave so people know where you are? Okay.
Saluden para que todos sepan dónde están.
Welcome.
Bienvenidos.
So welcome to our friends from Phoenix.
Bienvenidos a
They're out here
nuestros
for the cool
amistades
weather.
de Phoenix. Están aquí para
Colleagues, I've had a request to
Nuestro
take
clima
item 67 out of order on a promise that
Asunto
we can
67,
dispense with the item
vamos
in about
a
4 minutes.
tratarlo con la
Let's take
promesa
item
de que
67
vamos
out of
a
order.
tratar con este asunto
Mr.
en 4
Labange,
minutos.
you
Señor
call
Labange,
67 special?
67 especial.
Mr. Robert Leary.
Señor Robert Leary,
Franklin Group, would you please take the center
pase al
microphone?
centro, al
We got a
micrófono.
quick 3.5-minute
Una
presentation, and I
presentación
think
rápida de
you'll
3 minutos y medio y creo que
learn about a very important part of our history in this city, and the great Frank Lloyd Wright
aprender
and the
acerca
great
de
Ennis
una
Brown
historia
House.
muy importante
Thank
en
you.
esta ciudad. Gracias.
Good morning, Mr.
Buenos días,
President,
señor
entire City
presidente,
Council. It is
y
an
todo el
honor
Consejo
to be
Municipal. Es un gran honor estar
before you today. We
ante
have a
ustedes. El día de hoy tenemos
PowerPoint
una
presentation. If I
presentación
could direct everyone's attention to the
en la
screens.
pantalla.
We're going to be going through this. This is a photograph
Es una
of the Frank
fotografía
Lloyd Wright
de
designed
el diseño de
1924 Charles
Frank
and Mabel
Lloyd
Ennis
Wright
House
en el
located in
24.
Los
Está
Angeles.
ubicado en Los Ángeles.
A cultural heritage monument
Un monumento de
designated
herencia
by the city of
cultural
Los
asignado por la
Angeles,
ciudad de Los
and
Ángeles
also a
y también
national treasure
un
that is
tesoro
engendering
nacional
attention
que
across the
está
United States.
tomando atención
In
en todo los Estados Unidos.
1980,
En 1980,
the Ennis House was donated
la casa
to
fue
the foundation
donada
formerly
a la
known as the
fundación
Trust
previamente
for the
conocida
Preservation
como
of
la Cuenta
Cultural
Fiduciaria para
Heritage.
Conservación de
The
Herencia
foundation
Cultural.
is a
Esta
nonprofit
fundación es
corporation
una
made up
organización
of
sin fin de
volunteers that
lucro
are committed
con
to the
voluntarios que están
rehabilitation of the
comprometidos a la
house.
rehabilitación de la
As you can
casa.
see
Como
in this
pueden ver en esta
photograph, there's been
fotografía,
substantial
ha
damage to the
habido
Ennis
bastante
House
daños a
due
esta
to the
casa
1994
por el
earthquake
temblor de
and the
1994
rains of
y
last year.
las
This
lluvias
is
del año
a
pasado. Esto es
photograph
una
of the
fotografía
living room of
de
the
la
Ennis
sala
House,
de la
and
casa
over on the
Ennis
right
y
screen
al lado
is the sole
derecho
surviving
es la única
mosaic tile that is in any Frank Lloyd Wright
mosaico
house across the United
está-
States. And here is some of the art glass
que
designed
aún
by Frank
existe de
Lloyd
la
Wright for the
casa
Ennis
Frank Wright en los
house
Estados
that is
Unidos.
still intact. This
Esta
is
es
a
la
view of
casa
the
Ennis que está
dining room
intacto. Ese es un punto
that
de vista
is part
de
of
la
this
sala, que es
extraordinary
parte de
cultural
esta
treasure treasure.
Tesoro
And here is a
extraordinario
view of
cultural.
the
Aquí es un
pool.
punto de
Mr.
vista
Frank
de la
Lloyd Wright
piscina
called
que el
this
señor
a
Frank
California romanza house.
Lloyd Wright
And this is the front entry, and you may have noticed
hizo
that the
mención
Ennis
de la
House has
entrada
been in
de
quite a
enfrente.
few
Notan
movies. This
que
is
esa casa está participando en
the
diferentes
National
películas.
Trust for Historic Preservation, the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy, and the Los Angeles Conservancy have come together to work on the rehabilitation and trying to find funding for the house. The funding is not in place, and we implore the City Council and to do what they can to save this cultural heritage monument, Los Angeles. We thank you very much for your time,
Gracias
and
por
we
su tiempo y que
appreciate
hemos
all that you're
participado, que
doing.
ayudan a salvar esta
Gentlemen, thank you.
prensa
Members,
cultural.
thank you.
Gracias, miembros, gracias.
You know this house, you know it from
Conoce
the
esta casa,
Vincent
la
Price
conocen
movie,
de
House on the Haunted Hill.
House on the Haunted
Thank you
Hill.
for what you're doing. We
Gracias
do
por
want
lo
to
que
save
hace y
this house.
queremos
And
salvar
your
esta
help and
casa
all the
y gracias por su
council's support on
asistencia y gracias por el apoyo de
getting
todos los
funds
concejales
throughout
para recibir
federal
dinero
sources has been,
a través de recursos
something we gotta do
federales.
more, but I appreciate it.
Tenemos
Gentlemen, I
que recibir más
appreciate your
el próximo. Gracias,
presentation.
señor,
Thank
por su
you,
prestación.
Councilman
Gracias a usted,
Labange, and your
concejal
entire
Labange, y a
staff.
todo su personal.
Thank you very much.
Muchas
And
gracias.
Mr. Labange,
Señor
you can have your
Labange.
wallet back. Other members of the
¿Alguien
council
más
wishing
desea
to speak on
presentación
this
sobre
item?
este asunto?
Seeing
No.
none, let's open the
Ábrase
roll. Item
voto sobre asunto
67.
67. Cierre su
Close the
voto
roll.
y tabúlese el
Tabulate the
conteo.
vote.
11 sí.
That is
Eso ha
approved.
sido aprobado.
Next item,
El
please.
siguiente asunto.
Mr. President,
El
item number
presente asunto
63
número
was
63
previously
previamente
adopted. However,
fue
there is a
adoptado, pero
substitute motion
hay
that
una
has been
moción
distributed.
suplente
Do
que
you
se
wish to
distribuirá.
reconsider that item?
¿Desea
Sure. Mr.
considerar ese
Parks
asunto?
moves
Sí, señor.
reconsideration of item 63.
63
Let's
será
open the roll on
reconsiderado. Ábrase el
reconsideration.
voto para reconsideración. Cierre
Close
ese
the
voto
roll
y tabúlese el
and
conteo.
tabulate the vote.
11 sí.
That's back before
Ahora
us.
está
Colleagues, the
puesto
substitute
pendiente.
motion has been
Una moción
circulated. Is
suplente
there
ha
any
sido
discussion on
distribuido. ¿Hay
this
algún
item?
diálogo sobre este asunto?
Seeing none,
No.
let's open the
Ábrase el
roll on
voto sobre asunto
substitute motion.
63 en la moción suplente.
Close the roll
Cierre ese voto y tabúlese el conteo.
and tabulate the vote.
11 sí.
That substitute is approved.
Ese
Next item.
Eso ha sido
Mr.
aprobado.
President, do you wish
Yo
to take a
presente
public
desea
comment at this
tomar
time?
comentario
Let's
público
go to
ahorita.
a
Sí.
general public comment
Ahora
for
vamos a hablar sobre
today's
el
meeting.
comentario general
This is an
del
opportunity
público
for
para la
members of the
reunión.
public to
Es una
address the
oportunidad para miembros del
council on
público hablar
matters
con el
within our
Consejo Municipal sobre
jurisdiction,
asuntos
but
de
not
nuestra
appearing on
jurisdicción, pero que no
today's
están en la
agenda.
agenda del día de hoy.
And the council calls forward Mr. Armando
Señor
Herman,
Armando Herman,
followed by Benjamin Gilmore and Melrose Larry
y
Green.
Melrose Larry Green.
Good morning, Council. I'd like to bring attention to, hopefully it's not a problem, but maybe a little investigation into file number 05/0795 for the record. There's been some advertising of mural artwork in our area of Boyle Heights, and due to the problem of graffiti and basically graffiti vandalism throughout the area, it's very apparent that CD14 is taking a different view as to what the public in the area, what the constituents want to see as far as artwork. I'm asking that Lisa Sarno have allow the community to have full participation in decision-making in our area. She has not invited the public in full response to being there. She's denied us access to records, and I come across this record from the city clerk that mentions that the Los Angeles Recycling and Transfer Station Community Amenities Trust Fund does not even exist in the index record books. So I would like to see if you can investigate into this matter a little more, find out who is Self-Help Graphics, because I understand that they're no longer existing, and that they brought in this other Eagle Rock art division to put in the so-called distasteful artwork. Now, we don't just want any type of artwork. We want the community to participate and choose the artwork that's going to go up in our area. $60,000 is fine to misuse in a pilot so-called test and see if not work program. But if you can utilize taxpaying dollars in the most appropriate way and have Lisa Sarno, again, have community input into it, we would greatly appreciate that. So there has to be a better understanding of using taxpaying dollars in our area. So I just ask that you continue to ask CD14 to allow the community to have full participation in any type of projects in our area
Thank you.
before taking it into their own consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello, I'm a resident physician with the UCLA Department of Family Medicine, and I'm interested in the South Central Farmers situation. As you know, the South Central Farmers are a group of low-income Latino families who operate a community garden on 41st and Alameda. I've been working with several UCLA physicians, and we've performed a needs assessment and identified a lot of serious health problems within the South Central Farmers community. These include high rates of diabetes, farmers have specifically requested or voiced a need for better prenatal care, for childhood vaccinations, and for education regarding nutrition, obesity, and that relationship with diabetes. The farmers also grow many, many medicinal plants for use on different remedies. Our department is planning a health fair for these farmers in mid-November, for which we will provide a screening, referrals for vaccinations, referrals for prenatal care. I understand that the situation of the garden is very tenuous legally. We are planning this health fair for mid-November. The garden is an ideal spot for this health fair. It's become a natural meeting place and a nucleus for the South Central farmers community. So I'm asking if the council could facilitate delaying any change in the status of the garden until the completion of the health fair in mid-November. The health fair would be an effective intervention for a very at-risk population who is underserved, who has no access to health care, and who relies on this garden as a means of community support and medicinal herbs for their own health care. So again, in summary, we're planning a health fair in mid-November for the South Central farmers, and want to see if any change in the status of the garden could be delayed until after the completion of the health fair in mid-November. So thank you very much, and I have a written summary of this proposal that I can distribute to whoever wants to read it.
I'll ask the sergeant to accept a copy from you. And members, anybody wishing to be in touch with this gentleman, you can obtain his contact information from our clerk. Our next speaker is Melrose Larry Green.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melrose Larry Green. Before I even make my comments, I wanted to introduce to all of you out there watching on Channel 35, my neighbor here, young man, I met him this morning. He's a student at Cal State LA, and he's T.R. Cardenas, and he's also a veteran of the armed forces. He served 5 years in the Army. This is his first meeting, and he's here to learn about government. So if you saw me talking, I was trying to give him some heads ups. And first, I want to congratulate the council for approving these 4 wonderful candidates for the police commission, and it was a real appropriate tribute to have Chief Parks speak last. It's sort of an unwritten rule that one thing they do around here, and in Congress too, is that when there's an important motion, very often as a token of respect and seniority, the senior, no offense to the other 14 members, but the man that knows the most about policing around here is Bernard Parks. And I'm glad that you spoke last, and there were interesting comments, and the dialogue was very informative. And I did want to say that I came here, I watch you on TV. When you don't see me, that means I'm making money at home. So I watch you on TV, so I don't make your kind of money, I'm sorry. So I was home, and I saw the comments about the Ecuadorian parade. So I went to the Ecuadorian festival, and all of you that are out there who think there's nothing to do in LA, watch City Council. Because I went to the parade, we had a great time. I got to meet a guy named Antonio Villaraigosa, a guy named Eric Garcetti, and Jan Perry, hung out with them, had a great time, and then I went to the Nisi parade on Sunday, it was also incredible. Everybody go next Sunday because it's the wrap-up, and what an amazing day it was. Now, the breaking news I've got, a couple of things. First of all, look at today's daily news. Commuting's high cost, right here on the cover. Isn't timing everything, Bill Rosendahl? Timing's everything. Now, I've got to announce some important news, so let's have a little drum roll. September 9th, put it on your calendar, folks. Those of you out there watching on TV, is the first of my great program, Ride to Work with Your Council Person. And our first one is Eric Garcetti from the 13th District. He already approved it. And if you're interested in riding to work with Eric Garcetti and Melrose Larry Green, it's a great way to bend the ear of your councilman and your favorite gadfly. You can email me at melrose1@earthlink.net. We're still working on a location where to meet from. We're going to either take a bus or a train it's a Friday, and that way you'll be able to save gas. You don't have to use your car. I give you a heads up, if you get a pass for $3, you can ride all day. Tonight I'm going to a meeting in Beverly Hills at the Friars Club, go home, take a little nap, and then I'll get the Wilshire bus all the way to Beverly Hills. This, from Hollywood, $3 all day. Also, I want to congratulate Mayor Villaraigosa, I don't miss a beat, huh? On the cover of Time Magazine this week. On the cover of Time Magazine, one of the 25 most influential Hispanics in America. No offense, Alex, you're 26. Tony, you're 27. You can only fit so many people on the cover of Time magazine. And Ed Reyes is 28, I guess. I also want to say that the process, the democratic process in this city is more inclusive and more outstanding than any city in the world. I'm from New York. Could you tell that from my accent? There is no chance that I would have been within 1,000 yards of Rudolph Giuliani or Mike Bloomberg if I'd stayed in New York. If anybody would have told me 20 years ago that I'd be hanging out with Mayor Villaraigosa and knowing all of you, I'd say impossible. But I salute my own councilman, the great Tom LaBonge. I'd complain about the 4th District. There's nothing wrong with the 4th District, so I can't complain. I know time's running short. Thank you, Tio Cardenas. Come back again. Thank you all. Don't forget melrose1@earthlink.net if you want to ride to work with your council person. And I hope Mayor Villaraigosa is watching, because maybe we'll ride to work with him too. Thank you, Councilman Garcetti, for being the chalutz, which is Hebrew for pioneer, on this great program. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Secretario Municipal, procedamos, por favor. El siguiente asunto, el presente asunto número 39, fue llamado especial por el concejal Parks, señor Parks.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Gracias, señor presidente. Por favor, pase al departamento, el personal del Departamento de Viviendas. Colegas, este es un asunto en el cual hemos estado trabajando por bastante tiempo y después de varios años, casi 30 años, nuestra ordenanza de estabilización de renta no ha sido revisada y cada vez que tenemos una reunión de viviendas tenemos diferentes personas, managers, propietarios, inquilinos, representan y preguntan si sí o no habla sobre esa necesidad. Esta ordenanza, quiero que el Departamento de Viviendas hable con todas las comunidades y desarrolle algo general para asegurarse que todos están al tanto, porque cada distrito es impactado por la ordenanza de estabilización de renta y es una necesidad que al proceder en el futuro debemos de poder tener un estudio muy extenso si es que va a significar algo y cambiar la ordenanza de una manera u otra. Entonces quizás podemos recibir comentarios del Departamento de Viviendas en cuanto a cuál es el proceso y qué piensan hacer los siguientes 60 días antes de traer el estudio de nuevo.
Hi, Sally Richmond, Los Angeles Housing Department. At committee, we discussed this. We wrote a very detailed transmittal, which is online, which I would urge you to look at. There are a number of issues that are coming up that affect owners of property in the city. There are water increases, water rate increases, there are sewer service charge increases. And there are various motions that have been made over the past year asking for some relief so that the charges can be passed on to the tenants. And then the tenant advocate community has its own concerns that all of these charges are supposed to be passed through at the same time we're increasing the rent stabilization fees and the systematic code enforcement fees and so forth. And so the last major study of the rent stabilization ordinance was done in 1993-94, and the market has changed a lot since then. There was a big recession in the 90s, and now, as you all know, we're back and higher than we were in the 80s. So we will be bringing back a potential scope of work for different things to be studied. The way that the rent stabilization ordinance fees allow the annual increases based on the consumer price index. And Jim Hildebrandt, my colleague here, has talked with colleagues in all the other cities in California that operate rent stabilization or rent control ordinances. I think the department agrees that it is worthwhile to look at what are the operating costs of rental housing these days, such as insurance and other things that definitely have gone up. So we will be reporting back with that.
I was wondering, on the 94 study, did it make any changes in the current ordinance, or what did we do with those recommendations?
The 94 study actually made very few changes in the rent ordinance. There were, as it was being undertaken, there were a number that had been made probably 5 years before that. But in 1994, the housing market in this city was very soft, and so the vacancy, we had a high one of the highest
vacancias,
historical vacancy
uno de
rates
los más
we have
altas
had
históricamente
in the
que
city,
hemos tenido en la
certainly the
ciudad.
highest
Claro,
since the
la
rent
más alta
ordinance
desde
came
la
into effect
ordenanza de
in
estabilización de renta
1979.
que se inició en
So at
79.
that point,
Entonces,
there
en
were
ese
very few
punto,
changes
hubieron muy pocos
that were
cambios
made in the market,
que se hicieron en el mercado,
in the ordinance,
en la
because the
ordenanza,
market
porque el mercado
didn't have, there was no real pressure
no había
on,
presión real
on rents
en
because of the
rentas
vacancy
por
factor.
el factor
We are
de
now at a very
vacancias.
different
Ahora estamos
circumstance,
en
and
una
I think
circunstancia muy
what
diferente
we'll
y
be
creo que
coming
lo
back
que
to council within 60 days is
le presentaremos al Consejo
basically
Municipal dentro de
the
60 días es básicamente
two different menu
los
options.
diferentes
One is the very
opciones en la
small
carta.
study,
Uno es el estudio muy
which
pequeño, el
is
cual
very focused
está
on
muy
operating
concentrado en
costs,
costos de
extreme
operación.
concern of
Hay
the
mucha
landlord community
preocupación
for a
en
number
la
of
comunidad de
years, again,
propietarios por
predicated
varios
by
años
changes
por los cambios que
in utility
se lleva de
rates.
cabo y
And then the other is
cambios
this
en la
larger
tarifa
study,
de servicios públicos.
similar
También
to
ese
the
estudio muy grande
1994
similar
study
al
that
estudio
has a look
94 que
at rent
ha
control and
mirado
some of the other
control
rent
de renta y otras
regulations
reglas
in the
de
larger context of housing in Los
control
Angeles.
en la cantidad de viviendas en la ciudad de Los
Right, and there are
Ángeles.
also
Claro,
some of
y
the broader
también
policy
hay
issues that were mentioned
otras
in
reglas más generales
1994
que
is
mencionaron en
the
94.
problem of
Uno fue el
effective
problema de
demand, that the income,
demanda
the
efectiva,
general
que el
income of
ingreso
households in the
general
city
de las
is not necessarily
viviendas de
high
Los Ángeles no
enough
necesariamente
to
suficientemente
pay the
alto
whole rent,
para
which is why
pagar
we
toda
have
la
a lot
renta.
of
Por eso tenemos
overcrowding in the
mucho
city. So
sobre
I think there are a lot
población en la
of
ciudad y creo que
policy
hay
issues that
muchas
could be examined
cuestiones
further,
de
and
reglas
those
que
will be
pueden
listed
ser
in our report
considerados
back
después y estos serán
of what you might
incluidos en el
want us to look
reporte.
at.
En cuanto a lo
Thank
que
you very
ustedes
much.
quieren
And I just
consideremos.
ask
Gracias.
all
Les
of you
pido a todos
colleagues, if you
ustedes,
have
colegas, que si ustedes
an
tienen
interest in this,
un
is
interés
help
en
the
esto,
housing
para
department
ayudar al
put together
Departamento
the scope,
de
if your
Viviendas
housing
que
deputies can meet
reúnan
with them to discuss
esta
those
información, que
issues so
su
that when they come
personal se
back in
reúna con
60
ellos para
days,
hablar
we'll
con
have
nosotros para
something
si cuando
that we
regresen entre
can
60
look
días
forward
tengamos
to
algo
discussing. Mr. Garcetti, I'd like
que
to
poder
add a number
hablar. Señor
4
García, me
to
gustaría
our
agregar
report
un
and
número
ask the
4 al reporte y
CLA,
pedirle al
CAO to
CLA,
work
el
with
CEO,
housing
que
to
trabaje con
figure
el
out
Departamento
where
de
they
Viviendas
might
para ver
find the
dónde pueden
financing
encontrar los
for
fondos
this study
para
so that we do
este
not have
estudio,
the
para así no
scope and
tener
then years later not have the study. And so
información y
we
después no
hope
tener ese
that maybe
estudio.
it could come
Esperamos que
simultaneously at the
llegue
60-day
juntos
mark, that we
a
find
la
some
fecha límite de
source of
60 días
funding
para
that they
encontrar
could
cierto
pull together.
dinero que ellos puedan reunir.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Mr. Garcetti.
Señor Garcetti.
I'll be very brief. Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Muchas
Thank you to the
gracias, señor Parks.
department.
Gracias al
Thank you to our
departamento.
advocates
Gracias a
on
nuestros activistas.
both sides, although they're not
ambos
always
lados,
two
aunque
sides.
no
Sometimes
siempre
we
hay
all get
dos
along
lados.
of this
Y
issue. I
nosotros
think
nos llevamos
it's
bien
going to
este
inform
asunto,
all of
pero
us to
nos
have
va a
a
informar
look
a todos
at
nosotros
what our
poder
costs
mirar
are for
los
tenants,
costos
what our costs
para
are
los
for
inquilinos,
landlords,
para los
and to really be able to do
propietarios,
that not just in an
y de
anecdotal
poder
way,
hacer eso no solamente de
but
manera
some across the board,
anecdotal, pero
looking at the
en
turnover
general,
rate, and what we
mirar
talked
al
about in
cambio
committee
de
colleagues
viviendas
too,
y
with
de
the potential
inquilinos, y
of
hemos
maybe
hablado
working with the housing
con la posibilidad
department
de
and
trabajar
doing
con el
a
departamento
report on
de viviendas
the
para
state
hacer
of
un
housing in
reporte
Los Angeles
en
in
el
general.
estatus de viviendas en
We
Los
read
Ángeles en
about it,
general. Leemos
screaming
sobre esto.
headlines in the daily news.
Titulares
Will home ever be
en los
affordable to
periódicos que
anybody
si
else?
alguna vez van a
In polls that I
poder
see, it's always the number
comprar
2
casas a
issue. We
otras
spend
personas
relatively
segundo,
less time
que
on this compared to some of the
pasamos
other
muy
hot
poco
button
tiempo en
issues like
esto que en
crime and
otros
education,
asuntos
and yet
públicos como
after
crimen,
traffic,
educación y
it's
después de
consistently our
tránsito.
number 2 problem out
Ese es
there
un
right now,
problema número dos,
and very much related to
existe,
traffic. So this will
muy
be a
relacionado al
good
tránsito. Esto va a
foundation
ser
for
una
us to
buena
look at a number
fundación
of different
para
things,
poder
certainly
considerar
focusing on the
diferentes cosas,
expenses
claro,
of keeping
concentrarnos en
small
los gastos
businesses
de
going,
mantener
which is
los
what
pequeños negocios
these mom and
abiertos.
pop
Y es lo
landlords
que
often
estos
are,
propietarios
making sure
son
we're strict with those
mamás y
who are
papás, por decirlo así,
violating the law, and at the
pequeños
same time looking after
negocios,
tenants and their
y
needs
al mismo
and
tiempo
the need for us
mirar
to have an
las necesidades de
affordable
los
city
inquilinos
to
y
live in.
las necesidades que
So
tenemos
we'll scramble and look
de
around, as I said in
esta
committee,
ciudad de
maybe one of our
poder
academic institutions
hogares
would be
y
interested in doing
oportunidades
this.
para personas de bajos
I assume they could do it
recursos.
for
Gracias
cheaper than a
por
consultant. And,
esta
you know, I don't know if there's
oportunidad.
anybody good at
Gracias por
USC,
hacerme
Mr.
vienes, porque lo van a
Parks,
hacer
but if we
mucho
can, I'm
más
sure we can get UCLA to do it.
bajo que un accesorios. No sé, la Universidad del Sur de California puede
Other
hacer lo
members of the
mismo,
council
pero
wishing
bueno,
to speak on this
ya
item?
sé que usted fue ahí,
Item
señor Parks, pero
39.
gracias a alguien más. Recibo
Seeing none,
39, no,
let's
ábrase
open the
voto,
roll,
cierre ese voto y
close the
tabúlese
roll,
conteo.
and tabulate the vote.
11
That
sí.
is approved.
Eso ha sido aprobado.
Next item, please.
Item number 41, call special by Councilmember Garcetti.
Mr. Garcetti.
Señor Garcetti.
Thank you. Can I ask staff to come forward?
Pase, personal.
Thank you. Colleagues, this would normally be just a routine item, and I know
Era un
that it's
asunto
a busy meeting,
rutinario,
so I'll
sé que
keep
es una reunión
things
muy ocupada, por lo tanto
as
mantendré
focused
las
as
cosas lo
possible.
más
But I think,
concentrado posible,
again,
pero creo de
this is an
nuevo
opportunity
que
for
esta es
us
una
to
oportunidad para
bring our
nosotros
attention to an
poner
issue here,
atención
which is
a
an
un
ongoing
asunto
one.
el
Los
cual es un
Angeles has
asunto
led the way in
continuo.
many
Los
ways.
Ángeles ha sido líder en
Domestic
muchas
violence from our
áreas,
criminal justice
violencia
response to a more
doméstica
community-based response here.
del punto de
But I wanted to take this opportunity as we have this RFP go out for the money that we spend in our community development
que se encargan de
department
mejorar
on combating domestic violence.
violencia
We
doméstica,
talked to our
pero
police
hablamos
officers,
con
of
los
course,
agentes
this
de
is still one of our
policías, esto
top
aún es uno
calls,
de
if not the
nuestros
#1 call
llamadas
that's out there. We've worked very closely with
más
the police department,
comunes, si
and I
no
spoke
es la
earlier about about our
más
DART
común.
teams. But I
Hablamos
was wondering if
acerca
you might
del
want
team,
to
del
give us a
equipo
little
DART.
bit of
Quiero
background
que nos dé un
of
poco
what
de
the
historia
programs are,
acerca
to let
de
people
cuáles son los
know that. But
programas, que
also,
las personas
secondly,
sepan esto. Y
are we at
segundo,
the right level?
estamos en el
And are
nivel
are
adecuado
there
y
women, are
hay
there
mujeres,
children, other people
hay
who are
niños y otras
survivors of
personas que son
domestic violence
sobrevivientes de
who we
violencia
are
doméstica
unable to
y que no
find
podemos encontrar
beds for, find help
camas,
for?
encontrarles
Are we oversubscribed? Are we
albergues.
the right amount?
Hay
If you can kind of, and I know it's not just government that's doing, there's a lot of
demanda. Yo sé
community
que el
groups that we
gobierno está
partner
haciendo esto, hay
with,
muchos
some of whom don't even take
grupos
any
comunitarios que
government money at
toman
all,
mucho de
but
no
I
reciben
thought it'd be
dinero
a
del
good
gobierno, pero
opportunity
creo
just
que
to
es una buena
snapshot that, if you
oportunidad
could give us
en breve.
that information.
Delphia Jones,
Delphia
Community
Jones,
Development Department Director of
Departamento de
Human
Desarrollo
Services and
de la
Family
Comunidad
Development.
Directora de Asuntos
And we are requesting authority
Servicio
to release
de
the
la Comunidad. Estamos
RFP for
pidiendo la
domestic
autoridad
violence shelter operations.
de poder
We're asking for $3 million
presentar
to be identified in future block grant money,
petición para
many of which
presupuesto a la comunidad.
remain
Queremos
uncertain at
3
this
millones de
point.
dólares.
And we've done that in past years from the block
Hemos
grant
hecho en el
in a similar amount.
año del pasado subvenciones, sí.
Currently, we're serving
Actualmente
about
estamos sirviendo
1,400
como
victims of
1,400
domestic
víctimas de
violence. We
violencia
know
doméstica.
that that's
Sabemos que
inadequate
eso es
because there are
no es
50,000
adecuado porque hay
reports of
50,000
domestic violence
reportes
to the
de
LAPD
violencia
every
doméstica al
year.
Departamento de Policía
And we
todos
know
los
that
años y sabemos
resources
que
will be further
recursos
stretched by
van
the
a
fact
ser
that
disminuidos por
women
el hecho
are
que las
remaining in
mujeres
transitional
permanecen
housing
en
much
casa
longer
transicionales mucho más
because of the
tiempo
lack of
por la
affordable
falta de
housing,
viviendas de bajos
meaning
recursos,
that it
lo que
takes
quiere decir
much
es que
longer
toma
to
mucho
find
más tiempo
housing for
encontrar
them, so
viviendas
they must
para
stay in the
ellos, entonces
shelter
deben de
longer.
permanecer en
So,
los albergues más
with
tiempo.
those
Entonces,
pressures on the
con esas
program, I
presiones en
really
el
do think
programa,
we're
pienso que
underserving that
no estamos
constituency,
sirviendo
and there needs to be more
adecuadamente
money
esos
allocated and
grupos y
perhaps even some
necesitamos
general
más dinero,
fund money
quizás dinero del
as well
Fondo
as
General
criminal
también,
justice planning money
dinero de
allocated.
planeación
How
de
do we spend this money
justicia
from
criminal.
the
¿Cómo
community
gastamos
development
este
department
dinero?
standpoint? What do we use it for?
¿Cómo lo
We
usamos?
currently we're contracting
Actualmente
with 19
tenemos
community-based
19
organizations
organizaciones basadas en
who
la comunidad. Tenemos
operate
contratos
both
que
emergency shelters,
operan
and those are temporary shelters of
albergues de
up to 90
emergencia y
days,
temporales
and
hasta de
transitional
90
shelters.
días
The
y albergues
transitional shelters
transicionales.
provide a
Albergues
range of
transicionales
services
proveen
to
una
women
cantidad
to
de
assist
servicios
them
a
in
mujeres para
obtaining
ayudarles a
employment,
obtener
to care
empleo,
for their children,
que cuiden a sus
to,
niños.
in many cases,
En
get their
muchos
children
casos,
back in school,
que sus
to
niños
provide
regresen a la
skill
escuela,
trainings to
proveer
women as well.
capacitaciones,
So
entrenamiento
to
a mujeres
get
también,
them
entonces para
from
que
the abusive
ellos pasen de
situation
una situación
back into
abusiva
the
de
work
nuevo
market, to get them
al
homes
mercado
and
de
to get them
trabajo, que
appropriate
consigan
care and
trabajos y
support for
cuidado
their
adecuado y
children.
apoyo para sus
We use
niños.
case study, I mean, not case study, excuse me, case management
Usamos
to help
administración
these
de
women
los
with,
casos para
and
otras
it's men
mujeres
sometimes too, and children with
y
other
niños con
resources
otros
that are out there.
recursos
The
que
Community Development
están
Department
pendientes,
has
que tiene el
workforce
Departamento
training
de Desarrollo
programs, other
Laboral,
things to
entrenamiento de
give them that
trabajo,
whole array of
ellos para
services.
toda esa
Absolutely,
cantidad de
there
variedad
is
de servicios.
linkage
Absolutamente.
with all of our
Hay una
other
conexión con
programs,
todos los otros
including our
programas,
Family
incluyendo
Development Network, the
la red de
Workforce
desarrollo de la
Center,
familia,
any
el
resources that we
Workforce Center,
have
cualquier
to
recurso que
assist
tenemos
women
para
with
ayudar a
shelter
mujeres
and
con
training and
albergue y
job placement.
entrenamiento y ubicación en
Colleagues, let me
trabajos.
just close on
Colegas,
this.
quiero
When we had
terminar
the
diciendo
discussion
esto.
about whether
Tuvimos
we'd have
este
a half-cent sales
diálogo si
tax
de tener o no
ballot
un aumento
initiative,
de
one of the
medio
things that we got when
centavo
it was countywide is we said 15% of that money should go
de
towards crime prevention
ingresos, dijimos que el
dollars.
50%
We
debe
have
irse para prevención de
said, even
crimen.
though that didn't pass,
Hemos
even though a
dicho que
majority of
aunque esto
people
no
were
fue
for
aprobado,
that,
que la
that we
mayoría de las
nevertheless
personas
want to
estuvieron de
hire,
acuerdo, pero aún
as
así
we've
queremos
heard
contratar,
today,
como
up
escuchamos el
to
día de hoy,
another
hasta
2,800
otros
officers,
2.800
as many as
oficiales más,
12,000
que
long
llegue
range,
hasta
but let's say
12,000
another
en el
1,000
futuro,
in the
pero
next
que
few
sí,
years.
otro 1,000,
I would
otros
ask us to
1,000.
reiterate
Dentro de las
that
siguientes
support
cosas,
that we
quiero
had
retirar
at
ese
some
apoyo
point for
que
that
tuvimos en
15%,
el pasado
so
para
that we are doing something from our
15%
own
para así
budget
poder salvo
as we
de su
hire more
propio
police
presupuesto
officers
mientras
to
contratamos a
also
más agentes de
add to
policía, para
pools
también
like this.
agregar
When those statistics
a
of
departamentos
knowing we
como
serve
estas con estadísticas
1,400
de sabiendo que
individuals
servimos a
and serve
micros
them well,
individuos y les
and we
damos
should be
buen
proud of
servicio y
doing
debemos sentirnos
50,000
orgullosos de
calls. Some of
esto,
them are repeat,
50,000
but many never get
llamadas,
reported at all.
muchas son
Just
repetidas,
how
muchas ni siquiera se
vast
reportan.
this is. It's a cost
Es
savings
muy-
measure.
es una
Again, it's
medida
like putting
de
more
ahorro
cops
de
out there on the
costos,
beat
como poder
to be able to
más
combat this and stop these
policías en la comunidad para poder
incidents of
combatir y
domestic
para
violence.
estos
But I
incidentes de
think it
violencia
would be
doméstica, pero
incumbent
creo que
upon us to make sure as we raise
es
that money
importante
to hire more
poder
police
recaudar esos
officers,
fondos
that
para
maybe if
contratar más
it
en
means we can
policía
only
y si
meet
significa
85%
no
of the
solamente
goal
podemos
personnel, that
lograr
we put 15%
85%
of that
del
into
meta,
crime prevention like
entonces
this. So
poder
thank you
incluir
for your work
15%
and
de eso en
appreciate
una
the
prevención de
opportunity.
crimen, como así, gracias por estar aquí, gracias.
Other council members
¿Alguien
wishing to
más
speak
desea
on this item?
presentación sobre este asunto?
Seeing none,
No.
let's open the
Abra ese
roll,
voto,
close the
cierre ese
roll,
voto
and
y
tabulate
tabule
the
ese
vote.
conteo.
11 ayes.
11 sí.
That is approved.
Ha sido aprobado.
Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 53, called special by Councilmember Gruen, and Transportation and Public Works Committees reports have been submitted. A motion is required.
Thank you very much, Council President Padilla. Colleagues, if I could just ask our department reps, who I know have been here for a while, to come up, GMs and others. We have had the pleasure both in the Transportation Committee and Public Works Committee to hear this item, and there's been some coverage about it. And colleagues, we all know that traffic has become one of the biggest issues in addition to housing, Mr. Garcetti, as well as one of the top issues affecting us. And nothing is more frustrating than being stuck behind a road crew, as we've talked about during rush hour traffic, but even more frustrating to know that the city has had a policy reflecting that there should be no construction during rush hour traffic. So today, what we're doing is putting some teeth on an ordinance that will be asked to be drafted and come back to the council hopefully within 30 days, which will create a very strong enforcement program that will allow us to, again, put teeth into it and to ensure that our department heads, as our Mayor Villaraigosa instituted an executive directive last Friday supporting an executive directive that said that we will not have construction during those hours. I think what we are going to be looking at, I know a concern that Mr. Smith had was will this affect our evening, disrupting people in their homes? Is there still a process and where we have evening work that will still go through our police commission and a review at that time? Lastly, colleagues, I know we have representatives today from the utilities that are present who have been very helpful. We met with them just a week ago when the report was completed. They had barely a few days to look at it, so they are going to continue to look at it, see if there's any changes required, but they have been very supportive and understand the importance of this effort, and want to thank them for being here. We had a chance to brief them and have them participate. And so I would like to just briefly ask and hold my time for our representatives here from Engineering and Public Works and DOT, any comments that they'd like to add as well about the ban we have before us.
Gary Moore, City Engineer, Bureau of Engineering. Just want to thank all the support we've received, and we've worked very closely with the utility companies before this, and we're going to work extremely closely with the utility companies after this. One thing I just want to add is the cooperation among the city departments and working with the utility companies is very important to us. And finally, we don't want to add traffic when you have to come to get a permit, so I want to encourage everybody to use our website at eng.lacity.org, where you can go right online and apply for these permits, because we're trying to be as business-friendly as possible. And most importantly, we want to make sure that 6:30 and 9 and 3 to 6, that we're not interrupting the commute, because we all commute, and we know the pains that we all feel. So we're very much supportive of this going forward.
And before we go to next, just an important point to make is this affects collector highways, we call them collector highways or roads, collector roads, and major and secondary highways, not the residential areas that our crews could still be working on. It's really on those heavily traveled streets that we're looking at.
Son sumamente transitadas. A eso nos
Good
referimos,
morning,
¿correcto?
Bill
Sí, buenos
Robertson,
días,
Bureau
Bill
of Street
Robertson.
Services. And I think one of the other key things that this report and hopefully the new ordinance will establish is the fact that we're all following the same set of guidelines now. And if you do have to be out there on a major street, whether it's a collector or an arterial, you have to submit a traffic plan to try to mitigate as much of the traffic or the impact as possible, because there is a need for you to be out there. So I think that's a key thing. Everybody will be working on the same set of guidelines and rules. It's opened up a new, an alley for communication between the various departments in the city, as well as the contracting community at large. So we're fully supporting this report and the new ordinance, and we think it's going to do a lot to eliminate a lot of the traffic that is resulting from work that could be scheduled at other times during the day.
Otras horas durante el día.
Wayne Tonda, General Manager, LADOT. Really nothing more to add from what Bill and Gary had to say, just adding maybe one note that there may be some instances where it is appropriate to have work done during the peak periods in order to minimize the amount of construction time overall that we'll be taking. An example would be the Orange Line in the Valley and Santa Monica Boulevard Transitway on the west side. And in each of those cases, that will be very closely scrutinized by the appropriate staff. The end result being that the amount of delay being experienced will be
minimized
será minimizada
overall for a
en
project
general
like that.
para un proyecto como ese.
Good morning, Walter Bradley, Bureau of
Walter
Contract
Bradley,
Administration.
Bureau de Administración de
I'd just like to add
Contratos.
that we're
Solamente
really
agregar
looking
que
forward to working with
estamos
Street
esperando
Services, Engineering, and of
precisamente
course the
trabajando
Department of
con
Transportation
el Departamento de Transporte,
in getting
Ingeniería
this,
y Servicios
this
a la
effort off the
calle para
ground.
que este esfuerzo se
I
lance.
think that the increased communication
Creo que
between the
el
bureaus and
aumento
the
de comunicación
departments
entre los
and the permit
departamentos
holders is
y
going
los que
to greatly
piden
increase our ability to
piden permisos va
limit
a aumentar
traffic
gran parte de
restrictions
nuestra
and
habilidad de
keep the
limitar
traffic flowing in
restricciones de
a
tránsito
more
y
positive manner.
controlar que el tránsito
This motion will allow us to
este
increase the
movimiento
number of
esta
people
moción
that we have
permitirá
available
aumentar la
to
cantidad de personas que tenemos
effectively
disponibles para
enforce
efectivamente
the policy
que haga que se cumpla
that
la
already
regla que
exists.
ya existe
And
y
we're looking forward to working with the other
trabajar
bureaus and
con los
departments
otros
and helping make the
departamentos
commute a little less
y
stressful
que
for
ese
the
viaje
citizens.
del trabajo a la casa sea menos estresante.
Thank you, Mr.
Muchas
President.
gracias, señor
And
presidente.
one of the
Y
points we're talking
uno
about
de los
is
puntos que se
educating
mencionó
the
es
public
el
about what's
educar al
happening.
público acerca de lo que está ocurriendo, porque
It is frustrating when you're
es
driving down the
frustrante
street, you
cuando
think,
uno
couldn't
maneja en
they
la
be
calle y
doing
dice,
this
no
at a
podría
later
estar
time?
haciendo esto
And so
o no
we are
durante
talking
otra
about
hora.
actually
Estamos
having
acerca de
signage
tener
that indicates
letreros que
emergency
dice
road work that is
trabajo
occurring.
de
Or, as
emergencia
Ms.
en la
Robertson
autopista que
mentioned,
está
I think
ocurriendo,
as
como
Wayne
el
did
señor
as
Robertson
well,
mencionó, y
the
como
importance
Wayne
of
también
having
dijo, la
a
importancia de
traffic
tener
management plan so
un
people
plan
can
administrativo
plan
de
ahead,
tránsito para que las personas
so
puedan
that
planear
you
de antes
know
para que ustedes sepan
that Laurel Canyon is going to
que
be
la
closed
calle
for the
Laurel
next 2
Canyon
days
cerrará los
because of
siguientes
this
2 días
work.
por este
We can get it done in
trabajo.
2 days versus a
Podemos
week,
resolver los 2 días
but
en
we're
vez
going to
de
have
una
to close
semana,
it.
pero tenemos
Here
que
are alternate
cerrarlo. Aquí
routes
son las
that we
rutas
can look at.
alternativas que podemos
Currently,
considerar.
if there's an
Actualmente, si hay
emergency,
una
the only
emergencia, el
requirement
único
of
requisito
a department or utility is to
departamento
inform the city of
público es
Los
informar a la
Angeles
ciudad de
within
Los
24
Ángeles dentro de
hours
24
of their
horas
work, in essence,
de que inicie
completed.
su
What we're
complete su
requesting
trabajo.
now
Lo
will
que
be they
estamos
must
pidiendo ahora
send a
es que deben
fax
de enviar
to the
un
city of Los
fax
Angeles,
a la
one
ciudad de Los
department,
Ángeles, a un
that then can be
departamento que
shared
después
with
puede
our DOT,
compartirlo
with
con
LAPD,
DOT,
all
con
the
el
other
LAPD, todos los
departments
otros
that may
departamentos
come in
que
contact with this. And so I think
podrían
that's critically important, the
estar en
educational
contacto.
effort,
Eso
as
es
well
muy
as the
importante,
enforcement
esfuerzo de
effort
educación
to
y
say
el
to
esfuerzo de
people,
cumplimiento
we
para
must
decirle a
abide
las
by
personas que
the
debemos de
existing
cumplir
rules that we
las
have in the
reglas
city of Los
existentes que tenemos en la ciudad de Los
Angeles. So thank you very
Ángeles.
much,
Muchas
Council
gracias.
President. I want to thank also Tom
Presidente,
Labange,
gracias
who
también a Tom Labange,
instigated and we adopted, I think in June or July, which really is a whole system and permit way in which we can actually know who's on our streets. And we will get reports back on a quarterly basis. One, to understand who may have been violating that, and two, any lessons learned, so we can have this process really be an evolving one that helps us repair our streets, but at the same time, make sure that we can make traffic move in the city of Los Angeles. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Gracias, señor
We
presidente.
recognize Mr. Cardenas,
Señor
followed by
Cárdenas,
Mr. Rosendahl
señor
and Ms. Hahn.
Rosendahl y señora Hahn.
Thank you very much. I was very pleased to read about this in the press a few days ago.
Sobre esto en los medios de
Congratulations,
comunicación
Wendy,
unos
on
cuantos tiempos.
embarking on
Felicitaciones,
this
Wendy,
very intricate and very important issue that we get complaints from our constituents all the time. Our business constituents, the people who live in our communities, the people who are driving through Los Angeles, they complain about our traffic and why can't we make it better. But I have a few questions about how in fact this is going to be implemented and what can we see different tomorrow than we see today. I had one of my neighbors say, great, there's no longer going to be construction in our city during the day. Time out. I just smiled and said, well, I hope we get to that point, because I wasn't about to burst this bubble and let them know the truth that that's not what's going to happen here. What can we expect to be different tomorrow than today? As was mentioned earlier, this has to do with our major thoroughfares, not necessarily our interior streets, where maybe you have just residences, et cetera. What can we expect different?
¿Qué podemos esperar diferente?
Once again, we're talking in the morning hours and the afternoon hours of restricting construction. And what we're going to see is, I believe, is going to be an addition on the enforcement. I think that this really goes forward, and the city had required permits, but some people didn't either get the permit or that they didn't follow the restrictions of the permit. And I think this is really going to help the Bureau of Street Services and the Bureau of Contract Administration and their enforcement activities to make sure that people are cooperating so that we can see a difference tomorrow.
So the key is that we're actually funding the ability to enforce.
That is correct.
Okay. Also, when it comes to this kind of change or what have you, are we communicating with the contractors and the actual people who are actually doing the work out there?
What happens is when they come in to apply for a permit, we then inform them how to call for inspection. So there's an excellent communication between us and the contractors of how to call for inspection. So that should will reemphasize
Eso
the importance of
reenfatizará la
that
importancia
and
de
also
eso y
add in
también agregará
working with the Bureau of Contract
trabajar con el
Administration and
Buró de
Street
Administración de
Services on
Contratos y
inspection.
Servicios
Okay,
en las
now
calles
when
de
it comes to
inspección en
activity of
cuanto a
work
actividad de
versus,
trabajo,
for
en
example,
vez de, por
barriers,
ejemplo,
Roscoe Boulevard, which happens to be, they're actually traversing
barreras.
my district and Wendy's district, there's actually some work on
El
Roscoe
distrito
Boulevard
sobre la
where
Boulevard
it's so
Roscoe, entre el
constant and it's
distrito de
over
Wendy y
several
el mío,
months that the barriers are
es
there
durante varios meses y es muy
24/7, even
constante.
though the
Esas barreras
workers aren't there
estuvieron ahí por varios
24/7. So
meses,
that's going to be
24
taken into
días a la
account
semana,
when
que
it
los
comes to
trabajos
the
están ahí, todo
traffic
ese tiempo. Eso va a
mitigations
ser considerado en
that seem
cuanto
to
a
be
la
more
resolución de los
24/7 and
tránsito,
permanent.
que hay
It's really what
más
happens on
permanente
the other side of
24
those
días a
barriers.
la
We're not going to
semana.
hinder these people from working certain hours
No vamos a dañar a
as
esas
long
personas
as they're
que
within
trabajan
those
durante
barriers
ciertas horas,
because
siempre y cuando
nobody's going to be able to
dentro de su
traverse
límite,
through
porque
that part
nadie
of
va
the
a
street
poder
anyway.
pasar por esa parte de la calle de todos
Correct.
modos.
As you described, the
Correcto, como
traffic
usted describió,
management plan there
hay
would
el
be
plan de
was an
administración de
excellent
tránsito,
example.
fue un
There's
ejemplo
just certain
excelente.
places
Hay
that
ciertos lugares
you've got to
solamente que
have
tiene
the
uno que
concrete
tener
barriers to protect the
las barreras de
employees. So
concreto para
that would be a good
proteger al
example
empleado.
where
Ese
they
es un
would
buen
still be
ejemplo
allowed
donde
to
aún
work in those
serán permitidos
areas
trabajar en
because they're
esas áreas porque
outside of the traffic lanes.
están afuera de
Now,
los
this is not a
límites
new
de
thing across this
tránsito.
country.
Eso no es algo
So
nuevo en este
have we
país.
taken the time to
Hemos
try
tomado
to
el tiempo
learn
de
from
tratar
other
de aprender
jurisdictions
de
as to
otras
what they've
jurisdicciones en
learned, how
cuanto a
to
lo
do
que
this
usan,
better, how to
aprender cómo hacerlo
fine-tune it,
mejor,
how to
cómo
make it
mejorarlo,
something that actually
cómo hacerlo
we
algo que
maximize the
podemos
efficiency and we maximize
hacer lo máximo su
the
eficiencia y
ability
poder
to
hacer
not
lo
affect
máximo la
our
habilidad de no
communities.
afectar a nuestras comunidades.
Is there like a traffic plan association of
Hay una
cities or something
asociación
like
de
that?
plan de
Are we
tránsito
participating
en
with
las
them?
ciudades
If
y
not,
estamos
Not
participando
really,
con
but
eso.
I
Existe,
think
no.
what we do,
Pero creo que lo
Councilman,
que
is
hacemos, concejales,
we have a great relationship
tenemos
with
una
a
gran
number
relación
of
con
cities that we
varias
look at and
ciudades
see how
que
that they're managing
incluimos para ver cómo
the
están
work that they
administrando el
do.
trabajo que ellos
For
hacen.
years,
Por
we've
años,
already been doing
ya
night
hemos
work,
estado haciendo
weekend
trabajo
work.
por las noches, por los fines de semana.
We schedule the work going through a major
Fijamos el
intersection
trabajo cuando
between 2 and 4 a.m. in the
en
morning
una
to mitigate
intersección principal
that
de
we're
las
going
2 a las 4 de la
to impact it during
mañana
the day.
para
I think
disminuir
those
el
are
impacto
lessons
durante
that
el día.
we've
Esas son
learned in
lecciones
our
que hemos aprendido que en
communications with other
nuestras
cities.
comunicaciones con otras
And we
ciudades
have some very good friends in the
han
city
resultado. Y
of New
tenemos
York
otros amigos en la ciudad de Nueva
who
York
pretty much
quienes
said, you know,
han
we're
dicho,
going to ban all work
vamos
in
a
the streets
excluir
during the
todo el
day, and they
trabajo en
went
las
to
calles durante el
nights.
día y empezó en las
Those are
noches.
campaign statements. I
Esas
want to talk
son
about the nuts and
prestaciones
bolts
de
of getting it
campaña.
done.
Quiero
But what
hablar
they
acerca de
found
los
was the
detalles.
fact that they
Lo que
did that
decidieron,
is all of a sudden they
eso de
realized,
repente se dieron
well, over
cuenta
the years,
a través de
as
los
the
años,
transportation corridors became more and more populated, you have more and more residents there.
hay más
And it
residentes en
became
las áreas de
very difficult for
transporte
them to
y
conduct
donde hay
work
más
at
transporte
night
público y
without
es muy difícil llevar a cabo
upsetting a
trabajo
lot
por
of
la noche sin
residents. So we look at all aspects of the impact that we have. Even when we do weekend work, we know that we may be
cuando
mitigating the
hacemos trabajo
traffic
los fines de semana,
problem,
sabemos que
but we may
quizás
be
vamos a
creating a problem for the local businesses. So we have to be very aware of
problema de
when we
tránsito,
get in
pero
our
quizás
planning
enfocaremos el
stages,
tránsito
how
para
we
los empresarios.
affect
Tenemos que estar muy
all
al tanto
areas
cuando
of the
planeemos
community
esto,
that's
cómo
going
vamos
to
a
be
afectar todas las
impacted
áreas
by
de la
the
comunidad que
project.
será impactada por
So
el
there's a
proyecto.
lot, there's not
Entonces,
only
no
engineers
solamente hay
involved in
ingenieros
this, there's people
involucrados,
of
hay
many
personas de
aspects that
muchos
actually
aspectos que
give input and help us
dan
fine-tune how we can do
comentarios
this
y
the
nos
right
ayudan
way.
a mejorar
Because,
eso de la
for
mejor manera,
example,
porque,
if
por
you're saying,
ejemplo,
well, we don't
se
want
está
the
diciendo que no
residents or
queremos que los
the people
residentes ni las
traversing that street
personas
to
que
be
pasen por esa
impacted,
calle que
but
sean
if you do
impactados,
something
pero
to
si
favor
hacen algo
them, you might be
para
impacting
favorecerlos,
a
ellos estarán
business
impactando a una
inadvertently and putting
empresa
that person out of
no
business, which
intencionalmente
leads to
y
my
alguien
next
puede
question.
cerrar su negocio. Eso me hace llegar a la
Is there
siguiente
anything in
pregunta. ¿Hay
here
algo
that we
aquí
have to be careful about that say the
tenemos que
courts have
tener
precluded
cuidado y
us
decir que los
from
tribunales nos han
forcing
excluido
businesses, for example,
para
like
hacer que los
third-party
negocios,
businesses
por
like cable
ejemplo,
companies and
como las
telephone
compañías de
companies,
cables, compañías de
etc.,
teléfono,
that
etcétera,
have the courts weighed in where we can only push them so
Las
far
Cortes
and
tomaron
dictate to
parte
them
y solamente
so
podemos
much as to
hacer
when they
tal
can
y
actually
tal,
do business
cuando
to
cuando
fix fix their
pueden
facilities or access their facilities on our public streets or right-of-ways?
hacer algo en las
I
calles
don't
o
know
las
in
autopistas,
regards
no
to
sé
the
en
legal
cuanto
aspect, but I
al
can say
aspecto
that the
legal, pero puedo
requirement
decir
not
que
to work
el
during
requisito
the
de no
morning
trabajar
hours and
durante
the
las
rest
horas por la
and
mañana
afternoon
y
hours
las
has
horas por la
been
tarde
our
ha sido
policy.
nuestra
I
regla.
think it's really
Creo
now
que ahorita
a real effort to
es un esfuerzo real
enforce our
de
rules and
hacer que se
to
cumplan
make
las
sure
reglas y
that
asegurar
the
que
contractors are not
los
working at this
contratistas no
time.
están trabajando
So,
durante esas
to
horas.
my
Entonces,
knowledge, we haven't been
hasta mi
challenged on
conocimiento,
this
no
at
nos han
this time.
desafiado.
Okay, good. Well, I hope we aren't challenged because this is the right thing to do. But unfortunately, I just want to let the public know that sometimes we want to do the right thing, and we are trying to do the right thing, and Wendy's spearheading this. But unfortunately, there are other levels of government. That's why we have the separations of power, where somebody could go complain to a judge, and the judge could actually put a stay or have us change the way we do things. I hope that you pointed out that that has not happened as far as we know. Hopefully that won't happen, so we can manage our traffic and we can manage what happens on our streets, because that is our responsibility. So thank you and
Muchas
good luck.
gracias y buena suerte.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cardenas. Our next speaker is Councilmember Janice Hahn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I think what we're saying is we've had this policy in place in the city of Los Angeles, but it has been difficult to enforce. We haven't had the kind of good communication with our contractors, so hopefully this will help. Although to hear Mr. Tanda say, however, sometimes if it's a major project, we're going to suspend the rules, and I think that's going to be confusing to the public, although I understand the reason for it. Again, I think we're going to probably be getting the constituent complaints saying, I thought there was no construction during peak hours, so hopefully we can make sure we communicate with the public, whether it's on Channel 35 or other ways to use PSAs. Maybe we can, again, use the cable companies who may be doing the work to offer the PSAs. I think that would be important. One of the things, two questions I have. One, I want to make sure our utilities are at the table on this. I have some background in one of the utilities, and I know that was a constant issue with all the different municipalities that they happen to work in, different ordinances for different cities. How much have the utilities, gas company, Edison, cable companies been at the table in actually crafting this ordinance? Besides just, here's what we're going to do, what do you have to say about it? Because I know they're very much a part of what goes on in Los Angeles.
In the Bureau of Engineering, we've had a long positive history with our utility companies. They've been very cooperative, and they've been extremely cooperative in working with us. We'll continue to solicit input from them during this process here. Once again, I would emphasize that this has been in place, and the utility companies have been very cooperative in the past. We would anticipate nothing less in the future, but as we work with our inspection teams of the bureaus, we'll make sure to get their feedback, because we want their feedback. We want it to succeed. We don't want failure, and nor do they. They're very much in support of seeing this succeed.
And then what about our own departments, our proprietary departments, particularly DWP and others? How will this impact them?
Our Department of Water and Power, they also take out permits called utility permits to work in the street. And they have, are fully, we've met with them and they're fully cooperative of this new policy, and they'll be working with us on this. Especially Department of Water and Power has to respond to a lot of emergencies, and as Councilmember Gruhl indicated, we have policies in there how to notify the team faster, so that we all know where people are working, and we can, if need be, mitigate. If there's a sinkhole in the street, well, there's no way to get traffic back in place, but at least we can get with the Department of Transportation, mitigate the traffic impacts as fast as possible.
Now, I know this doesn't, as was described, impact the residential streets or smaller streets. Was there any consideration taken to look at what happens around a school site? I know one of the first frustrations I encountered after I got elected was actually was DWP, and it wasn't an emergency, but it was working around a school at 7:30 in the morning, blocking traffic when parents were trying to drop off kids. Was there any thought given to areas around schools, particularly in the morning, even though they weren't a major artery?
I think that the way that we would handle that transportation is to, if it was a long-term thing versus an emergency that a utility had to respond to, we would work with them in trying to accommodate the needs of the particular schools. It would probably be a case-by-case basis versus something that would be blanket.
How are we set up to handle that?
Well, if it is going to be a prolonged thing, the point of first contact at this point in time would really be from the school, pointing out to us of the need for immediate help. We deploy traffic officers for that purpose. If it was going to be extended beyond that, we'd want to work with whoever was doing that, performing the activity.
But I think in the spirit of this policy, not to wait for the school to, scream and holler at all of a sudden DWP is there at 7:30 in the morning blocking traffic when it's not an emergency. I think the spirit of this policy would say that DWP should be sensitive to the work being done around a school and not start maybe till 9 after the parents have dropped off the kids. So see, I'm already concerned that, you know, here we're talking about a policy, we're talking about the spirit, we're talking about enforcement, and yet we're going to wait for the school to call us and ask for help in directing traffic. I think that's not what we want to accomplish by this.
And if I may, I think our experience, and hopefully the experience that will come out of this report and the ordinance, is that as an entity that works in the street every single day, we impact hospitals, schools, government buildings, we do it all. We're there every single day. And we've learned that, as Gary knows, on some of those major public works projects, they do months and months of outreach before they get there. We, when we do our resurfacing projects, when we know we're going to impact local schools, we go to the schools and talk to them one-on-one, say, what's the best time to do this? And we've actually deferred our projects to spring break, summer vacation, Christmas vacation, hospitals. We work very closely. We don't want to impact the ability for patients to get in. So there's a lot of things, and I think the key here is it makes everybody plan and organize their work much more carefully. Not just only city departments, but the utilities also. So I think a lot of this can be mitigated in just the planning stages and doing more and more outreach to those folks that are going to be impacted by the local project that you're doing.
That's nice, but again, it seems to me that's where we've been before, and it hasn't really worked with everyone. I'm just kind of wondering what communication are we having, particularly with our own departments, in terms of those kinds of projects that might impact schools.
Well, I think that as we develop this even further, you're going to see those specific requirements in the ordinance. And I think you're right, that's key. We have these policies, but you have to make sure that they're enforced. Some people do some
Everybody's not as sensitive as you.
But no, I think that's a very good point. It's something that as we work on this, we'll ensure that those types of guidelines are put in there and they can be enforced.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn, and I think we definitely are wanting to make sure that people abide by the policy and that we don't get to a problem where we're having to direct traffic. So a point well taken. Councilmember Rosendahl, followed by Councilmember Zine, Councilmember Padilla, and Councilmember Labange.
Needless to say, Madam President, I'm delighted that the funds, as Mr. Cardenas pointed out, are going to be made available to actually go forward and make sure they follow the law. I have two very clear issues for me. The relationship between Caltrans and DOT. Help me out on this. On Lincoln Boulevard, as I go south, we have put up barriers. Caltrans has done nothing, and that street is already in gridlock. Explain that to me.
Basically, what we have is a situation where we have a state highway, and we have a number of state highways that actually run through the city of Los Angeles. And many of those locations, we have agreement with the state that if there's some emergency occurs on that street, like the one you specifically talked about, we get a call from the public. The city of Los Angeles will respond and mitigate or barricade that hazard. We notify Caltrans, and then it becomes their responsibility to make that repair. Unfortunately, many times Caltrans isn't as responsive as we'd like them to be. In this particular location, I've made a phone call to Caltrans, and we've informed them now at this point, if you don't fix it immediately and mitigate the safety problem out there, the city of Los Angeles will move forward and do it. The problem with us saying that in reality is that the state can come, if we go out there to fix it, they could actually shut us down.
Can we hold my time?
Because they have certain regulations, we have to pull permits. We have to do all the same things that we require many contractors to do in the city of Los Angeles. So this is a difficult situation with working with Caltrans on the street aspect of performing repairs.
You know, I look forward, Bill, to you getting a resolution. I don't like Caltrans creating more traffic jam on Lincoln Boulevard than we already have. Another one is a utility on Centinela and Washington Place. They started some work, and then they start squeezing us, and nothing has happened in the last few days. Can you get involved in that one, too?
Yes, absolutely. Both contract ad and street use or street investigation division can go out there, take a look at it. We can talk to the contractor. The main thing is we have to look at his permit and see what the requirements were. And if he's in violation of those guidelines that were established in the permit, then we can take action and actually shut the job down.
Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman of the department, what's the relationship between the planning department and the Department of Transportation on projects in districts?
That's sort of a broad question. We think we do a good job. We could obviously always do better. We, staff-wise, will meet and discuss the impacts, and probably you're referring to what are we doing in terms of mitigating projects.
There's a big project, again, on Lincoln Boulevard near Maximella that's being proposed through the process, and my constituents are just fed up with the gridlock on Lincoln Boulevard. Do you get in on the ground floor with the developers about traffic mitigation issues as their project develops?
Yes.
And does that mean the planning department and your department are joined at the hip on this stuff?
At least as close as the hip, yes.
Okay, well, that's a big issue for my district. We're in gridlock thanks to the job center that has happened there. People come in the morning from everywhere and leave in the afternoon. Practically every one of my streets are clogged and gridlocked, and people are just very upset.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rosedal. Mr. Zine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was out of the room, so some of these may have been answered, and excuse me if I'm being redundant or asking to be redundant. The peak hours, have we identified the peak hours? Has that been asked yet?
6 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 3:30 to 7 p.m.
6 to 9 and 3:30 to when?
To 7 p.m.
To 7. The major thoroughfares. Have we defined the major thoroughfares to the public? Because to me, driving down Van Noen this morning, there was construction that was clogging traffic. I don't know if Van Noen's considered a major thoroughfare, or if it's only Ventura Boulevard and Sepulveda and Devonshire, the distinction between the major and the arterial, because once this gets out to the public, you're going to get a lot of complaints, and, well, it's not a major thoroughfare, it's a secondary. So have we defined those?
Yes, all the streets in Los Angeles have a street designation.
But the public doesn't know that, other than the street name. So tell me how we would identify a major thoroughfare when we've got construction. For example, Van Noen and Wilbur, near my district office, is that considered a major thoroughfare?
And Mr. Zine, I think, Gary, am I correct that we're going to have on a website that will actually identify for anyone who wants to go on the website those areas that are collector, secondary, major highways?
Yes, correct. Right now on our Navigate LA on the Bureau of Engineering's website, you can go in there, and there's a layer in there in our geographical information system that identifies all the streets, and you could actually find out what type of street it is.
So it's identified as a major? Well, how many identifications do we have?
I believe there's 6 is what I'm coming. I know the one that we're affecting here is majors, collectors, and secondaries.
So
these 3 designation streets will fall under this new policy.
Okay, major, collector, and secondary.
Correct.
And the folks can find that out on the web?
That's correct.
At Department of Engineering?
In the Bureau of Engineering, eng.lacity.org under our Navigate LA, and we have a phone number and assistance in there. We'll be glad to help the public work with that.
And when they observe a violation, who do they notify? Because traditionally it's going to be maybe 311 or 911. Do we have a direct number to notify where those complaints can generate and response can take place and that problem can be eradicated? For example, if you're talking about 6 to 9, if they report it at 6 and we don't get someone out there till 10 o'clock, we're not going to solve the problem. So how are we going to take care of that part? First of all, the number, and then who's going to do the enforcement?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that needs to be further spelled out, but the initial plan is that if 311 were to get a call, they would be designated, and I believe right now it's going to be DOT, because we're working together to get DOT, ourselves, and Contract Ad on the same radio frequency, so it could actually be dispatched, the call, rather than, being sent through one of our service request lines that may take a number of hours to get it processed. So the idea in the end is for it to be able to be radio dispatched, and there's communication between the 3 enforcement arms that would respond to the scene.
Okay, it won't be the responsibility of the Los Angeles Police Department?
No.
Okay.
No.
So when the folks arrive, Street Services, DOT, they'll have enforcement power to shut that operation down?
If they're in violation of their permit. And I think that's one of the key issues that we have to look at. In the permitting process, it is pretty well spelled out what they can and cannot do during the peak hours. When we receive a call, we will go out, take a look, see if they're in violation of their permit. They're required to have a copy of the permit at the job site, and we would then determine whether or not it can be mitigated. And if it can't be mitigated, there's a number of options. For the first time, the teeth in this is that we're actually going to issue them a citation that's going to cost them $250.
And that citation then goes to the company or to the supervisor at the scene?
It would go to the company that has the permit on that location.
Okay.
Then subsequent violations within a 12-month period would escalate that fine. But the key is to mitigate the problem as it exists on site. And if we can do that immediately, a citation will be issued and they may not be fined if they can mitigate it.
And then our training for the personnel who are going to be responding to this is a new position or a new responsibility. How long is that going to take to train the folks that are going to be involved in the enforcement?
I don't believe it's going to take that long. We're already working with contract administration, getting ready to bring the groups together to start this initial training. I can't imagine more than about 30 days to actually train the individuals on what we need to look for based on the information that's supplied in the permit.
So once the public sees something that they believe is road construction at those inappropriate hours, then they would call 311 and that call would be routed and then we'd get timely response to take care of that matter.
Yes, and I think that even a bigger issue than that is that this plan also makes our inspections proactive. So we have additional investigators from the Bureau of Street Service and Con Ed inspectors looking for these types of violations during those peak hours, where pretty much now we've all been reactive.
Right.
So the idea is to be proactive and get out there ahead of receiving a telephone call and actually looking and working with the contractors to mitigate these types of things happening.
Okay, and just one final question. When do we plan to kick this program off?
Right now, it's an ordinance, it's a proposed ordinance, and so it will be coming back before the City Council for approval.
But so once we approve it, then I'm talking about your training folks, et cetera, your radio frequencies. What do we look at a timeline to kick it off to actually do some enforcement to eradicate the problem? 2 months, 3 months, 6 months?
I would say our goal should be 60 days, but there's certainly some enforcement we can do from the get-go, because we do already have trained individuals from our staff and Con Ed that can at least start enforcing the current requirements that are on there. So I would say within 60 days we can put the plan together, and with the council's approval we can move forward, and certainly we can start the training ahead of time so that we're able to start enforcing as quickly as possible.
Okay, and again, this is something that's been on the books, hasn't been taken serious by enforcement, and with our mayor's administration putting some teeth into this to get something done.
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Our next speaker is Council President Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, I know it's been a lengthy conversation, but I had a couple of questions as well. Agree and support in concept, but is there any flexibility that we can build into the existing policy, this new ordinance that we're being asked to consider by council district or by planning area? Or does it have to be a blanket citywide policy?
I think that the policy itself may have to be a citywide policy, but certainly we can look at, and one of the recommendations that I'm going to make is that when we use categories of streets, we have, and I'll use a Victory Boulevard. We have sections of Victory Boulevard, while they are a select system or a major street, that work could be performed during peak hours if you had a traffic mitigation plan that took into effect inbound, outbound traffic. There are other sections of Victory Boulevard that you just cannot work on, and no work should ever take place. So I think those are the types of issues that when we meet further, we need to develop, and it will be basically area by area based on the traffic situations that we find in many of our communities. We know that it's impossible to work around freeways. That work has to be either night work or weekend work. You just can't do it. We don't want to be impacting major shopping areas, major corridors that lead to transportation hubs. Those types of things, I think we have already identified those, and one of the things we should spell out in this report as it moves forward and comes back to council.
Because colleagues, what I'd like to do is, while all of you are going to vote yes on this and you don't want the road work to be done during rush hour in the morning, the evening, I want to invite all those city crews from throughout the city to my district to repave streets, to fix sidewalks, whatever, anything that we can do during those hours. And what do you think? Can I get a second on that?
No.
Send them all to the 7th. Well, you don't seem to want them. But seriously, one of the question that's weighing on my mind is if we're not going to allow our work crews to do their jobs between 6 and 9 in the morning and from 3:30 to 6 in the afternoon, then all of a sudden we only have a 9 to 3:30 and they're taking their lunch in between time window for them to do this work. So what does this mean for the resident who calls me and says, Councilman, 2 years ago we were told by the department that we're on the list for 0708. Are we getting pushed back now another year or two? What does it mean for our schedules? What does that mean for our efficiency? If you would hold my time, please.
This is one of the key issues that we looked at, because we know that certainly most of our street crews now start at 6:30 in the morning. They're usually off the street by 2:30, 3 o'clock. So we impact the peak hours. As I mentioned earlier, there are going to be those select system streets, or those streets that are listed in this ordinance, that can be worked on if you have a mitigation plan in place. So we wouldn't be affected on those types of streets and those locations. We are doing now probably 25 to 30% of our street work on weekends or at night now. We're probably going to have to expand that a little bit more. Is there an additional cost? Yes, it means we're going to be using more overtime. But we'll work very closely with the unions to identify shift changes, to mitigate the fact that we have to pay overtime. But I think through real good planning and keying in our major street work with some of our local street work, that we can work within this plan without driving the cost up or having a non-productive time for the crews that are available each day.
Okay. Oh, I think that's going to be critical. Part B of my question about citywide or region by region is because from a user standpoint, I've heard both from city staff and from outside users, whether it's the gas company or one of the phone companies or anybody else, that what they're told at the desk on the west side is different than what they're told at the desk in the valley, which is different than what they're told at the desk in the metro area. How are we going to oversee and ensure equity in that regard?
We've tried to mitigate those concerns by, one, the training we've done within the Bureau of Engineering who issues the permits, two, with obtaining the permits online, which the majority, 90% plus of the permits are obtained online. I believe we've really streamlined the continuity and the consistency of the permit issuance. But we're always, will be emphasizing again during our own internal training policies on the importance of consistency across no matter which office you go to obtain a permit.
And is there a name and a phone number you can give me for if there's anybody that is serving my district or doing work in my district that has problems with these inconsistent interpretations? Should I call you directly, Gary, or who do you give me?
Our Deputy City Engineer of Constituent Services is Clark Robbins. He's the one who oversees this, and he's more than happy to help you. And once again, if you go through 311, I'm sure that they'll be able to connect you with Clark Robbins of our Bureau of Engineering.
Okay, so that's my geographic equity question. The other is, the way it's written seems to capture everybody, not just, city work that's going on, but gas company, phone companies, cable companies, others. The one that I haven't heard, and I know by my own experience as well, it impacts traffic, is filming, television and movie production. When there's street closures or lane closures due to filming, is that incorporated in this? I haven't, interpreted it from the language that's before us.
At this time, no, it has not been incorporated.
Okay, was that a conscious decision to include or not include?
I think that, to be perfectly honest, when we looked at it as an operational group, we were looking within the city and how we operate. And to be honest, I don't believe that we, as a group, gave much thought to that issue. I think that would be an issue that maybe the council might want to consider as they are revenue generating, so forth and so on.
Well, it generates revenues into the regional economy, but I also know the city wants to be business friendly, particularly to film production. And so we have lower fees or what have you to be competitive to help the studios meet their bottom line and keep filming local as opposed to going out of state or overseas even. But at the same time, we have constituent concerns to balance when it comes to impact on quality of life. So I'm going to be a yes vote today. I'm going to ask you, before you toss the question to us, I'm going to ask you to give that specific consideration and come back with your recommendation with justification to include or not include. And I want to hear what your reasons are for your recommendation when the ordinance
we can include that as we move forward.
And final question, because I know my time is up. You mentioned that by moving some of our street work to the evenings or weekends especially, there's going to be some costs associated with that. Do we have at least an estimate at this point, the fiscal impact estimate?
Right now, as I mentioned, about 25 to 35% of our work is done on weekends or in the evenings. We expend roughly about $2 million a year in our resurfacing division alone in overtime costs to do many of these projects off shift. As I mentioned, the key is going to be working with our local unions who have been very supportive in us doing shift changes to allow us to reduce that overtime cost. And that's something that we may have to look at. But long term, I have them reviewing the current program to see if we have any additional streets that may be affected by the mayor's executive directive. And I'll have a better idea probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks what that impact is going to be if I have to shift some of those projects to overtime, so I could come back with that information.
And I think that figure is important, colleagues, because our city budget's a zero-sum game. And the more we have to pay in overtime to accommodate some of this means, a couple police officers less that we can hire, or a couple less firefighters that we can hire. It's all a matter of balancing all of our priorities. So thank you very much. And when the ordinance comes back, I'm going to look for that clause that says, when all else fails, send them to the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. Our next speaker is Councilmember Labange.
Yeah, Mr. Padilla, just on a follow-up on the film matter too, we discussed it in committee. One thing on another issue, on another track, is to have the police officers who are assigned working with those film companies to, pardon the expression, Dennis, get off their Harleys and get out in direct traffic when there's inconvenience to the motoring public at that time. That's another issue, another track. Another problem that was talked about, members, and we want to encourage filming in Los Angeles, so I want to make sure we do the right thing in the future on that. But on this work here, crews do come in at different times, and I know working with that aspect of it is very important, and thanking that joint labor management work in this area here, because I know they just paved the street in my district. They came at 4 a.m. and got through the heavy intersection. This is a balance. I asked, though, and I know, Wendy, thank you for your leadership on this here, but would it make sense to concentrate in one region of the city for 180 days as you start this off? One region where Edison it's not no longer Pacific Telephone anymore, SCB Global or whoever it is,
La
would be
compañía de
the
teléfono,
responsible parties and
sean
other
las partes
utilities, the gas
responsables de
company, et
otras,
cetera, to work.
obras
What was your
públicas.
impression of
¿Cuál
that,
es-
Mr.
cuál es su
Moore,
impresión
on that
sobre eso, señor
concept?
Moore, sobre
Because
esa idea? Porque
my fear is this is something, as Mr. Cardenas said, that has been
Lo que
talked
tenemos
about a
algo
lot,
que el
about,
señor Cardenas
you
ha
know,
dicho,
many,
hablado
many
muchas
election cycles. Now we have something that could
tenemos algo
possibly
que
be the answer,
puede
but
ser
should we
la
start in
respuesta.
one
Podríamos
region
empezar
and
en una
accomplish
región
that and then
y
go citywide? What do you
lograr
think?
eso y
Well, I
así
think
hacia
we talked about it,
toda
but I
la ciudad.
really think
Hablamos
we
sobre
feel
eso,
that
pero
it's
realmente
traffic is
pienso que
across the city.
es
And
tránsito en
by
toda
building
la
in the
ciudad y
quarterly
construyendo
reporting, we'll be able to come
en
back
un
to you if
reporte
it's
cada
not
3
working.
meses. Podemos
But we
ver si no está
think
funcionando,
that
pero pensamos
it's
que
best to make the
es mejor
rules
hacer
for
las
right now
reglas por
fair
ahorita
across the city,
justas
and
en
we'll
toda la
report back
ciudad
into
y
you.
dar un
Traffic
reporte
is
después.
in every one of the regions
Tránsito
here
está
in
en
Los
todas las
Angeles.
With
regiones
some
aquí en Los
offices of
Ángeles.
engineering you got to go to, like the West LA office or
Muchas
whatever,
veces
there's
ingeniería como la
sensitivity.
del
Sometimes it
oeste, hay
takes
diferentes
longer in some
puntos,
periods. I know
muchas
there's
toma más
someone
tiempo,
here.
otros-
Tommy, you here for this?
Hay
You're here
alguien
for this?
aquí,
No, you're not here
Tommy.
for this. Some people are interested in this in
¿Qué personas les interesa
various
esto?
aspects.
En
I'm
diferentes
concerned
aspectos. A mí me
too on the
preocupa también
fact that there's a lot of
sobre el
old
hecho que hay
infrastructure in
mucha
my district
infraestructura vieja en mi
that has vaults
distrito
in the
que
center of the street. Barham
está
Boulevard,
centro
day
de
or
la
night,
ciudad.
is a bad
Barham,
street.
día y noche es una calle
The only
mala.
way you get power fixed in the
La
Hollywood
de
Knolls and Universal City
arreglar
outside
energía
the
afuera
park
de la
is in the
Estudio
street. How do you
Universal,
address
es en la
that?
calle. ¿Cómo va a mejorar eso?
Well, once again, is working with the utilities
con las compañías de
or the
servicios
Department of
públicos.
Water and Power to
El
have a
Departamento de
traffic
Agua y
mitigation
Energía
plan
tiene
to
un
handle
plan de
those types
solución
of
de tránsito para tratar
situations
esta clase de
where
situaciones donde
the work has to
el trabajo
happen.
tiene que ocurrir.
We'll work through those issues, I
Trabajaremos con
believe.
esos asuntos, creo
Also,
yo, también.
opening up maintenance holes all
Abrir
around the city. We'll
fachas
work
de
through those
mantenimiento,
issues.
trabajaremos con esos
But
asuntos.
we felt strongly that
Sentimos
we needed to make this a citywide
que esto tiene que ser
policy so
una
that
regla en toda la
no,
ciudad para que así,
obviously, the utility companies would
obviamente, los
rather
compañías
work,
de seguro
you
de
know,
obras públicas
from
prefieren
7 to
trabajar
3,
de las
not
7 a
just
las 3,
between
no
9
solamente entre
and
9
3.
y 3.
So,
Let me ask you a question. I know we talk about major highways.
Sé que
Not
hablamos
all
acerca de
major
calles
highways
principales, no todas
are
las calles
commercial streets.
principales
Bill, you
son
elaborated earlier on that in committee and otherwise.
calles
Could you
comerciales.
describe that for me, what you
Describa
want the
eso.
option? Because I'd like to hold you all accountable
Yo creo que ustedes
as
sean
opposed to having
responsables
just a
en vez de
blanket thing.
tener algo en plan.
Let's say Victory Boulevard, which runs the
Boulevard
length and
Victory.
breadth of the valley.
Yeah, I think there's certainly certain sections of
Hay
Victory
ciertas
Boulevard
secciones
that you could
calle
work on
Victory
during
donde
peak
puede
hours,
trabajar
provided
durante
you were
horas
not
pico,
working
siempre y cuando
in
no
an
esté
intersection,
trabajando en una
and that you
intersección y
mitigated the
que
traffic to
resuelven el
inbound,
tránsito
outbound
para
lanes. In other
calles de
words,
entrada y calles de
we know in the
salida.
far
Otras palabras, sabemos que
west end of the valley,
a la
most of
parte
that
oeste
traffic
del valle
on
mucho ese
Victory
tránsito
Boulevard
en
is
Boulevard
heading
Victory se dirige
eastbound in the morning
hacia el este
and
por la mañana y
westbound in the
hacia el
afternoon.
oeste por la
So
tarde.
if you're
Entonces,
in
si
those, working in those lanes on the
usted trabaja en esos
opposite side of the
carriles
street,
del lado opuesto de
your
la calle,
impact is much
su impacto
less
es
than if
mucho
you were right
menos
out
que
there
si
working
estuviera
where you shouldn't be.
trabajando
So
donde debe estar
the
trabajando.
traffic
Entonces,
planning issue, that requirement that
punto
makes
de
you think about
planeación
those things,
requerirá que
if you need
piense
to be
sobre
out
eso,
there,
tiene que estar
at least you're mitigating as much
en la
of the
comunidad
impact as
está
you possibly
resolviendo
can.
y
Right,
disminuyendo
and let me
la
ask,
mayor
this address an issue on, we all want new housing, Mr. Garcetti, you're a champion for that.
impacto.
But the new project at Sunset and
Nuevo
Western, which
proyecto
I
en la
saw
Sunset y
the
Western.
other day when I was at that intersection, I know when they poured that cement there, they had to come early in the morning because
Cuando
cement has to
pusieron
set
el cemento,
up. They would have
tuvieron que
blocked
llegar muy
Sunset
temprano.
Boulevard. Would this have prevented them
Porque
from
tenían que arreglar eso.
pouring before 9 a.m.? Because there's two
Habido
major
que eso
streets.
ocurriera
Again,
a las
the
9 de la
exemptions
mañana.
that are listed
Si
in
hay
here, one of the
exclusiones que
key
están
exemptions
incluidos.
is
Una de
that
estas exclusiones
if it
es
is
de
going to
que
increase
si
the
va a
cost of a
aumentar el
project
costo de un
or
proyecto
impact a
o
project,
impactar a un proyecto,
certainly they would get an exemption with a
podrían dar
traffic plan
exclusión con un
to
plan de
mitigate
tránsito
whatever's going to
para
happen out there. And I think that's very important, and that needs to be part of this ordinance, is because you have to have that relief. What we don't want to do is drive our costs up up. So we can only do half the work, or we have to put off a lot of major projects that are seriously needed. But we're so concerned about the traffic point that we forget the other effects of
We've got to work smarter on the whole thing. And I know Mr. Price is here, our Chief Parking Enforcement Officer for anything. Wayne, is there any plan, I know, to make it available where if you have a big impact, their traffic officers would be used in some of this area?
Yes. As a matter of fact, as a reminder, one of the recommendations is to come back with a staffing plan, if you will. And during that process, we'll identify how our traffic officers will be there to augment the efforts of the inspectors in contract ag and in street services. So without a doubt, yes, they're very much available on the street and are ready to act.
de
Thank you.
calles y
I
también con
appreciate that. And lastly,
transporte. Gracias.
Mr. Moore, if I may, Clark Robbins, stand up. Give
Clark
Clark a
Robbins.
hand, Deputy City Engineer. Wendy, when you
Subingeniero
complimented me earlier, he's the one who organized
de la ciudad
all
es el
that
que organizó
online
todas
stuff.
estas
Thank you,
cosas en
Clark, for
internet.
you and your
Gracias, Clark,
team and the
por
work
ti, por
that you
tu
do.
equipo, el
Thank you.
trabajo que haces. Gracias.
Mr. Smith.
Move the previous question.
Pido que se
Okay.
termine el diálogo en
Let's
esta
open the roll on the
pregunta.
previous question. Close the roll.
Abre ese voto, cierra ese voto y establece
Tabulate the
conteo.
vote.
10 ayes.
10 sí.
That ends discussion.
Termina el diálogo en esta
We now have the
pregunta.
item
Ahora
before
vemos el
us
asunto pendiente.
with that 7th Council District amendment.
Esa
Let's
enmienda
open
del
the
Distrito 7
roll,
abre ese voto,
close the
cierra ese
roll,
voto y establece
and
conteo.
tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
10 sí.
That is
Eso ha
approved.
sido aprobado.
Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, item number 56 was called special.
Okay, and that may be a closed session discussion, so let's hold that on the desk. Next item.
Next item is item number 58, and that was called special for a card from the public.
Item 58 now before us, and the council calls forward Melrose Larry Green.
Merrill's Larry Green.
What a swell meeting. Don't anybody think city government is not exciting. Let me tell you, folks, these meetings are open to the public. They're on TV. This is the most watched thing in the whole city of LA, Channel 35. And before I even talk about the item, I'm very related. I never had a chance to thank you. I've been so busy. But thank you for inviting me to your breakfast in Sylmar last month. And thank you for the commemorative coffee mug with the seal of the city. And every time I have my cup of coffee, I think of you, Alex. And I keep it on my desk next to my autograph of Bob Dylan. So I wanted to thank you. Number 58 is a motion relative to declaring the 25th Annual Sunset Junction Fair on the 27th and 28th of this month a special event. And everybody has to go to this. I'm telling you, last weekend I went to the events that you talked about, and I got to hang out with the deputy mayor of Nagoya, Japan. Mayor Viragosa introduced me. I think he's learning from you how to network. This Mayor Viragosa really is learning from Tom Labange. So go to this thing, and it's sort of in the cusp of the 4th and 13th district. It's in the area where Sunset and Hollywood Boulevard veer into Silver Lake. I know Eric's going to be there, and it's a great, I can't believe it's a year since the last one. It seems like just yesterday. But everybody go to that, and I hope that the mayor will attend that, and as many of you as possible. I want to wish you all a very nice vacation. You all work very hard, and I hope that some of you will visit the 4th district during your vacation, except for you, Tom, who already represents it. Thank you.
Thank you. This closes public comment on item
Esto
58.
termina el comentario público sobre 158. ¿Alguien desea prestación sobre 158?
Seeing none,
No.
let's open
Abre
the
ese
roll,
voto.
close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That is
10
approved.
sí, ha sido aprobado.
Next item, please.
Item number 68, called special by Councilmember Cardenas.
Mr. Cardenas.
All right, this should be pretty quick.
Esto
Basically,
es rápido.
on this
Básicamente,
motion, I've been in
esta
contact
moción
with the
está en
author of AB
comunicación con el autor
1234
de
in Sacramento,
AB
which this resolution
1234 en
involves.
Sacramento. Es una resolución
And
que
the
incluye
resolution basically
resolución
states
básicamente
support
dice
if
que
amended as
apoyo
in
si
outlined
se
A and
enmienda
B.
tal como la
And in one of
declaración A
those,
y
I
B,
just
uno de
wanted to
esos
change
solamente
it
quiero cambiar
from legislative body
el
to
grupo
governing body,
legislativo
which
al
was the
grupo
recommendation on this resolution, to
administrativo
say
de la recomendación de esta
legislative body
resolución que
or
diga
governing body. That way we don't have a
o
struggle with
legislativo. Así no
Sacramento as
tenemos
to
una
who
lucha
we're
con Sacramento en
excluding,
cuanto a
but
quién
it's more
estamos excluyendo, pero es
inclusive.
más
So
inclusivo.
that's my
Esa es mi
recommendation on the amendment
recomendación
to this
en esa enmienda de
resolution.
esa resolución.
And I think that's accepted without
Eso es aceptado sin
objection.
oposición.
Was also a recommendation from the
Una
Rules Committee
recomendación
to
del
make that
Comité
same
de
specific
Reglas
change.
para hacer ese
To
cambio.
nothing further
Si
on
no hay
this
nada
item,
adicional en
let's
ese
open
asunto,
the
abre
roll,
ese voto,
close
cierra
the
ese
roll,
voto y tabula ese
tabulate
conteo.
the vote.
10 ayes.
10 sí.
That is
Eso ha
approved.
sido aprobado.
Next item, please.
Siguiente asunto.
Next
Por
item,
la
Mr. President, would be
presidente,
item
será
number 3
asunto
from the
número 3
special
de
meeting, and
la
that was
reunión
called
especial,
special for
firmado
a card
especial.
from the public.
Hay que
Yes,
notar
and the
del
council
público,
calls
sí.
forward Tom Patterson
Tom
and
Patterson
A.J.
y a
Jarasunas.
Jair Azunas.
And as they come up, an announcement from our city
Un
attorney.
anuncio del fiscal
Thank you,
municipal.
Mr. President. This item is a quasi-judicial matter in which council is hearing an
Es un
appeal.
asunto judicial donde el
Furthermore,
Consejo
pursuant to
Municipal está escuchando una
Municipal Code
apelación de
Section
acuerdo al Código Municipal, sección
17.54, the last day on
17.54.
this
El
matter
último día
is
en este
noted
asunto
as Friday,
es
August 19th.
Mr.
el
Labange,
agosto 19
this means that on
viernes.
this item we need to
Significa
be
que este asunto
super attentive.
tenemos que poner mucha atención.
Okay?
Bien.
Speakers?
Presentadores, pase.
Good afternoon,
Buenas tardes.
council people. My name is
Concejal, mi
Tom
nombre es
Patterson.
Tom Patterson.
I'm the office manager
Soy
for
el
the
gerente
Holmby Westwood
de
Property Owners
Holmby
Association. We
Westwood
filed the
Property
appeal,
Owners Association. Presentamos esta
which is the
apelación,
matter
¿cuál es el
before you
asunto que
today
está
for
ante ustedes ahorita para
reconsideration.
reconsideración?
We asked this matter be
Pedimos
brought
que
to the
este
city
asunto sea
council
presentado ante el
because we
municipal
believe
porque creemos
there was an error
que
on the
ocurrió un
part of the
error
city
de parte
attorney
del
in
fiscal
misdirecting
municipal
the West LA
el
Planning
dirigir
Commission
a
on
la
this
Comisión
matter.
de Planeación del
At the
Oeste de Los
beginning
Ángeles
of the
junto al principio de
discussion
ese
of
diálogo,
our appeal
durante
at the
nuestra
West LA Area Planning
la
Commission,
Comisión de Planeación
one of the
del Oeste de Los
commissioners
Ángeles, uno de los
asked for
comisionados
direction
preguntó
as to what findings they needed to be made to either approve or to disapprove the
dijéramos
parcel
que
map. This is a
áreas
parcel
tenía que incluir
located
para
at the
aprobar o desaprobar
intersection
el
of
mapa del
Sunset
parcel ubicado
Boulevard
en la intersección del
and
Boulevard
Hilgard,
Sunset y Hilgard,
across the street
al otro
from
lado de la calle
the
de
UCLA campus, a
la
29,000
escuela
square
UCLA.
foot lot.
Un lote de
During the
2.500 pies
discussion by
cuadrados.
the
Durante ese diálogo
commissioners,
por los
they
comisionados,
expressed their
ellos
concerns
mencionaron sus
about
preocupaciones sobre
splitting the lot at
dividir
this
ese lote en esa
intersection due to
intersección
the
por
extreme traffic conditions at that intersection of Sunset and Hilgard. And they also expressed concerns about the precedent splitting a lot of this type, which is normally considered an RE20 size lot. And during their discussions, it became obvious they were moving toward rejecting the lot split. At the conclusion of their discussions, one of the commissioners asked the city attorney for what findings needed to be made. The city attorney focused only on certain findings that needed to be made respective to the community plan zoning and the findings that had been made by the city staff in recommending the lot split.
la división
What
de
the
ese
city
lote,
attorney
lo que el
failed
fiscal
to
municipal
do
no hizo
was to advise the commissioners
fue de
that they had the
aconsejar a los
opportunity
comisionados que ellos
to
tenían la
proceed with
oportunidad
what they
de proceder
apparently
con lo que
wanted
ellos
to do,
aparentemente querían
which
hacer,
was to
el
reject
cual
the
era de
lot split
rechazar la
under
división del
section
lote bajo sección
1752A
1752A
of the municipal
del
code.
Código Municipal.
And it was
Y
obvious
fue obvio,
as this unfolded that the
entonces
commissioners
posee ese asunto que
weren't
los comisionados
knowledgeable
no
about
tenían
what
conocimiento acerca de las
findings they needed
decisiones
to
que
be
ellos
made.
tenían
And
que hacer.
this
Entonces,
is something
es
that
algo
the city
que
council
el Consejo
needs to
Municipal
address
necesita
with the planning department.
tratar con el Departamento de
Under
Planeación. Próximo
1752A,
52A,
the very arguments
los
and
argumentos
concerns
y
that these
preocupaciones principales
commissioners
que
were
estos
making
comisionados estaban haciendo
were the reasons that they
fueron
could
las
have
razones que ellos
used
pudieron haber
under
usado bajo
1752A
1752A
to reject the
para
lot split.
rechazar
And those
división de lote
findings
y
say that you
estas
may
decisión dice
disapprove a
que
lot
puede
split when
no
there is
aprobar una
a
división de terreno cuando hay
concern about
preocupación
reorientation of
acerca
the
de la
lot,
reorientación del
or
lote
the lot
o
is
si el lote
parceled in such a manner as to be detrimental
está
to the
construido de
adjoining
tal manera que
properties
puede
in the
dañar a las
surrounding
propiedades
neighborhood. And all
anexas
of
en
the
la comunidad
discussion
alrededor y
and our
todos los
discussion,
diálogos
our
y nuestro
objections
diálogo y nuestras
focused on the
oposiciones se
fact that
concentraron en el
splitting
hecho
the
de
lot
que
at this
dividir ese lote en
intersection
esta
created a
intersección creó
dangerous traffic condition
una condición
for
peligrosa de
the
tránsito
lot that adjoins the
del lote
Sunset
que
portion,
junta la parte de
because it's
Sunset
the
porque
smaller lot and
es el
it
lote más
creates an
pequeño
access
y esto crea un
problem to
problema
the
de acceso
property,
a la
and that's
propiedad
also
y
an
eso también es
extremely busy
una
intersection.
intersección
There's an
bastante
awful lot
ocupada.
of
Hay
traffic
mucho
from
tránsito
UCLA that
de UCLA
enters
que
and
entra,
leaves
sale y
Hilgard
entra de
all day
Hilgard todo
long.
el día.
And for those reasons,
por
and
esas
for
razones y
the, and
por
for the reasons that
las
the residents
razones
on
de
Charing
que los
Cross, which
residentes
adjoins
y Sharon Cross,
this
el
project,
cual
they
está al
all
otro lado del
submitted a
proyecto, todos
petition
presentaron una
opposing the
petición
lot
en
split.
contra de esta
For these
división del lote y
reasons,
por
we
estas
ask that
razones
the City
pedimos
Council
que el Consejo
support
Municipal
our
apoye
appeal and
nuestra
reject the
apelación
lot
y
split.
rechace
Thank
la
you.
división del lote. Gracias.
AJ Charasunas. Hope I pronounced that properly.
You did. Good afternoon,
Buenas
honorable
tardes.
council members. My name is
Honorables
AJ
council members,
Jarasunas. I'm
AJ
with the law firm of
Jarasunas,
Armbruster
con el
and
despacho de
Goldsmith,
Armbruster y
and I'm
Goldsmith.
appearing here on behalf
Nuestro
of
representante
the
de parte
parcel map
de
applicant, Mr.
el
Sohail
solicitante de la
Darvish.
parcela del mapa.
We've submitted detailed
Hemos
comments in
presentado
writing, so I'll try to
comentarios
be
detallados,
very
pero trataré de
brief.
ser muy breve.
Essentially, we're opposed to
Esencialmente
this
estamos en
appeal
contra de
on the
esta
grounds that it is
apelación en la
wrongfully
base de
before
que
you.
está
A
equivocadamente
parcel
entre
map
ustedes. Un
cannot be
mapa y
appealed
parcela no puede ser
from
apelado
a
de
Area Planning Commission
una
decision to the City
decisión de área
Council.
de Comisión de Planeación
That's
del Consejo Municipal.
pursuant
Esto
to
es de
ordinance
acuerdo a
number
ordinanza número
176321 that you
176-321
adopted in
que ustedes
December and
adoptaron en
became effective
diciembre
in
y
January.
entró en vigencia
So
en
the law
enero.
at the
Entonces,
time of the
la
advisory
ley
agency
cuando
decision, as well
llegó la
as
decisión
the
de la
West
agencia
LA Area
asesora
Planning
y también de
Commission
la Comisión
hearing
de
and decision
Planeación del Oeste
was
de la
clear.
Alianza
There is no
Esa
parcel
decisión
map
clara, no hay
appeal. There is no
apelación de
second
mapa de
round of appeals for a
parcela, no hay
parcel map in this
segunda base
case.
de apelación para una
Nevertheless, the
mapa
City
de parcela.
Attorney's
En este
Office
caso, sin
has for
embargo,
some
el
reason
fiscal
decided to
municipal,
create
por
an
una razón
appeal
ha deseado
right in
crear
this
un derecho de
case for this
apelación en este caso para ese
thus we feel
solicitante.
compelled
Por lo tanto,
to
sentimos
address the merits of the case. We believe that
que
the
tenemos que
advisory
hablar
agency
sobre
did
los
not
méritos de
err
este
in any
caso.
way in terms of making the findings and in making their determination. We believe that the West LA Area Planning Commission reviewed the facts, heard the appellant in this case fully, and rejected the appeal. The appellant has made a few arguments in terms of compatibility with the neighborhood. I would just like to state, this is a 30,000 square foot parcel we're dealing with that is being divided into two. We're dealing with R1 zoning here. The minimum lot area requirement for a lot is 5,000 square feet. Thus, we are clearly still, by dividing a 30,000 square foot in two, clearly in compliance with the zoning. The appellant seems to be pointing across the street at our E20 lots as a sign that we're not compatible with them. I would just like to remind everyone that the minimum lot area requirement under RE20 is 20,000 square feet per lot. I will end there. I'm available for questions. I know that the advisory agency and city planning has patiently been waiting and is also available to answer any questions. And thus, I ask you that you deny the appeal and thereby sustain the original advisory agency decision in this case. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This concludes public comment on this item. Members of the council wishing to speak? If not, we have the report before us. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
10 sí.
Okay, that is approved. Next item, please.
Next item, Mr. President, I believe on special meeting number 5, it is a closed session item. However, the city attorney has stated that it can be done in open session, and he will make the report.
Mr. City Attorney.
Yes. On this item, the city attorney recommends payment settlement in the amount of $264,544.44. This matter is Stein versus City of Los Angeles, inverse condemnation claim. If there are any questions, our attorney is available to answer them in closed session. Otherwise, the city attorney's office recommends settlement in this matter.
Any questions, colleagues? If there's no discussion on this item, let's open the roll on the recommendation. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
10 sí.
Okay, that's approved.
Ha sido aprobado.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Next item.
Mr. President, do you wish to conclude the desk before going into closed session?
Let's do housekeeping.
Council has motions for posting and referral,
Motion shall be posted and referred.
and that clears the desk for closed.
Okay, colleagues, before going into closed session, we have two closed session items. I think they're going to be rather quick. We're down to a bare quorum. We have 10 members present at this time. So please, nobody leave. Sergeants, please clear the chambers.
Cierren las puertas. Se acaba la sesión, tiene que llevarse a cabo puerta cerrada.
Welcome back into open session. Madam Clerk, anything to report from the closed session?
No, Mr. President, and that clears the desk.
Okay. Colleagues, it's the end of our agenda today. Do we have any announcements? Announcements? Do we have adjourning motions today? Please rise for adjourning motions. Adjourning tributes. Ms. Hahn.
Members, I'd like us to adjourn our meeting today in the memory of James Jackson, a lifetime resident of the Harbor area who passed away on August 12th. He was a two-term president of the PMA, Local 63, and a lifetime member of the Elks Lodge. He's survived by his wife, Margaret, his sons, James and George, and his daughters, Debbie, Stephanie, Georgianne, Patricia, and my very good friend, Kathy, who is married to Gordon Tuber. The funeral services were held this morning at Green Hills. I would also like us to adjourn our meeting in the memory of 19-year-old Joseph Randall, who was shot and killed over the weekend at a shooting, unfortunately, at the Watts, the WLCAC Community Center at the beginning of the Watts Summer Festival, which of course commemorates the riots 40 years ago. So I think it's the first shooting victim on that property, and it really has shaken a lot of members of the community. We're still finding out details about exactly what went wrong and what happened, but it happened after one of the performances of the Watts Summer Festival. And Joey leaves his mother and his father. I believe he has 12 step-brothers and sisters, but the mother said that he was her only child, and she was very, very upset to lose him. And he also leaves a wife and a darling little baby daughter named Patience. And Bernard and I joined the community and the family members on Sunday night where we had a candlelight vigil. And many of the parents, the community members, spoke very strongly and very harshly to some of the young men and the young women gathered there, pleading with them to not make their mothers grieve by their actions, and pleading with them to turn their lives around and get out of gangs and to lead the straight and narrow. And I know Jan was also there over the weekend. And it was a tragedy. I didn't read about it in the paper anywhere. Nevertheless, it has no less impact that we've lost a young man in the prime of his life to gun violence.
Mr. Parks.
I'd like to second that. And also, we found out that that day that his wife's pregnant, so they have a son coming at 19.
I know.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that we adjourn in memory of Robert Weil, 83, Superior Court Judge, former LAPD Police Commissioner. One of his noted accomplishments, he co-wrote a book on pretrial procedures for civil cases. He was known for his ability to settle cases out of court. He died at the age of 83. One of the major cases local that he was involved with resolved the lawsuit over the 1983 Big Rock Mesa landslide near Malibu. He had a master's degree in journalism from Columbia. He wrote early as a lawyer to settle cases. He served on its editorial board and wrote several articles in the California Law magazine. He was born in New York City, moved to Los Angeles as a youngster and graduated from Los Angeles High School and then UCLA. After his master's degree at Columbia, he spent a few years as a newspaper reporter and worked for the Associated Press in London. He later returned to Los Angeles and in '51 earned his law degree at USC, where he's an editor of the Law Review. In '73, in behalf of Mayor Tom Bradley, he named him to the city's police commission, and he served for 2 years before becoming a judge. He's survived by his wife of 40 years, Dorothy, and her two children. Services are going to be private. The family asked that any donations be sent to the Bet Trezick House of Justice on Fairfax. Mr. Weil, on his first day as a police commissioner, I was as a lieutenant of police and drove him around in Venice Division. In fact, they used to kid him because he was the first visible person on the police department that used to carry the little handbag, and everybody used to call him the commissioner with the handbag. And so, but he was a great person, very balanced, and certainly we will miss him.
All members.
All members, Mr. Padilla.
Other tributes?
Mr. Padilla, I ask we adjourn in memory of Chuck Johnson, who I believe died at 83 years old. He was the sports editor of the Catholic Tidings. The Catholic Tidings, the Catholic newspaper for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. He has a family of, I believe, 9 children. He also was a physically challenged individual who suffered, I believe, from polio as a young man. Chuck Johnson was revered by Catholic schools throughout because he covered sports. at all levels for those schools. He had a wonderful wife, Lois. Asked that we adjourn in memory of Chuck Johnson.
Thank you, members. I also ask that we adjourn in memory of Jose Pablo Herrera, who passed away on August 12th. Pablo lived in the community of Crystal Air, California, not too far from Little Rock. He died this past Friday from a motorcycle accident. He was an avid lover of life. He enjoyed weightlifting, vacations to Laughlin with his family, a good barbecue, and quality time with his mother and his sister. He had a passion for cars and anything mechanical, but most importantly, had an intense love for his champions, his 3 boys, Alejandro, Adrian, and Alvaro. He's survived by them, his wife Elizabeth, his mother Amelia, and his sister Amelia. I ask that the council adjourn in his memory. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Thank you all very much. This meeting is adjourned.